This is Sam messaging Tim. He says, what's the details? Tim says, why are you leaking DMs? God, she's gonna get eviscerated on this conversation with f***ing Sean. Why would she even try this?
For public health.
But it's an argument for parents' rights. You see, that question leads nowhere.
As the right-wing conservative Destiny said recently when he was debating,
Your program appeals to a right-wing audience, and there's a reason that...
Well, right-wing and Nazi are way different. Well, maybe not in her eyes, I guess, but I feel like this is a little bit of a different claim.
The neo-Nazi shooter watched your program.
I can invite you on for a real conversation, and what do? Your show's for neo-Nazis. This is why you guys don't get invited places, because you're not having real conversations.
I don't really care about getting invited places.
Yeah, right, so go live in your grifter echo chamber where you guys can... I make a comment in agreement with Hasan, where I was like, he was right about MrBeast.
Well, a no-fly zone is a de facto declaration of war once the plane gets shot down.
True.
Yep. That means Russia would have to have shot down, would have had to attacked us.
No, that's Tim. That's not how that worked.
I just want to clear this up because I know that, you didn't want to have Sam on because you called him a grifter, right?
Yeah.
And part of the reason that you called him that is because you said that, we put your song through a filter on our show. And I just want you to know, I was hosting that day. We don't have the technology to do that, so I did not do that. So there you go.
Yeah, it was like
that up for you.
The song. So that specific issue was the song we put out, played on your show, had like the mids ripped out of it.
We don't have the technological ability to do that.
I don't I'm sorry, Tim, but this is pretty obvious. I seriously doubt they did a custom filter to f with your song. More likely, they were probably just playing it through another program or some shit. Or something like that. I seriously doubt they're like, oh, we tweaked the EQ. Their audio is always shit.
That we're just a bunch of leftists with a soundboard. I promise you, nothing was intentional.
you don't have Audacity, it's free.
Well, no, the issue here is likely
I don't really
that
know. I don't know anything about
if you
audio tech.
if you don't have proper ingestion, then the audio is going through a TV or something, it's going to sound really bad.
Right.
So if we were to play music on the TV and then put the mics up to it, everything would be ripped out from it. And then if we were to say, listen how bad this sounds, it's misleading the average person into thinking that's what the song sounds like when it doesn't.
But I played that, and look, I mean, we're here to have a great discussion, I think. But it's interesting that even though I played it, that was your justification for calling Sam a grifter.
Oh, it's not, though. The issue with Sam was that I put out a tweet where I said, we try to invite people on the left all the time. They always say no. And then Sam tweeted, challenge accepted, or something to that effect, I'll come on. And I was like, oh, this is great, because, Sam was actually the first person to ever shout me out, ever, in my career.
Yeah.
Praising me. And so I said, we will cover travel and accommodation. We'll fly you out. We'll take care of everything. Let me know what day works for you. And he said something like the 13th. And I was like, this is fantastic. And then he DM'd me and was like, I'm not coming on your show. And I was like...
Yeah, it was because of COVID restrictions. I've seen the DMs. I told him he should put it on... I've told him he should put it on Twitter, but he's too good of a guy. I mean, maybe
Well, no,
he
I
will,
published
just to
all the
clarify.
DMs.
Yeah.
Because then what he did was... He then, it's mostly water under the bridge, but he made some comment about me backing out or something, and I was like, what are you talking about? And then I messaged him, I was like, are you kidding, dude? We're gonna pay for everything. And then he was just like, no, I'm not doing it, are you crazy?
Well, then just do it I'm sure he'd be down to come down soon, and you guys could actually hash it out.
Well, the issue has expanded more than that. I mean, so at the same time, there was Hasan Piker, who also responded to my tweet. And he said, I'd love to come. And I said, when can you come? And he said, let's figure out a date. And so I DM'd him, and he said, I got to be honest, I'm actually concerned about COVID. And I said, totally get it. No worries, man. Thanks for reaching out. And that was the end of it. Sam, however, used it on a video and then started tweeting about it because it was drumming up a whole bunch of clicks and views. And I'm like, okay, dude, I get it. Interacting with this guy is just going to create drama that he uses to get clicks. I mean, the dude's got 170 videos about Dave Rubin.
Yeah, we do cover that. I mean, I think part of what we do is we try to respond.
Hold on. Somebody posted the convo. My graphics drivers are updating, so my monitor's gonna be fucked for a sec. So Tim messages Steven, no, wait, not Steven Crowder, I'm sorry, Sam Seder. Tim messages Sam Seder and he says, what's the details? Oh, no, wait. This is Sam messaging Tim. He says, what's the details? Tim says, I can have Lydia arrange everything for you. Show is 8 p.m. live in studio, DC area. We can fly you out and get you a nearby motel. We hang out for 2 hours to talk about current events. I can do a group chat to connect you. Or if you want, you can just send me the email and we can set it up. And then Sam says, I can't fly down to DC. I do a daily 3-hour show. You don't do any remotes. Tim says, we set the show up back in January for in-person only. We don't have a way to connect everyone to a Skype call or to display it. We've rejected some centrist and right-wing people for the same thing, so I take no issue if it can't be done. We can try to find a time when you're free to travel, but I get it. It's one of the challenges of getting guests. You and Hasan host your own content, so it's probably harder for you, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. And then Sam says, COVID hasn't affected your bringing people into studio. Tim says, no one. We actually stopped guests for a while over it. Rogan never did. Then we started up in the past month or so. Then Sam Seder says, Trump never did either. I guess you roll the dice and hope you don't pull a 7. Maybe if I have a day off. And then I think a few days later, on October 13th, Sam says, I don't know why you suddenly took offense. Wait, hold on. Sam says, I don't know why you suddenly took offense to the above reply. Care to elaborate? And then Tim says, you agreed to an in-studio interview for publicity. You lied. Then Sam said, I had absolutely no idea you only did in-studio interviews and had no idea you weren't in New Jersey anymore. The last one we did was on Skype. Tim says, you just wanted to rile up your followers. The tweet said in studio, and we cover travel. Hold on, my monitor's flashing. Why are you leaking DMs? Or am I retarded? You're retarded. These are DMs that Sam leaked. You just wanted to rile up your followers. The tweet said in studio, we cover travel. You dragged me to rile up your followers, then pretended to be serious, then claimed you were busy, then claimed it was COVID. You're full of shit. Sam said, I didn't see any travel tweet. Dude, how in the world would I have accepted tonight as a date if I thought I had to travel from upstate New York starting at 3 p.m. after my show and get back here by 8:30 to prep tomorrow's show? That makes no sense. 8:30 a.m. Bullshit. You did a segment pulling clips from my studio show. Not to mention I had to do a pre-recorded from a regular show. As far as I remember, it wasn't an interview in B. Just because you do one interview in studio, how could I possibly assume you only do them in studio? The entire channel you pulled from is a live studio show. You have like 10 channels, no offense, but I don't follow what shows you have. My producers pull clips. I don't even know if they know. You're lying. You directly criticize my opinions. So either you lie in your show or you're lying now. Yes, I directly criticize your opinions. That's why I'm interested in having a conversation with you. But you don't watch my content, so you're just making shit up. I watch the clips my producers pull. I see plenty of your clips over the years. Like the ones about Flint, Michigan. What? The ones where I called the Flint water crisis a human rights violation. Or the one where I said we need to end the war and use the budget to fix Flint's water crisis. Did I comment on that? Yes. And what did I say? I agree that it's a human rights offense, if not technically, and I'm happy to end war, but we have the money to fix it, blah, blah, blah. Did I say we should fix it? No, you dragged me for not talking about it. Okay. What was the original tweet that, what was the original tweet where Sam said he would do the interview? I'm curious. OnlyFans advice. That's a subreddit? Holy shit. If a man is uncomfortable with my having an OnlyFans, that's a huge red flag for future controlling and jealous behavior, in my opinion. You do what you want, but he sounds like he's love bombing you. Jesus. Oh no, fuck, I'm gonna sound like a fucking... Oh, I'm gonna sound like a fucking conservative writer now. It seems like... Okay, I'll be super charitable for both sides. So, Tim pretty clearly said, we are booked Monday. The show is live 8 p.m. in studio. We can cover all travel and accommodations. The 13th is open. Next opening is the week following. And Sam literally says I can do the 13th. Now, if I'm being ultra charitable, Sam just like didn't read this tweet at all. But the show is live 8 p.m. in studio, and we cover travel, and that's like half the tweet. That's a lot of tweet to not read when you're responding to something. Sam mentioned he thought he was still in New Jersey. Is that really that significant of a difference? Like, if you're talking about taking a flight, is that big of a difference? Where are they based out of? New Jersey to New York City is like an hour. Is DCA to JFK? How far is that flight? Oh, wait, hour and a half flight. Plus, it's like an hour drive. But I mean, still. But then why would he say like the COVID stuff? Why not just say like, oh, I thought you were closer? Why not just take one day off your show?
There's a vacuum truly left. You guys have a lot more money than the left-wing media space. We just try to combat it a little bit.
I think the issue with that, I can understand why you'd say that, but it looks like this is a great way to kick off the show, actually, like the start of the culture war. I actually don't think whatever this space has more money, because this is a fractured independent space of varying ideologies.
Tim, I'm in your compound right now.
Yeah, I'm rich. What does
I
that,
live
what
in
does
a
that mean?
one-bedroom. I mean, how did you get rich?
I started a website, took memberships.
I'll give all of you permission to kill me if I ever come out on these platforms and pretend that I'm poor. I give you full permission. Blood, Crip, non-gang affiliated, whoever you are. If I ever come out on some shit and I'm like, I'm not that wealthy, I only live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, God, it is so fucking cringe. When like people have families, like 8-9-figure net worth, and they come onto these shows. I hate leftists that do this. It is so fucking cringe. It is so cringe when people do this. What was the yearly tuition of the fucking grade school she went to? Was it $40K? I forget. Somebody remember? Was it $40,000 a year for her 7th and 8th grade? God, it's so cringe.
Sold ads on videos?
Yeah, but the reason that you get ads and that we don't is because you more adequately serve capitalism and we challenge it.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to watch this. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to watch it. If you're not running ads on your channel, that's your fault. Because you serve capitalism, like, bro, kill me.
We get our ads pulled. What do you mean? There's whole organizations dedicated to getting all of our ads removed.
Right, but the proof is in the pudding and where I'm sitting right now.
So
the proof is in the pudding in that they've built out an incredibly fucking popular show. What do you think that the only why is my game lagging? Why was it skipping? I'm gonna die today. I can already tell. I'm gonna die today in D4. Today's gonna be the day.
This is memberships. This is almost entirely because people pay to become members of our websites. You know, if the Majority Report, you guys have been around a lot longer than I have. Mm-hmm. The inability to provide a product to a customer does not mean that one political faction has more.
Oh, Jesus. The Majority Report is just nowhere near as popular as I thought it was. It's actually she's doing the thing. This is why I'm saying you got to be really careful when you identify with groups and shit. Like, her inability to take responsibility for their popularity or lack thereof. These guys only have 870 patrons? I thought these guys would be making like over 100K a month easy on Patreon. 15,000 views over the last 30 days. I wonder if they do, if they've just been doing shorts or something. They take subs through their own app. What about YouTube members though? I don't know. Bro, what? Why is my game crashing? I wasn't even doing anything. Have you tried to repair? I repaired yesterday. Update your BIOS? Bro. Sorry, tangent of a tangent. Like 4 days ago, I got a thing to update the BIOS on my laptop. And I did it on my laptop. And when I restarted it, I got a window saying that BitLocker had been activated on my drive. And I needed to unlock I thought I got ransomware on my fucking laptop. Have you ever had that shit happen on a laptop before? Oh my fucking God. Dude, I had to go through my Microsoft account. I had to dig through fucking BIOS settings to turn back on fucking, like turn on like safe boot and all sorts. I had to tweak so much shit to get my computer to work again. Fuck me, dude. Why don't we have ray tracing in DGG chat?
or is granted more because of capitalism or anything like that. Like if Sam is unable to, I mean, Sam's had way more subscribers than me for a long, long time.
Right.
And he just like and I'm not saying this to be like mean. I'm saying if he doesn't know how to turn revenue, the issue is more so you need like a COO or somebody who's going to say, here's how we provide something to a market that generates revenue so we can expand our business. So we're better at that here, I suppose, is the easy way to put it.
Well, no, because what you say here is more attractive to investors and advertisers. I mean, we're basically
I hate her. Never, ever, 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 never are you going to be sitting in a room trying to close a deal with a sponsor or an affiliate, and they're like, well, do you support capitalism? We don't want to sponsor you guys if you're anti-capitalist. Nobody gives a fuck about that. I want to know what meeting. I want to know what sponsor Emma was sitting in a meeting on where they're like, oh my God, we were so close to closing this deal with Logitech. And then the CEO comes in and he's like, aren't you guys anti-capitalist? Your entire ideology threatens the paradigm through which we function. Our entire business model will collapse if your political project is successful. We're gonna have to pull the plug on this deal. Like, come on, give me a fucking break. No shot, dude. This is the most cope answer in the world.
Members and okay, well, other right-wing media like the Daily Wire and stuff like that, and even what I'm looking at a Rumble, what I don't know, what do you call that?
Yeah, and look at the difference in quality between what Rumble has to serve for ads versus what Google AdSense gets to serve for ads. The idea that like when you go farther right, you get more access to advertisers, it's just not true. And they have sponsors anyway, or fucking Audible. Jeez, they've got like 20 sponsors. They probably just don't get any money from these guys.
Logo right there.
Looks like a rectangle.
Yeah, I mean that's a David Sachs. That's a venture capital backed venture, I believe.
So my game crashed again. Why?
At the very least, Peter Thiel is involved. It's a venture capital-backed venture, I believe. At the very least, Peter Thiel is involved and invested.
Wait.
There's no equivalent on the left.
What? Yo! I'm sorry, bro. Every single thing she says is wrong and stupid. Why does she think that VC is in control of talent acquisition at the company? Like, can we just like back up and just think for a moment, like reasonably speaking, like what would that conversation look like? Like somebody that owns like 5 or 10% of your business is like calling the CEO, hey, listen up. So I'm gonna invest in your company. Now, I know you're the CEO, and I know that you guys like run everything the way that you do, but I just want to reach out to you, and I want to make sure that you understand that since I bought some of your company, I don't care who you're trying to acquire for talent that makes your website better. I actually don't care about that at all. Make sure that when you guys do talent acquisition, you're publicly traded, by the way, so this might even be like breaking fucking fiduciary responsibility, but regardless, for talent acquisition, can you guys just like try to grab guys that are like ideologically aligned with us, make sure they're pro-capitalist so that they don't take down our system, and yeah, just make like, what would this conversation even look like? Like, it's such a hilarious. I feel like I'm listening to what was that one math dude that I debated on stage over ESG scores. I feel like you just shouldn't be allowed to talk about finance if you don't even know how to like run a business that's ever had an external investor before or outside investment. Like, it's just such a hilarious. Oh, James Lindsay, yeah, it's just such a. It's like when conservatives complain about ESG scores. Oh my God, kill me, fucking kill me.
Wouldn't you be able to get advertisers if like David Pakman and the Young Turks have advertisers? Your content's not like too dissimilar.
We do have advertisers. We just have, advertisers that are a little bit more within our system of values, and we're trying to combat corporate greed.
Isn't Audible owned by Amazon? What? And also, okay, Emma, now you're giving a totally different answer. Before you were saying that nobody wanted to sponsor you because you were left-wing. Now you're saying you explicitly choose sponsors that align with you ideologically. That's a far different claim than what you made before.
That corporate
like
we do have advertisers. We just have, advertisers that are a little bit more within our system of values, and we're trying to combat corporate greed. We don't have a ton of advertisers that I think align with leftist, or we have advertisers that we try to include in terms of like leftist values as well. But just by the nature of left versus right, it's asymmetrical warfare. But honestly, Sam should just put
you're
those
passing
DMs
on
out
advertisers that don't align with your values. So
yeah.
Like you have
But we do the
those
same
options.
thing. We do literally.
Yes.
We have like 4 advertisers. We have
Right.
like 4.
Right. Okay.
So our website has no advertisers, and it's almost entirely membership funded.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look.
everything here is because people give us $10 a month.
We're really trying to cover politics on our program, and I think that that's what is like our
What the fuck was that pivot?
central focus. I mean,
Why
you
make
talk
a video about me and music?
Well, I mean, it was a little fun because it was kind of funny. But I mean, Sam comes from a comedy background as well. I would say that I think you misrepresent what our show actually does. The first hour, the free hour of our program before we go to the membership portion, is one that we literally have experts on Social Security, on international politics.
Wait, what?
The free hour of our program before we go to the membership portion is one that we literally have experts on Social Security, on international politics. It's not, honestly, something that is conducive to, it's dry. It's not conducive necessarily to a ton of capital investment or advertisers. And we're trying.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree, but isn't it kind of on you to make it entertaining to increase viewership? Like, none of this has to do with people avoiding your program because you're leftist. It's just because you're saying you make boring content, which is fine, by the way. Some of the stuff that I do that I feel passionate about, especially if we're like reading papers and shit, it's really fucking boring. And I understand that. I get lower viewership because of that. But I'm not going to say, but I could make some of that more exciting if I wanted to, like doing debates on a thing versus just like reading a paper about it, right? But
The reason we started our own coffee company, it's because I'm not going to say the name of this person, but there are organizations that lie in order to get our ads pulled. And so that's happened to us. One example is that there's, well, I don't get into too much of it, but there's a group that has argued that I have claimed that Donald Trump won in 2020, and they've used that to raise tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
I never said Donald Trump won in 2020. In fact, since Joe Biden got inaugurated, I said Trump lost, and these people need to accept it.
Right. Well, you said there might be a race war. There was that.
When did
what does that have to do with what he just said?
I say that?
I'm not sure, but you also said that.
I don't think that's a true thing. Actually,
the 10-year-old.
Ooh, Emma needed to bring receipt. You have to bring receipts for every claim against Tim. Does anybody know what tweet I'm talking about? It had like a funny little, clever little spelling thing. Nobody remembers it? Nobody remembers it. I feel like it had to do with guns or armed or something. There was like a tweet like that. I don't remember it though.
Who got an
Destiny says bring receipt and then he makes the claim anyway. Well, 1, I'm not on a show debating him. 2, I remember seeing this. And 3, I'm asking chat for the fucking receipt. You brain dead dipshit.
abortion who was raped. You call that a hoax. Have you retracted that statement?
So there's very deep context to that. What we're talking about when
But
I
that's
say
been
hoax,
proven. I mean,
Right,
charged.
but so-
the
so-
rapist has been charged,
Right,
and
right.
the doctor who provided the abortion fined.
So this is
in
a really good
Indianapolis.
example of the problem in the culture where I would say, see, you don't know what I actually said, because I didn't say what you're describing.
You did. I just watched it last night.
Right, and so what I said was the fact that they politicized this to win a political point is the hoax, not that the child was abused.
How does that constitute a hoax, Tim?
So, like, let's say there's what's a good example of this? Ahmaud Arbery. Ahmaud Arbery is a really great example, right? So here's
No, I'm talking about this example though. The
Right,
one that
so-
I just brought up.
So, right, if I can't explain to you that manipulating a story for political gain is the hoax, then I don't know
What's
what
the
else to say.
manipulation?
Oh man, this is an old story. I have to pull it up. I think the issue was that they were able to actually get the treatment in state, but because of the law, they decided to seek it elsewhere. And I said, that is a hoax. I didn't say that it was a hoax that the girl was abused. I said, if they could have sought treatment in state under the exemption, I think it was all.
You let Tim get away with lying about this on your appearance. I feel like I qualified as best as I could. I think I was saying that, like, I feel like what you're saying is not true, and if I look it up, it's not going to be true. I think I said that on the show, and it wasn't. A lot of what he said was Ahmaud Arbery stuff was a total fucking lie. I'm glad that I felt confident enough, though, when I was on the show. I pushed him really hard on a lot of the things that he was saying. Like, and I asked a good clarifying question. So, for instance, I remember one of the things he said was like, what did he say? Like, well, the guy took his shotgun, or they got into a fight, and that's how he got shot with a shotgun. And I'm like, how do you get into a fight and get shot with a shotgun? And then he shot him 3 times, and it's just like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, We both know what shotguns look like. How do you get into a fight with somebody with a shotgun and get shot with it? Wait, what the fuck are we talking about? Yeah, his takes on the Ahmaud Arbery stuff was insane. Oh, and the idea that he was wearing construction boots instead of sneakers, which was a lie. Like that he was burglarizing homes in the area, that he was 2 miles away from his home or 20 miles away from his home. Like all of these facts were not true. Yeah.
Ohio, right? There was an exemption saying in the cases of abuse.
Now would be a time to be critical of Tim if Destiny was honest with critiquing this debate, but no, he's just after nitpick against Emma because spite. What? Okay. True.
The treatments are permitted, but they decided to make a public statement and leave the state anyway. I said, that is a hoax.
It was not a public statement.
Well, but that's my point.
No, rape and incest exemptions are non-actionable. This is like well documented with abortion activists. How long do you think it takes to prove a rape or incest case before you're able to use that carve-out to actually get an abortion?
Well, doesn't it depend on how the law is written? Do you have to prove it, or does it have to be alleged?
I mean, first of all,
let me just answer that point real quick so we can clarify the thing on.
Sure.
I never said it was a hoax that the girl was abused.
Okay.
That is incorrect.
But honestly, this is a part and parcel of what you do, is you put that kind of statement out there and then you put caveats in to protect yourself.
Like saying that someone manipulating a story for political gain is a hoax is
it's not a manipulation. That is the kind of thing that's going to continue to happen as abortion restrictions happen throughout the country.
It's an
It was
opinion.
a particularly egregious example used to shine light on broader restrictions on abortion in this country. I mean, it's an opinion, but you haven't retracted it. It's false.
It's not false. If there is a story and the story is exaggerated or manipulated in an effort to sway people into believing one political faction over the other, you are engaging in a hoax.
I mean, isn't that what you guys do when you post like extreme videos of crime and things like that?
We don't do that. What are you talking about?
I mean, you respond to videos that are taken completely out of context, isolated instances.
I don't think you watch the show because that doesn't sound
I
like
mean,
what
I
we
do a little bit.
No, you don't. Because
Yeah,
we don't
I do.
do that.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
Well, that's not true because we don't do that. In fact, one of the points we make specifically is
You show subway crime to talk about these inflated crime numbers. Crime is down in New York City in 2023 by every metric.
Down compared to what?
Down compared to 2021 and
don't
2022.
Don't change the subject, right? You accused us of publishing videos we don't publish.
If it's down in compared to 2021, and there was a giant year-over-year increase from 2020 to 2021, then you're talking about something that's down.
It wasn't giant. It was a
Violent crime, New York City. I feel like if I run a podcast ever like this, we're just gonna look these numbers up on stream. Because why not just like have a nice graph? Let's just see what is the violent crime year over year. Let's just look at it. Is there like, do we have like all violent crime? This is nyc.gov. They do in a second? Oh, okay, never mind. Well, if they look it up.
small bump from the pandemic.
A 47% increase in homicide in the city of New York is not a small bump.
It was homicides have been on a precipitous decline since the 70s, since the 80s, since the 90s. There was a bump because of desperation in the pandemic, and now it's back down. 80s have been on a precipitous decline since the 70s, since the 80s, since the 90s. There was
I think violent crime peaked hard in the 90s. I think it was increasing in the 70s and 80s, but
a bump because of desperation in the pandemic, and now it's back down in 2023.
So,
that's irrefutable. That's the NYPD's own data. That's on all major crimes: murders, rapes, grand larcenies, robberies.
This is an argument I'm often confronted with, and it's actually pretty terrible. So crime is down from the peak, for sure, right? In some years in New York City, we had 2,100 murders. I think that's the largest ever in the history of the city of New York. However, my standard it's not as bad as the worst time in the history of the city of New York. When I see...
Bro, do higher level items take more of these rare crafting materials? How the fuck do you get these crafting materials? I'm not gonna be able to imprint any of my shit. This is cucked. Sorry.
Murders jump year over year from about 319 to 469.
What do you mean year over year? The 2 years that I just
year
listed?
Over year, as in from 2020 to 2021. That would be a year over year increase. That is a dramatic increase, and it's the largest since, I believe, 2010. The greatest year over year increase of all time in the city of New York, by the way. But it's all the way back to 2010 numbers.
It's down.
Yeah,
again.
it's down compared to the increase, but it's not down compared to 2019.
This was a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic where people's desperation and their mental health was severely harmed. People were out of work, and that kind of desperation leads to more crime. That's the reality.
I don't buy that. I don't think I buy that. I would buy a hypothesis that says that more free time led to more crime, but more desperation with the amount of aid that we were giving out, more people robbing. It's not like it was just grocery stores being robbed, right? I think a lot of the increases come from like that organized retail theft and everything too, which I don't think is like crimes of desperation, but
Reality of how crime works. Poverty leads to crime.
This
I would
is-
imagine
this is
that.
inaccurate.
Why do you think 25 people got shoved in front of trains last year?
I don't know, dude.
Well, that's a legitimate question. You're saying that you're saying poverty and desperation results in crime. I'm wondering why it is that you've had these homeless guys. They've been predominant. I think it's all.
this fits into Emma's argument perfectly if she can just make it. Poverty and desperation do play into crime. The people shoving people in front of trains are probably homeless people. We probably need more medical facilities to house these people, right? Like they probably are in poverty. They probably are desperate because they're mentally ill, right?
It's almost entirely these homeless guys shoving people in front of trains. Last year it was 25. And so that is.
So that's a mental health problem. I mean, we
Oh, there you
have
go.
we
Yeah.
do have a mental health problem in this country. We have an issue with not having socialized health care, where people are unable to access health care, mental health care in particular, but also every other kind of health care. I mean, 28 million uninsured people in this country. That's a massive problem. I mean,
serious problem.
what is your stance on Medicare for all and health care?
I'm
being
for
socialized?
universal health care.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have some kind of like.
Tim's been pretty open about this. Oof. She's like treating him like a neocon. Sometimes I think these people are like still shadowboxing with like George Bush era conservatives.
Basic coverage for universal standard, meaning like if you're having an episode, this is particularly where we bring you in, we help you. If you're
Sure.
broken bones, flu, things that it's like relatively simple and knowledge based. The challenge with it is that we got limited space, we got limited doctors, but I don't think we can function as a society if we have people just dying in the streets like we do with drug abuse and
Well, then
people
you should
losing their minds.
promote housing first policies on your program. Like in Houston, what they did, there was a pilot program under Obama. It was a HUD grant. And they reduced homelessness by 63% over 10 years because they guaranteed housing. Do you think that the 25 examples that you cite last year, and there's like over 2 million subway riders a day, so you cherry picking that I feel like is...
It's not cherry picking. It's
How's that cherry
you
picking?
mentioned that
What?
desperation
What?
leads to crime.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why it is specifically that we saw this increase. Is it like someone's desperate, but why murder somebody? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, they're experiencing a mental health episode. We do not have adequate health care in this country, mental health care. I hear a lot of talk, often after mass shootings, that mental health is the most important thing in this country. Then we should have socialized health care so everyone can have access to it. And that paired with a housing first policy where cities don't become urban centers for just bridge and tunnelers who want to come in and see a show, or for restaurant associations, where places where people can actually live and there's guaranteed housing for people. If we were able to do that, we would be able to drastically reduce the crime that you guys were talking about.
So when you're talking about poverty leading to crime, like what is that based on? Because after Prohibition was repealed,
All of human history.
during the Great Depression, crime fell.
You have to be super careful. Poverty and crime aren't necessarily linked together, and you're walking into like really sketchy areas. It's the association is going to be a little bit more sophisticated. Did I just die? What? Is this bill just trash? Am I just trash? When you start saying things like just like poverty and crime are linked, I wonder if he's going to bring up like, what about poor white rural communities whose crime rates are far lower than poor urban communities? It has to be a little bit more sophisticated.
During the Great Recession, people with your line of thinking thought we would see a crime spike nationwide. It didn't happen. You can actually look at the crime wave if you wanted to pull it up. That didn't occur. And that was the largest recession in the history of this country since the Great Depression. So what we've seen throughout American history is poverty not leading to crime. What we actually see is the opposite, that crime drives areas into poverty. We look at store closures across the country due to the fact that we have shoplifting. That leads to decaying in the neighborhoods. When people abandon the neighborhoods and you see this blight, that has a psychological impact on people, and that drives people to commit these crimes.
I mean, you're working backwards from the...
No, you're actually working backwards.
Wait, but no. Poverty, clearly, this is a very simple concept, leads to something like shoplifting. Why would someone shoplift based on a personal pathology?
She thinks motherfuckers are shoplifting pizza Lunchables. Oh, just kill me, fam. I'm not gonna be able to make it. I'm not gonna be able to make it through this. I'm not gonna be able to make it through this, dude. It's poverty tourism. I don't like it when rich people talk about what they think the poor experience is like. It's so cringe. Like, oh yeah, like shoplifting. Like, yeah, the only reason you shoplift is because you're trying to get food for your family. Like, bro, come on.
They're shoplifting because they're desperate.
Not necessarily. Like, so we have a lot.
I'm glad I'm not saying anything. Emma is bad faith and inseparable. Necro, main for life. Skelly boys, raise up. Lawson Harrison said, access could of course be better, but it's not going to be a solution. We can't force an unwell person to get help with a majority of them, which a majority of them, for whatever reason, do not want or think they need help with. Sure.
Why would someone shoplift based on a personal pathology? They're shoplifting because they're desperate.
Not necessarily. Like, so we have a lot of lax shoplifting laws in California, for example.
So they're
and
doing
what
it
they
just
find
for
is we
fun?
have a lot of organized retail theft because there's no consequences for it.
It's profit.
For instance,
People are trying to make money.
Well,
and they're desperate, and we have untold levels of income inequality in this country.
Well, is it-
Income inequality, actually, income inequality in an area is a predictor for crime, but it's not because people are just like desperate and dying or whatever, right?
income inequality or poverty?
Since the late 70s, 900%. That's the increase in CEO.
Oh shit, I was just about to say that. She was saying 900% increase in pay to the wealthiest CEOs of companies.
Pay versus 12% for the working class in this country.
That's
you
very
don't think
bad.
that leads to levels of desperation?
So wait, is income inequality the cause or is poverty the cause? Because those are two different things.
I mean, they go hand in hand.
They
Not
really
necessarily.
Yes, they
no.
do. Because all
Not
the
at
wealth.
No, they don't, because there are areas that experience extreme poverty that don't lead to increases in crime, like poor rural communities, don't necessarily have tons of crime. Income inequality in areas, I think, tends to be a much better predictor of criminality than just poor people.
Wealth is going towards the CEOs and to the billionaires in this country.
But it's not a
and
zero-sum
trickling
economy.
down.
But
I don't know.
what is it?
But also, if income inequality is the driver of crime, then how come we saw a giant crime decline after the mid-90s when income inequality was going up? In fact, we saw this happen all the way to 2019.
Can you repeat that?
The income inequality being a predictor of crime is a localized effect, I believe. So when you're in areas that have high amounts of income inequality, it's not income inequality as measured across the entire country. It's income inequality as measured in like a particular area. So like neighborhoods with higher inequality or cities with higher inequality will have higher crime, not like the inequality measured across the entire country.
We had a giant crime decline from around 1995, 1996 nationwide from all the way to 2019 while income inequality was rising during that period of time.
Right.
So why would that occur if income inequality is driving crime?
I mean, I'm not exactly sure, you're the expert, but I do know that you're saying that there was an increase in crime in 2021 and 2022,
Well,
and it doesn't matter now
know
that
if
it's
you can
going
see
back
this.
down to 2023 levels.
I wonder if she knew that Sean was going to be here, because if Sean's going to be here, you got to do all your reading on this, on the crime shit, because this is like the only area that he like mass prepares for or knows like a ton about. Or not to, that sounded like I was insulting him. I just mean like this is like his specialty area. Like if you're going to debate AJW on crime, you need to have like stats and shit ready to go for this.
This is just New York
I can't
City.
see this. Yeah.
I just pulled up New York City.
Look at that. Right. Exactly.
So in the
So this is what I was talking about. Crime's peak, violent crime was in the 90s. This just says murders, but I'm pretty sure all violent crime peaked in the 90s. And then it's fallen sharply from there.
at the start of 1990, crime was at its highest, and it dropped rather massively
Yes.
into just before 2000, where it continued to decline. And then from 2019,
Why was that? I don't know if researchers have decided why it was. I think there have been three big there have been three big things that I've heard, but all with varying. I don't know how much we believe in any of them. One was that one guy did that huge like correlative research on crime and lead, that a lot of lead was removed from paint, from gasoline, from a lot of different areas, from soils, that the amount of lead was massively decreasing in the like 70s and 80s, and that by the time those people got to be at criminal ages, they were less likely to be exposed to that. So there's lead gasoline and leaded like paints and everything. That's one thing I've heard. A second thing I've heard is abortion, that access to abortion after Roe v. Wade and everything was causing a lot of populations of people that might have been more predisposed towards crime, single parent households, that could have been a massive reduction in crime. That could have been a thing. Another hypothesis I've heard was that a lot of gangs just like a lot of gangs were kind of like trying to dice up and sort out territory, and that by the 90s and onwards, they'd largely kind of like figured out like, this is our turf, this is your turf, and you know, as long as you stay the fuck away from us, we'll stay the fuck away from you. So that a lot of like gang violence decreased because people had kind of figured out more like who was selling where. In terms of like how much any of these had an impact, or what was like the crime bill, whether or not, you know, bro, this guy just did like 50% of health in one shot. Whether you like it or not, it does seem to be the case that having more cops in an area does actually decrease the amount of crime in that area. And broken windows policing, however racist some of it might have been in its implementation, probably did work to decrease quite a bit, or at least have a measurable impact on crime and criminality in an area. These are all like things that I've heard. I don't know like how much any one particular thing was the thing that caused violent crime to drop, but these are like things that I've heard. Yeah.
Into 2020, we see a huge increase. That's pre-pandemic. Right. So there's a couple interesting things to point out there.
No, to be clear, that's not pre-pandemic. That's the year-over-year increase. So right. It would be in the year 2020. To be clear, so 2019 would be the low number.
The increase actually, the draw is before 2020. Meaning that could be 2018 to 19. Then, if that's the point you're making.
No, it's I've seen these numbers. I'm telling you, you're reading this chart wrong, because in New York City, do they have the raw number of homicides on the side? If you track it, you have around.
Yeah, this is just
murders right here.
Right.
You have about 300, and then it jumps to about 469.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, crime dropped everywhere throughout the country since lead gasoline was outlawed. There is a massive connection, lead paint, lead gasoline predominantly affecting poor and lower income people, which probably did contribute to some of the increase in volatility in that kind of instance.
I completely agree. I read that report. It was fascinating that when we started taking lead out of the atmosphere, crime started to drop. But that would also make the argument that it's not poverty driving crime. It was like chemical imbalance or something.
It's both. It's absolutely both.
Well, I think it would play a role. Like the lead would play a role because it was in gasoline, so it's in the air. Yeah, so it's impacting everyone.
It depresses brain function and things like that.
True, but I think public policy has a huge impact as well, because again, we saw a dramatic crime. This crime wave started in the 1960s, right? And this is when we started embracing this idea that poverty was the root cause of crime, that this was more the realm of the social workers, all things that sound really familiar to today. And from 1960 all the way to 1979, the incarceration rate, even though in raw numbers it was rising, was dropping per capita. So we saw this crime increase, and what you would end up getting in 1979 for murder, on average, was something like 5 years. For rape, it was something like 3.4 years. And obviously, like, this created a problem because we just weren't prosecuting people. This is why we ended up going with a mass incarceration solution, which, by the way, did work, and all these other policies to get tough on crime. You laugh, but you're definitely
No, I mean,
wrong.
mass incarceration, we incarcerate more people than any other country.
We have the highest rate of violent crime for any modern Western country.
I mean, I don't have that statistic in front of me, but we still... So how does that connect to the mass incarceration point? If it worked, then what does the violent crime rate have to do with it? You just want to warehouse more people?
No, I didn't say... when I say it worked, we started expanding the prison population seriously in the 1980s to the 1990s. If you go to the Brennan Center for Criminal Justice, which is a left-wing organization, they say post the year 2000, mass incarceration lost its effectiveness. But most of the mass incarceration was pre the year 2000. So obviously it had some impact, and it ranges. Low estimates are about 6% on the crime rate, which is very low, but the high estimates are about 30%. And the reason it worked is because the philosophy behind mass incarceration is pretty simple. what you're trying to do is incapacitate criminals, because the same criminals are often reoffending. You brought up shoplifting earlier. You can actually pull up an article to find out that the same 300 people in New York City represent a third of the shoplifting arrests total for a single year.
Probably because
This
they're
is because they're
incredibly
repeat offenders.
impoverished and they need to find a way to actually sustain their livelihoods in this country.
Marshall Elstad, 99.99. Jesus. If you had to identify broadly what causes increase in crime rates, what is it? Class jealousy and too much free time, or something else entirely? This is not going to be a very data-driven answer. What I would say is that people, broadly speaking, are going to take the path of least resistance that leads to the most reward. That's what I would say, broadly speaking. So the goal should probably be to increase the friction on illegitimate sources of income and to decrease the friction on legitimate sources of income. So for instance, if you are in an area where criminality is not very available, I don't know if in Omaha, Nebraska, at least where I live, I don't know if I could have made money selling drugs. I don't know where to start, but there's a path forward where I can go to school, go to college and get a job, then that's probably going to be the path that you would follow, right? If the path before you is your school kind of sucks, not many people graduate, and college is maybe whatever, but you got an opportunity to, sling dope on a corner or go work for somebody, illegitimately, you're probably going to follow that path. I think that people tend to just follow very predictable paths in society. So the goal policy should be to designate or design paths that are as fruitful for society as possible, right? That should be like the goal in good policy. Do you think that culture plays a part as well? Yeah, culture is probably going to be an augmenting force as well. In some cases, it might have a weak effect. In some cases, it might have an incredibly strong effect. If you take a black person and you throw them into a pretty wealthy neighborhood with wealthy parents and they go to good schools, I don't know if gang culture is going to make this guy all of a sudden hood out. I don't think that's going to happen. But some cultures are probably incredibly protective. So for instance, certain, I don't like to say Asian culture because there are a lot of different types, but certain I could probably say Jewish culture, highly values things like education and achievement and some moral standard. That's probably going to be a protective factor even against Jewish people in poorer areas would be my guess. So cultural factors are probably going to be protective or be aggravators, I guess, of positive and negative things respectively, depending on what you're talking about. But that would be another thing that kind of sits over the top of everything else, I think.
That's put a very good way. That's phrased very well, to maintain their livelihoods.
Well,
So-
they're
Rewind this.
Incapacitate criminals, because the same criminals are often reoffending. You brought up shoplifting earlier.
Asians value education too. Why do you shy away from saying Asians value education? Because Asian is so broad, and I feel like different people come to the United States for different reasons, and I feel like there's different groups of immigrants. So for instance, I've heard of a lot of Chinese. Well, not the Chinese people that came over initially for building our railroads, but for instance, Chinese immigration students today come over, tend to be participating in Ivy League or really high level state schools or whatever. Chinese immigrants tend to do really well. I think South Korean immigrants, also tend to be very wealthy, come over and do well. I haven't heard the same about Japanese foreign exchange students. I don't know why, if maybe that data exists and I just haven't heard it. And then people from Southeast Asia, I don't hear as much, but yeah. I think usually when we talk about really good Asian immigrants in the United States, I think we're usually talking about Chinese people. So I try to be careful not to just I don't want to just put all of the Asian people in the same boat, people from Vietnam and Cambodia and Malaysia, and the Philippines. That's considered Asia, right? Philippines should be considered Asia, right? Are probably going to be a lot different in terms of educational outcomes and income bracket as compared to people from South Korea and China. That'd be my guess, but yeah.
You can actually pull up an article to find out that the same 300 people in New York City represent a third of the shoplifting arrests total for a single year.
probably because
This
they're
is because they're
incredibly
repeat offenders.
impoverished and they need to find a way to actually sustain their livelihoods in this country.
That's put a very good way. That's phrased very well, to maintain their livelihoods.
Well,
So-
no, their life is a better way to maintain.
Sure, but I guess my point is, some of them certainly are desperate. But when
Yeah.
you see videos of a guy shoveling stuff into a garbage bag, That's not desperation.
But
That's
again,
profit.
this is what you do, Tim. You return to anecdotal examples
We're
when
talking
I'm
about 300
trying to
people.
talk about.
We're talking about just the 300 people,
Wait.
And I am talking
which is the
about
anecdotal evidence.
what 300 people?
He said the same 300 people are the ones committing the crime. I said, right.
third of the shoplifting
These
arrests in New York
specific
City.
individuals are doing it for profit.
Okay, so
not
we should have a
desperation.
system of mass incarceration because there are 300.
I didn't say that.
Because I'm talking to you now. There are 300 repeat offenders.
No, we should incapacitate repeat offenders so they stop offending.
Got
So
it.
if
So
you're
this is all
arrested-
about the fact that
if
you
you're
are not in
arrested for
favor of bail reform because in New York
What?
State, which is now currently being rolled back, we decided that we weren't going to require cash bail for nonviolent felonies and for misdemeanors. And you think that that's a good policy?
To not require cash bail?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, that we're rolling it back. You
I think
that's a good
look,
policy?
if you're concerned about people not being able to get out of jail because of their financial means, then I can understand reducing or even eliminating the cash bail system. Because I understand if you don't have a lot of money, even though you really only have to throw down 10% for bail in most cases, unless it's like a set figure for the bond, then I get that argument. But what you need, and the state of New York desperately needs this, is some kind of threat assessment. Like, you should be able to hold somebody if they present themselves as a danger or a repeat offender, regardless of bail, without bail, so that they don't continue to reoffend.
Okay, but do you know what happens when people are held in Rikers, for example, in a pre-detention center? How many deaths have happened there before they're even convicted of a crime?
Look, again, that's an issue for how the jailing system works in New York City, and I am in favor of building out the jail capacity because
You're talking about cash bail, though. That is exactly the point that we're discussing here.
Yeah.
Right. So you're in favor of people being held before they're convicted of a crime.
Yes.
In Rikers.
If
Even though there
they
are
show a
deaths and
propensity to reoffend, 100%.
What is a propensity to reoffend?
A history, like being arrested over and over again, prior conviction.
Wow, Manic Pixie, welcome to Tier 5 Cyber Clubber. Whew, spooky.
Yes.
So you think that they should be held in a prison that has been...
It's a jail, but yes.
Or jail, excuse me. A jail that has been proven to be one of the worst conditions in the country.
Well, it doesn't have to be specifically
Suicides,
Rikers Island.
Dozens of deaths just this year, even if they haven't been convicted of a crime.
Convicted of a crime. Yeah, for sure.
But I think...
But that's very anti-constitutional and anti-democratic.
How is it anti-constitutional?
The Fourth Amendment. It violates the Fourth Amendment.
Protects you from illegal search and seizures.
Well, I mean, you are
I think it's
the
the
right to a speedy
Fifth?
trial. People
Is
are
it
held.
Fifth?
Fifth Amendment. Yes.
I do think we should
I
have
can- I can-
reform
Yeah.
on the speedy trial side, but the idea that it's unconstitutional to hold somebody pre-trial is ridiculous. Our law is based on English common
Sixth.
law.
6. Damn.
We're all bad.
Our law is based
Yeah.
on English common law, and the reason we have jails is that you would actually be held in a dungeon awaiting trial. So it's like built into the system. Bail is like a courtesy. It's actually a progressive reform in response to that, where you lay down some kind of capital in place of yourself.
How much money do you want to spend on jails in New York City?
As much as it takes.
So just warehousing people before they're convicted of anything.
Well, again, it's not warehousing everybody, but if you have a propensity to reoffend, I think judges should be able to have judgment. It's kind of in the name, and assess these people and hold them.
So you just want to give it to the judgment of the judges. And it doesn't.
Yes, I would like the judges to have judgment. Yes.
Okay, but there should be guardrails in place to prevent judges from. I mean, judges are human beings; they can be unjust as well. I don't really put them
Well,
on
you
the
could
pedestal that you do.
obviously, I'm not in favor of like a $1 million bond for somebody who's arrested for shoplifting, even if they're arrested 27 times. So yeah, you can have guardrails from the legislature, but they can't assess dangerousness right now in the state of New York.
They assess it in ways. The reason we put this law into place, which is now being rolled back, that were deemed inherently racist. They
How
deem
so?
that it was disproportionately black and brown people who are
Okay,
warehouse
but how's that
Rikers.
racist though?
Because at their discretion, it was implemented in a racist way. It's
But
the
if you
same
look
way
at the
that
crime
stop and frisk-
statistics, they're
well, there you go. So
disproportionately black and
so
Hispanic.
this is what the reality is for you: is you believe that black and Hispanic people inherently are committing.
When did I say
more
inherently?
crimes. I mean, this
If
is.
you pull up like NYPD crime data, for instance, since you brought up stop and frisk, you can look at the shootings, like the shooting suspects in any given year. And if you find me a year where 92% or greater is not black or Hispanic in terms of the shooting suspects, then I mean, I would be shocked because I've looked at it for the past
suspects.
20 years.
So
Yeah,
that's
suspects.
the cops' discretion. So
No.
Oh, you got it. You just have to eat this one. Black people and Hispanic people commit more crime than white people. Like that's It's fine. There's nothing wrong with biting that bullet. It's not even a bullet to bite. Like, that should logically follow from they're living in worse conditions. They've got less educational opportunity available. Like, it's easy to bite that bullet and then advance the conversation. You cannot do this silly dance where you're trying to pretend that we're trying to pretend that they don't. It's just, everybody hears you as sounding ridiculous. Like, why do this? It's so stupid.
Oh, you get a report,
right?
And you get a description of the suspect, and they are 92% every single year or above Black or Hispanic.
Can I tell you guys a very famous New York story? There was a black cop, and he went to Central Park and started giving out tickets to white couples having picnics and drinking wine. And he said public alcohol consumption is a crime in this city, and he started giving these uppity yuppies tickets.
Right.
He got in serious trouble. The reason he did it was because the cops would go into the black neighborhoods and give people drinking 40s on their stoops tickets. And he said, how can these people at their own homes, on their own porches, get a ticket for drinking booze? Then when I go into Central Park and say, we're going to apply the same standard, I get in trouble for it. So New York's got serious problems. Even Bloomberg, like, that guy's awful. He made a bunch of...
This is why you have the brown bag. Put your shit in a brown bag, get publicly drunk, and nobody can fuck with you for it.
Like... I'm not going to say that...
But the reason... I just want to cut you off because you mentioned Bloomberg, and I want to respond to what you said. Under Bloomberg, 90% of the stop and frisks that were done were, by the way, they didn't find anything, but 90% targeted Black and brown people. So you're taking...
So the highest number, by the way, is 86%.
No.
You're taking the data and using what the cops did, where they over-police in certain areas, and then pretending like there's an overrepresentation inherently, criminally, in those kinds of populations. And
there absolutely is an overrepresentation of crime in those populations. How can you, oh my God, she's gonna get eviscerated on this conversation with fucking Sean. Why would she even try this?
It's
okay.
A racist argument.
So you're wrong in a bunch of different ways, so let me just run through them. So first and foremost, the highest year was 86%, and that was the year with the dramatic increase in stops. And if you ask me if I'm in favor of just expanding stop and frisk, which is different from Giuliani's stop, question, and frisk, although, you might not be interested in that specific difference, to the levels that Bloomberg did, I would say it's unnecessary, it aggravates people, it creates a whole bunch of problems. That being said, they're not over-targeted because, again, there is no year during the entire tenure of Bloomberg where the shooting suspects were any less than 92%. So what the NYPD does, because it's the most data-driven police force in the entire world, is they map crime through a system called CompStat. When there's a lot of shootings in a specific area, they send the police to those areas. The stops, questions, and frisks all relate to where the shootings are, and it just so happens to be those areas are Black or Hispanic.
Right, but do you get accosted on the street by cops regularly in New York City?
It happened to me when I was younger, yes, but not now.
Okay, but do you understand
But to your point about hit rate, because you brought it up, hit rate was not the goal of stop, question, and frisk. This is one of the things where you're like, oh, well, this program didn't work because my standard that I look for arbitrarily shows that it was ineffective. That's like saying a plane doesn't work because it's not a good submarine.
No, it's not
that doesn't
arbitrary.
make any sense.
90% of the stop and frisks came up with nothing.
True, but the point was to deter the carrying of firearms.
Have you done illegal drugs in your life?
Maybe.
I have. I could have been stopped and frisked, and I could have gone to prison, or I could have been held if I had a little bit less money in Rikers indefinitely until my trial came. Because a cop just decided, hey, I'm going to stop and frisk you, but they wouldn't do that to me because I'm a white woman.
That's nice, but anyway, it's about shootings, and the point of the program, and this is stated quite literally, to deter people from carrying illegal firearms.
It's absolutely not about
it. 100% is.
Are you in favor of gun control?
This is what I'm trying to say.
I'm a New Yorker, so I'm not a big gun guy, but...
This is my point where...
target guns, and that's why stop and
you definitely got to target illegal guns,
I'm going to agree with Emma,
sure.
but Emma's not going to agree with me. The idea that the police can decide to arbitrarily stop people because they might be carrying a firearm violates the Second and Fourth Amendments.
Well, again,
stop and frisk is completely unconstitutional. In my
That's
opinion.
why Fourth Amendment was in my mind. I was
Well,
thinking
again,
about stop and frisk.
it's you're supposed to stop, question, and frisk, and usually
No.
it's based on reasonable suspicion, and they're
That
supposed
what
to.
I'm bearing arms
They're
under the
supposed to.
Constitution.
Okay, wait, is Sean in my chat right now? I don't know why you would have a program called Stop, Ask, and Frisk or Stop and Frisk if the stop is based on reasonable suspicion. You don't need any extra program. If a cop has reasonable suspicion you've committed a crime, then he's got the right to perform an investigation, and you have to sit there and allow him to do so, right?
They're supposed to follow the Terry standard.
This idea that because a particular group of people may be carrying guns, we're going to go start stopping a whole bunch of them. I'm like, the Constitution protects our right to keep and bear arms in the first place. So now you're violating, you're ignoring the Second Amendment and using that and by ignoring it, now you're violating the Fourth.
As a side note, it's not true that Hispanics commit more crimes per capita than white people. Florida, for example, has a higher rate of white crime than Hispanic crime. That might be true. For some reason, collecting data around Hispanic people has been really weird because a lot of there are some data points that will mix Hispanic people with white people. Sometimes that's why you'll see whites and Hispanics, or that sometimes you'll see data that says non-white Hispanics. But I don't actually know if anybody knows what Hispanic even is or means. Like, I don't actually know if I'm supposed to put Hispanic when I'm being asked questions, because sometimes, like in the United States, we've got race and ethnicity, and I think for ethnicity I'll put Caucasian, because I'm pretty sure I am. But then under race, it'll ask different questions. And then we've had these arguments on stream before for like, what does Latino mean? What does race mean? Or I'm sorry, what does Hispanic mean? What's the difference between race and ethnicity? We got into that argument with Annalicia, and I thought she was super wrong on something, but apparently in Canada, they use ethnicity or race in either the opposite or a completely different way than we use it in the United States. Like, all of that shit is like really weird. I don't know if when it comes to Hispanic stuff, I think it's kind of hard sometimes because you don't always measure it. That's why sometimes even in like criminality stuff, I've seen it where it'll say like non-white Hispanics, or it'll say whites and Hispanics. The stop is based on suspicion initially, match description of shooting an area. Questioning determines whether a search is conducted. Gotcha.
Fourth Amendment. I mean, this is
Something else that libertarians also bring up that's probably important too is when you're trying to measure the criminality of a group of people, sometimes it's important to bring up average age as well. So for instance, criminality is highly correlated, especially violent crime, with age of people. So if you take a cohort and they tend to be much younger than another cohort, like 70-year-old dudes aren't out here generally doing armed robbery. 65-year-olds aren't out here like serial killing or murdering people in crimes of passion, right? Tends to be crimes, 55-year-olds aren't doing like, shoplifting and shit, generally speaking. So if you've got a group of people that are much younger and you compare them to a cohort that averages or skews much older in age, you should probably also control for that as well. That was a common response I saw from the from the Cato Institute when it talked about the criminality of immigrants in the United States. Whereas immigrants tend to have much higher levels of criminality than native populations, but especially if the cohort of immigrants you're measuring are like average age 22, and then you're comparing them to a group of people whose average age is in like the 40s or 50s. 50s is probably go either. But like, of course, the criminality for the younger population is going to run way higher just because of age of people. Yeah. Wait, so I just died there and I wasn't even tabbed out. I feel like I'm going to die doing a dungeon here. But anyways.
It's absolutely nonsense.
This is why I'm actually critical of Bloomberg's expansion of the program, because the way it used to work is that if you had a shooting suspect, you would have a description, you'd send cops to the area, and they would stop people with that description, ask them questions, and if there was reasonable suspicion, they would conduct a search. This is why under Giuliani, the maximum amount of stops in a year, and New York City of 8.5 million people, was 90,000 people. And under Bloomberg, it was something like 700,000, maybe 800,000 people. So he dramatically expanded the program to the point where I do think it was constitutionally violative.
So you are kind of to the right of Donald Trump on this, who has been releasing nonviolent...
She's so like obsessed with just like the labels and the politics and the like. Can you just like have a conversation about like the topic? Like, sorry, I don't know.
offenders or
Yeah,
did
oh
when
no,
he was
Donald
president.
Trump's First Step Act is absolutely terrible. It sets up a bunch of incentives.
Well, I mean, you're
that
further right than
lessen
I'd
the
imagine a ton of
then
this
let the
audience.
The funny thing is that policy-wise, I don't think it's even true that Donald Trump is that far right at all. Donald Trump is not like a hardcore right-wing extremist. You could argue that has like fascist tendencies, which I would agree with, but he's not like a ultra-conservative. Like the dude's a fucking real estate guy from New York, right? Like you're not going to Donald Trump as like the new leader of like the neocons or like the new far-right person. Like it's not really that impressive or an insult or whatever. Like there's probably issues that I'm farther right of Donald Trump on, depending on what you're talking about. But
audience is. I mean,
that's fine.
That's
like I'm not here
extremist.
I'm not here to win over the audience. Well, I will win over the audience because I'm correct, but
No,
Our
yes.
audience is mostly moderates.
yeah,
Well,
but Donald
I don't know
Trump's
about that.
First Step Act had a lot of language about going soft on youthful offenders, and that's one of the reasons why a huge portion of the increase in homicide that we're seeing is among young men, and specifically among young black men in this country.
I want to bring your guys' attention to this chart because there's a lot that it shows. I know it's just murders,
Right.
but we're talking about, you mentioned something about the 60s. For some reason, in 1962 to 64, we start seeing, from 1962 onward, a ridiculous spike in the murder rate, offenses per 100,000 population. I don't know exactly why. We can see around 1990, it starts to decline rapidly. There's a couple interesting points there. This is U.S. murder rate. So New York City's broken window policing has nothing to do with it. This is the entirety of the country. This could be one of two things.
I think that from what I've read, a lot of it is contentious, but I think broken windows policing probably did lead to a bit of a reduction in crime. Maybe not much, but a statistically significant amount. Like it seems like it did. I'm pretty sure. I should have, maybe someday we'll dig too much into this, but I'm pretty sure that like having more police in an area does tend to reduce the crime. Like that is a fact. I think if you've lived in cities, it's almost even like a little bit obvious. Like I noticed like here in Miami, I don't know if they're trying to make it tourist friendly or what, but they park cop cars fucking everywhere. Half the cars don't even have cops in them. But I think just having police around tends to lead to like lower crime rates. Broken windows policing probably caused a measurable reduction in crime. But theoretically there are other problems going along with it, like profiling and everything that people don't like as well. But
Things. We when the leaded gasoline, that was the 80s, right?
I believe so, yeah.
We were getting rid of
And
it.
the last truck, I think for trucks, it was the 90s.
But this also coincides with one of the, if not the largest economic expansion, or I shouldn't say that now because who knows how you define it with the pandemic and all that stuff. But we had a massive economic boom in the 90s. So this would
Destiny, you need a better response on Trump or better define what the right wing is because leftists call libertarians right wing. No, I really don't. It's really not that useful of a label to say like this guy's right wing or this guy's left wing. Like I'd rather just talk about policies. Right now, like leftist is a decent word because it tends to describe like communists and socialists. But like, I mean, even so, like I very rarely criticize someone like, oh, he's left wing or oh, he's right wing. Like generally, you need to talk a little bit more about policies to get an understanding of what it is that somebody actually believes. Because the populist kind of like bend that a lot of politicians and political followers are taking now, kind of populism will break a lot of right wing, left wing traditional things. So for instance, in the United States, right wing is seen as less government, broadly speaking, and left wing is seen as more government, broadly speaking. But if you get a hardcore right wing populist, he might be in favor of huge minimum wage laws. He might be in favor of single payer healthcare. He might be in favor of big wealth redistribution programs. He just doesn't want immigrants coming over and taking them, right? So that might be an example of a right wing populist. So in some senses, he comes across as, in the American sense, very, very left wing because he wants all these big government programs, but like he wants them restricted to people that are more native to the country and not like immigrants. Not even necessarily white people, but just like people that are more native to the country. So the explosion of populism in the United States makes it hard to just say right wing versus left wing in terms of like accurately analyzing somebody's political belief system, I think.
Interestingly correlate with the idea that as people started to get more things, like their lives started to improve, crime, murder rate started to drop dramatically.
Yeah, and I would say that that was a temporary kind of sugar high based on neoliberal policies of Reagan and Clinton, where there was a lot of money that was released back into the public because of massive tax cuts. I mean, we can talk about confiscatory taxation if you'd like, and the top marginal tax rate. Top marginal tax rate in 1961. It's funny that you brought up that figure. 1960, it's 91% compared to 37%.
Nobody paid. That top marginal tax rate was not paid by very many people. People find different ways to compensate themselves. I don't know why this marginal tax rate keeps getting brought up. The average amount of income that we collect, when you look at total tax receipts as a percentage of GDP, is always around, in the United States, I think it's always around 17% of GDP is usually collected back in taxes. The idea that 91% marginal tax rate was being effectively paid by almost anybody is probably not true. Like, you're going to find other ways to make money. Nobody's going to be satisfied with a 91% tax rate. That's fucking insane.
So you're,
now. But
it went down in the 60s? Or?
Reagan cut a bunch of taxes during that time period, and a lot of people got an influx in cash.
Crime
and then
did drop.
Sorry?
Crime did drop.
Well, right, but that was temporary.
Right.
And then the income inequality kind of set in, and the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And that's mostly what I'm interested in talking about on my program.
Let me show you guys something which will add some context to the current crime spike. So you see right here this drop-off after looks like about 2007. There's a major drop-off in murder, and then it spikes in 2014. The problem with a chart like this is that it doesn't account for technology. The reason the murder rate declined in 2007 was...
I mean, no chart accounts for technology. That's why we appeal to studies and not just single data points, not just single charts. That's the difference between measuring one thing and having a study that tries to contextualize and explain why a particular thing happens. A chart is not a study for that exact reason. Yeah.
Was cell phones. So when cell phones became ubiquitous, the ability to call emergency services became instantaneous. So when people were victims of violent crime, you had emergency service notified immediately. And so this resulted in a drop in the murder rate, but not in a drop in violent crimes. Not a direct correlation, meaning crime had been going down.
I've never
but the murder
heard
rate
this
dropped more than violent crime in general
in my
because
entire
people
life.
were dying. They were being stabbed, they were being robbed, they were being shot, and they were living. That's not murder, so it wasn't counted as murder.
Well, there is a chart, by the way, that you can look at because that actually pairs recessions with this murder chart. And again, the correlation is not really there. And as far as New York, you say that it had nothing to do with broken windows policing.
That map specifically was the U.S.
Yeah, I know, but you said it had nothing to do with broken windows policing, but that assumes that there isn't a greater decrease in crime in New York than nationwide, which is not the case. There was a greater decrease in the city of New York.
That's another important thing as well. I don't know. I think Sean actually has a degree in criminal stats. Whenever you're trying to do a study to measure like increase or decrease of like a certain variable in a given area, one of the most important things that I've seen, I usually see this in economics research. It's probably true of epidemiological or crime stats as well, or criminal research as well. It's very important that you pick out placebo cities to compare when you've got a certain hypothesis. So for instance, if I say that like, minimum wage had a positive or negative impact on employment in this particular city, it's important that I have other cities picked out at the time to compare their increase or decrease. Because let's say, for instance, I say, minimum wage had a positive impact on employment in this state. Then let's say I look at the state, I look at the minimum wage, I see minimum wage increased $2 an hour, employment increased 3%. Oh, well look, I've proven my study, right? Well, no, because let's say we pick out 4 or 5 comparable cities that were placebo cities. Let's say in those cities, let's say the employment grew by 10%, right? Well, in that case, the increase in minimum wage, even though it led to an increase in employment, is actually negatively correlated with employment because we compare that to the placebo cities that we're measuring. We say, does this make sense? Hold on, I'm sorry. It's not a placebo. It's I don't think it's a control city. There's another name they use for it in studies. I'm not gonna be able to think of it right now. But there are names for these other cities that you pick out to use as like kind of, somebody said benchmarks or whatever. But yeah, it's important to you have to have these sorts of controls. You can't just look at an increase or decrease in a particular area and assume that a policy did it. You have to look at like a nationwide trend and then use comparable. You have to use comparable other places to compare it to.
Like Chicago had a decline too, but Chicago's homicide rate, which is almost on par with the city of New York, is 6 times higher per capita than the city of New York. And in terms of raw numbers, it's double, even though they're at 1/3 of the population, which is the same thing that I just said with different math. So New York became the safest big city, and our crime rate actually declined. And in fact, Freakonomics actually attributes this to the legalization of abortion, which happened in the city of New York.
One of the big ones that I brought up, yeah.
Roe versus Wade. It was one of the 6 states that had it legal electively. So this is like a known thing that people have talked about and speculated on what the result is. Now, also for the environmental point.
Wait, can I just ask you a question about that?
Sure.
What does the connection to what does crime
That's what
have
Freakonomics says, that the legalization of abortion, and they compare it to Ceausescu, whatever country he was the dictator of. they say that correlates with crime because they say all these unwanted children end up being born and then they end up committing
Well, that
crime.
is certainly a claim. So that's how that works together then. You're saying that abortion should be illegal for that reason?
No.
Wait, what? I feel like she's trying so hard to fish for gotchas. I don't even know if she's... Or did I miss something in that conversation?
Then you're saying that abortion should be illegal for that reason?
No. It would be legal abortion leads to less unwanted children being born. And again, you're
So
smiling,
are you in
but
favor of abortion?
I'm actually...
Is she just like trying to get him because she thinks he's like a conservative? So she's like trying to... I feel like she's like not even... She just like... She probably thinks she's in like a panel surrounded by Nazis, I guess. And she's just like trying to fish for conservative points. Is that...
pro-choice, but not for this reason. But you're smiling, but the thing is, this is what was proposed in Freakonomics. I actually disagree with their analysis. They leave a lot of things out. But
So you're
again,
saying-
I use that as an example to
just
show that the New York decline did start before the national
You're just-
decline.
I'm
to
almost
clarify real
positive
quick.
that study has been called into question.
It is.
multiple
It is.
Just to
100%.
clarify, you're
Yeah.
saying more abortions meant lower crime? Is that what you're
That's
saying?
what Freakonomics asserted. It's in their little movie and it's in their original book.
I think that makes sense. If you've got two parents, if you've got one parent, they got a baby, that baby's getting food. You know, like you could have no job, you could be homeless. Someone's gonna find.
Well, you know what I would love
to.
to decrease desperation in terms of families in this country. I'm not sure if you've talked about it a ton on your program, Tim, but we should have made the child tax credit permanent that we expanded in the 2021
True.
American Rescue Act.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So there was a tax credit that was in place, but during the pandemic, it was expanded to be a monthly payment. It also, the amount was increased, so it was up to $3,600 a month for 6 and under, $3,000 for 6 to 17. And then it also was expanded to include people who had too little income to qualify previously. We cut child poverty by nearly in half, instantly. And the reason that we don't have it is because the entire Republican Party and Joe Manchin and Sinema essentially nixed it. But this is the kind of stuff that's possible in this country to make people less desperate. If you want less crime, make society a broader, more beneficial place for people with a bigger safety net so people don't have to turn to desperation.
Real quick, this is the crazy thing, because I think the only people who disagree with that are establishment Republicans, like the prominent Republican
Sure.
Party members.
But you should talk about it more on
We
your
do.
show.
I mean, I think that I'll go extreme with it. If after your second kid, no more taxes. Income tax, 0. Have 2 kids, no taxes.
No shot Tim believes that. I'm being honest, I'm just assuming. But I would have imagined that does Tim never talk about the declining birth rate shit? Or is that, I've talked to so many red pillars, I might just be ascribing that position to him and he doesn't actually believe it. But I feel like the idea of discouraging children seems kind of spooky in this society. Like, aren't we kind of worried about people not having enough kids? Why would you take away that tax credit for people just because they have a certain number of children?
I mean, I know that...
Rewind and listen again? Wait, listen again? He's saying, it sounds like he's saying no tax credit, like we're rescinding that tax credit for over 2 children.
I'll go extreme with it. If after your second kid, no more taxes. Income tax, 0.
Oh, he's saying get rid of... Oh, never mind. He's going, wait, never mind. He went way in the other direction. I thought he was saying no more income tax credit for the child tax credit. Oh, okay. Well, this is dumb. Never mind.
Have 2 kids, no taxes.
I mean, I know that there have been certain proposals in places like Hungary that...
That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Who wants to have some children? I'm ready to start pumping babies out in Tim's world.
are like that, but they are heavily, heavily tilted towards heterosexual families as opposed to if a gay couple wants to adopt or have children. I don't agree with that because I want more taxation, frankly, so that we could have socialized health care, we could have a college for all act, which honestly you could pay for with a tax on Wall Street speculation. It would be incredibly easy. It's only $48 billion a year, which is less than the military budget increase that we did in 21 to 22, which was around $71 billion.
Wait, $48 billion a year would pay for education for the entire country? Is that true? How much money out in student loans every single year? Is there a way that I can see like how How much does U.S. spend on college yearly? How much do colleges and universities spend on students? In 2019-2020, degree-granting post-secondary institutions spent $671 billion. Total expenses were $430 billion at public institutions, $228 billion at... Yeah, I would have imagined that number is going to be north. I would have expected even more than this, but around the cost of our military budget would be about what I would have thought. $40 billion a year for all of the post-secondary education in the United States sounds a little low to me. But I could be wrong. Somebody can go look that up if they want to. $48 billion would pay for free public uni, not private. That's what it is. It isn't that expensive. Wait, even like all state schools, Erk? Like to get your full 4-year degree? A first dollar tuition-free program would cost $58 billion this year if it's implemented. Over an 11-year time frame, 4x would cost $800 billion. That's 1%. Huh. This is educationdata.org. Does this really matter for the meaning behind her point? I think numbers do matter, actually. Yeah. Something I try to do when I look stuff up is I think it's important to have like a ballpark understanding of kind of like what you're asking for, because it helps to contextualize a lot of things. For instance, it's a lot of what helps me understand conspiracy theories around like the military industrial complex, right? I think that it's meaningful. I think it's meaningful when somebody's making an accusation that like Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, that they control the entire United States foreign policy. I think it puts that claim in a different question when you're able to point out, hey, if you take every single military, private military contract in the United States and you add up the market capitalization of every single one of these companies, it's half of Apple, right? When you contextualize it that way, the claim that, well, they secretly control our foreign policy, it sounds a lot more silly. I think in general, I think it is a good idea to have a rough grasp of the numbers, just because it puts a lot of other things into perspective, right? Destiny, that's only tuition if I recall. It's not all costs. Okay, sure. Yeah, it's good to know numbers, I think, in general. Like, you don't have to know like exact numbers, but just like ballparks. Like a program that costs $10 billion is a lot different than a program that costs like $10 million, right? A program that costs, $500 billion is a lot different than a program that might cost $500 million. Even though all these numbers are really big for us, well, not for me, because I'm worth over $500 million, but for the rest of you guys, like, even though the numbers all seem big, it's just good to know, like, you want to be like within an order of magnitude. You want to be like within an order of magnitude of a particular thing you're talking about. I think it's important.
$1 million. I want to do that kind of stuff, and so getting rid of income tax, I would not be in favor of it.
For families.
But if you want to create tax incentives for families so that they can raise their kids and they aren't in poverty, I am all for that, Tim.
To your point about nobody would disagree, I would 100% disagree with that, because again,
you don't want tax credits for people that have babies?
There is not a demonstration that these policies that these work in reducing crime. In fact, we see the opposite. If you put up that homicide chart, it starts increasing during the war on poverty, which is the greatest increase in sorry, go ahead.
Not talking about crime.
She said if you wanted to deal with crime, this is how you would do it.
Well, I'm trying to connect it to this, but like...
Right. But in the broader sense,
I think the most important thing to take away from this here is that every single Republican voted against the American Rescue Act and the expanded child tax credit. There is one party that is... Look, it's not good enough. I'm more obviously in the Bernie Sanders wing.
But real quick,
there is no Bernie Sanders wing anymore, but okay.
Deep disagreements with Hillary Clinton-esque neoliberal politicians. But yeah, it's the Democratic Party in favor of policies that are going to be helping people on a day-to-day basis like this.
The Republicans voted against a broad bill that included one thing in it? Is that what happened?
Yeah,
Yes.
but they also fought tooth and nail about the actual child tax credit. This was a part of the Inflation Reduction Act negotiations as well. They were not in favor of that too. And Joe Manchin, your senator, right? We're here in West Virginia.
Awful. We hate him.
I mean, you gotta you're a celebrity here, right, Tim? In West Virginia, you should call on Joe Manchin and say, hey, why don't you do this? Why are you not in favor of a child tax credit?
That dude is neoliberal
Totally.
to perfection. It's like that nobody in West Virginia wants the guy.
Right. I mean,
And
he's
for-
very unpopular.
Right.
Right.
That's not true. He's actually.
I could be wrong, but fuck, Sean. Oh, glad I paused this so I could steal this motherfucker's thunder. I'm pretty sure Manchin was the most popular senator, or at the very least, he made the biggest increase in senatorial popularity gains of any senator in the United States. I don't know how we can say he's not popular, but we'll see what Sean is about to say.
Nobody in West Virginia wants the guy.
Right. I mean,
And
he's
for-
very unpopular.
Right.
Right.
That's not true. He's actually the most popular politician in West Virginia history.
Go talk to some people
Oh, okay.
in West Virginia.
I'm sure you could find people.
Find people, dude.
That might not be true anymore. That might have only been true after the negotiations or whatever, for the last big like American Rescue Plan, all that shit, when he had a lot of power. Wait, real quick. There was a guy that dropped a special crossbow. Was it right here? Who's always guaranteed to drop a good crossbow? I need to go farm this guy whenever I can.
I get
I'm
what
here.
All
Listen,
numbers are in the tank right
I'm in right-wing nut job territory.
Listen.
No, this guy lost his mind.
I get why you're against him.
Maybe 4 years ago he was popular because the state, like for whatever reason, but people are not happy with him today. I've
Tim
not
is right
met a
about this.
single person here who likes him.
I mean, they might be upset with him now, but
he's
has been-
tanking in polling numbers in hypothetical
I mean, this
matchups
is-
with
You've
Jim
got-
Justice in the Senate. That's actually a fact.
West Virginia, 86% Trump supporting state.
Yeah.
All of those people despise him for obvious reasons. But then you go and meet some of the more moderate, don't really care, middle of the road people, and they're just like, what happened to that guy? And so, look, man, I see what you're saying, but I'm telling you, like,
No, I get why you're against him. Because
it's not about me. I'm saying, like, we'll go hang out in any one of these, and this is the Panhandle. Don't get me wrong, but we were hanging out in Charleston, 5 hours from here. Not a single person I've ever met in West Virginia is like, I like that guy. Not one. I've talked to people who are like, who have told me in West Virginia that they don't like Trump. They would rather have DeSantis, and then they say Manchin's got to go. He's got to go. We got to get somebody else. He's awful because he's like, he's not a Democrat or a Republican at this point. It's like he's a corporate. That's it. It's like he's of the corporate party. He doesn't seem to be catering to anybody.
He has a fine line to walk, in my opinion, to hold a state like this as a Democrat. And this, like, I get why she, being more progressive, doesn't like him, but he's like one of the only Democrats that could have won here.
Yes.
Which is why when they tried running progressive in the primary,
They got
like, that
crushed.
person got slaughtered by him.
Manchin.
But I get why you would want to replace him.
Jim-
I want to replace him. The
His-
Republicans lost the Senate.
Jim
He
Justice
was
is
able
very
to hold
likely.
it.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to point this out. Off the top of my head, I think Manchin's numbers are like 55% disapproval right now.
I can't see him winning. I mean, look, I don't know for sure. I'm not psychic, but everyone I talk to, it's like you've got, I think it's, who is it, Mooney, potentially, and Jim Justice. But Jim Justice seems very likely to get it. We'll
Right.
see. I don't know for sure.
Well, you
But now we're
brought
talking
up
West
you
Virginia.
brought up Trump and DeSantis in West Virginia. I'm curious because I saw Tim. You've been like upset a little bit about how DeSantis has been, or maybe
not
not
even that
upset.
good.
Okay.
Or no, vulnerable
Oh, you're
damage is
pissed.
good, huh?
All right. So I'll characterize it as you're a little pissed at how DeSantis has been using those AI images of Trump. Trump
Used
hugging.
3 of them one time.
Yeah. What?
you know.
What? I mean, can you expand on that thought?
Ron DeSantis' team, in order to smear Donald Trump, ran fake images of him kissing and hugging Fauci alongside real images and then wrote real life Trump over the top.
Right.
And it's one thing to play politics, which I despise. When you get someone being like, Nancy Pelosi voted against this act. It's like the Saving Puppies Act, but it's actually a bill that like cuts taxes for oil companies. Or the inverse where it's like, insert Republican voted for whatever. I despise all of that. But actually fabricating images, shrinking them down and placing them alongside real images and then writing real life Trump on it.
Can you pull up the image so I can see it?
Yeah. So I mean, is that kind of the core of your? Would you say as of now, if you were to vote today, you'd be voting for Trump?
Yeah.
But that's the core of your disagreement.
So, there's a lot more than that. Here, take a look at this. This is as I feel like this is campaign ending. I feel like this.
Really?
What
yes.
I mean, it's funny to me.
The
It's
manufacture
silly,
of fake images to trick people into voting for someone is, look, this is
Oh.
the open door.
Jeez.
Ron DeSantis decided to be the person to stick his foot over the line and say, we will manufacture fake images to win.
I mean, they do say that they're fake. Like I
No.
But people
This is
would
someone
probably miss
They
this.
don't say it's fake.
No, it says it right there. Fake.
This is an image calling out
Oh, okay.
the fake graphics. They wrote real life Trump, and this is NPR circling the fake images to call them out.
Right.
They ran it as real life Trump. Now, I understand if you scrutinize the images, you can tell they're fake. This one says Mahihap Wems. Okay, yeah, that's not English, and it's under the White House emblem. But when it's in a video that's a minute long, and you pass this, I've already had people tell me that they didn't realize it was fake, and I've already people say I talked to my parents about it, they thought it was real. And so what the DeSantis fans are doing now is they're like, can you believe Tim actually thought those were real? Like, dude, if you want to play that...
You guys do this shit to me all the time where I complain about somebody making like a certain implication and then you guys are like, oh, well, obviously they were trolling or they didn't mean that. And it's like, okay, but like, how is the audience going to take it, right? It's pretty obvious that the entire audience has been primed to believe. It's like, well, it was a joke. I'm like, okay.
Game and call me stupid and insult me for calling out DeSantis' campaign for doing this. I literally don't care. It changes nothing of my moral stance that this stepped well over the line. Now, I got to be honest. You go back in time to the first time a politician lied, and people were probably like, can you believe he actually lied to us? And we know that's bad, and I hate all of it. But this is the next level. This is like...
Yeah.
Holy, it's bad enough they're all lying.
Well, what's the core of your disagreement otherwise then? I mean, because if it's with COVID, I would say I'm more on Trump's side with that kind of stuff. I liked Operation Warp Speed. Look, I would have done a little differently for giving away government money for vaccines. That we should have nationalized them, and the intellectual property should have been waived so that everybody could have had access to it. Also in the
publicly funded should be publicly owned.
I'm in favor of that, Tim. So I mean, that's one thing that I think Trump is better. And look, just DeSantis is frankly an anti-LGBTQ demagogue, and that's where I think Trump's less dangerous than DeSantis. Okay,
like, he is, but I think it's more so the Florida legislature that's doing it, and then he's latching onto it because I think when it comes to real issues related to stuff, he's mum.
He's been
he's like the lead cheerleader, no?
Center of his campaign.
Yeah, Trump made that at the forefront of his campaign.
No, for sure. I like DeSantis
Trump
in a
wouldn't
lot of
even
ways.
send the National Guard against the Black Lives Matter rioters.
That's a different question. That's not wokeness. That's like crime and law and stuff. DeSantis, I think, is mostly surface level. I like a lot of his policies. I think he's...
What do you like about his policies?
I mean, at the beginning of COVID, it wasn't particularly good, right? He did a lot of what everyone else did. But to be fair, I was very much like, I guess... I was very much, Thomas Massey didn't want to do this big spending bill, and I said, this is crazy. The economy, like, we don't know what's going on. There are people dying. We're seeing videos of people dying in the street. And so I think, hindsight being 2020, I look back and I'm like, I probably should not have just gone along with all of that. That was probably stupid. Ron DeSantis did initially, but then changed and said, you know what, this is not making sense. We're reopening. And I think that made a lot more sense.
It was also under extreme pressure. Like Andrew Cuomo was the most promoted governor in the country, and he was the most attacked.
So DeSantis did well in not the first, but he did well in reopening things back up.
But what policies do you like generally about him? I mean, besides the COVID stuff, what are the other policies like as governor? I mean, you think it's just the state legislature that's putting together these anti... I think it's mostly
Tim,
them.
Tim,
you said that there was a grooming event happening at Club Q, and that was after the shooting, right? Which is essentially kind of saying, well, look, they had it coming a little bit. I mean, you didn't say that, but that's the implication.
I actually said, how do we prevent these things from happening? So I tweeted.
So you actually seem pretty aligned with DeSantis on the anti.
But I don't think it's
how do
him.
I do
I think
this
it's
thing?
the Florida legislature. And if DeSantis becomes president, you think Congress is going to vote for any of these things? As for the Club Q thing, I said, if people keep saying wood chippers, what did you think was going to happen, right? I am saying, stop saying these things.
Saying what?
People keep going online and going, wood chippers, wood chippers, wood chippers. You know what that means, right?
For who, though?
For groomers.
Right, okay.
And I'm like, what do you think is going to happen if you go online and keep calling for death? Like, don't do that. Stop that, right? We want to stop child abuse. We want to stop violence. That's what we want.
So that's why I hope you have dedicated so much of your program to talking about the Catholic Church. Because that is the institution in this country right now that is most associated with child abuse.
Hands down.
Queer people, gay people, trans people, that is not a thing. What is your definition of child abuse?
They're most associated, but they're actually not more abusive than any other religious institution, and they're not nearly as abusive as
no. I want to stay
system.
on this, and I also just
where are the books at? Where did they get moved to?
Tim, though, what policies about DeSantis do you like in terms of what he's running on for president?
Culture war stuff mostly, but I think COVID policy was
plug
good.
for the show.
Oh yeah.
Right, but what's the culture war stuff that you like?
So yes, but the reason why I've not been last year I was like, I think DeSantis is probably better for one simple reason.
No, what stuff do you like now? What do you like that he's running on?
Yeah, culture war stuff predominantly.
But can you expand on that notion?
I think you want me to like pull up specific.
I mean, I don't know. It's like you said that you said that you like certain things, that you're leaning more towards Trump because of AI images. I would hope that there's a little bit more substance to your disagreement.
Well, but every time I try and bring it up, you just ask me the same question again.
Because you're not answering my question.
So I'm trying to.
Okay, go ahead.
So now where was I before you jumped back in? First, the culture war stuff is obvious, right? Parental rights and education bill, yes.
She was getting dunked on the church stuff, so she abandoned it. No, it's that she's... Something that people do, I used to do this a long time ago, to be fair, but like something that people do is you argue with somebody, you don't really know their positions, but you think they have a bunch of positions, and then you try to attack them on a ton of things you think they believe, but then what happens is you run into something that they don't believe, and then you're like, oh shit. So like in her mind, she probably thinks that Tim Pool is like a super rabid conservative, he's going to defend everything related to religion, so she's going to bring up the Catholic Church hoping that he wants to fight over that. But he doesn't. I don't even think he's religious. Tim's probably not going to defend anything the Catholic Church is doing. He's probably going to be just as condemning of the Catholic Church as she is, if not more. So it's kind of like a dead end attack. I think that's the issue that you're running into there. Is that a straw man? No, it's not really a straw man. I mean, like technically there's nothing wrong with it if you try to do an attack or you talk about an issue expecting them to have one position and then they jump off of it. There's not really anything wrong, but that's probably what was going on there. Am I buying like quest items? Okay. Let me use this real quick. Hold on one second.
That one's fairly obvious. I don't know about the Disney stuff. That's kind of absurd. What I was going to say is let's go back in time to why I said I was for Ron DeSantis in the first place and why where I'm at now is not. The first thing was last year I was having a conversation with the Daily Wire crew and I said Trump is brash. Many people don't like him.
Her point wasn't that Tim isn't anti-religious, it's that all of his content points to anti-trans. He may say disagree with the Catholic Church, but how many of his videos are dedicated to opposing trans people? Well, sure, but she should have asked that then, right? She didn't ask that. She could focus on that, like, listen, like, how many, if I go and search your channel right now, am I gonna find more stuff attacking trans people or attacking the church, right? But I don't think she's done that. Or she hasn't asked that particular question. She kind of hinted at it, I think, a little bit in the beginning, but she hasn't, like, asked, like, that would be the specific thing you should probably hammer home, right?
And he won't shut up about 2020. He's a sore loser. Ron DeSantis, at the very least, is dry and can get us something better than, say, Joe Biden.
I know, but I'm still not really hearing
Today.
a specific policy.
Right, so his COVID policy was correct, okay?
Wait, but you just said something with the beaches that you don't like the closure.
You can bring it over.
Like his presidential platform. Like,
I don't
what
know
are
if
the
he's
things?
got one.
Wait, how do I use a jeweler's tools?
So you're...
I've not been on board with him. So we can look at what happened.
And you said parental rights. I'm curious what you mean by that.
Yeah, like...
I'm in favor of parental rights, right? Like, I want parents to be able to, if their child is transitioning, to be able to work with their doctor with a plan and make sure that children are not being driven to suicidal ideation and that parents aren't restricted by the state from...
Let's talk about one of his policies.
Okay, go ahead. I don't want parents to be restricted from the state from giving healthcare to their children.
If I open this book
on
YouTube, the stream will get taken down.
Okay.
Did you ever read this book?
No.
This book is in middle schools in Florida. Ron DeSantis had it removed. That's one simple policy he did. That's very good. You've never seen this book?
I've heard about it.
Have you ever looked inside of it?
Tim is obsessed with this book. I feel like barely anybody, like kids at school, have ever fucking read this book before.
No, but I mean, I don't believe in censorship.
If I show you a picture of a blowjob, would you be offended?
I mean...
Can I show you a picture of a blowjob?
I wouldn't be offended. I mean, I think
Disavow.
that, honestly, do you know, Tim, that the more children learn about sexual education in the way that's productive and done in schools, the less likely they are to be sexually abused because they know what is good and what is bad.
I can't show this image on YouTube.
Do you hear me?
Tim is obsessed with this book right now.
Know about that?
So I think
the more children
the issue
learn
is
about sexual education, the less likely they are to be victims of pedophilia and rape.
I think the issue is you're confusing sexual education with kink. Right? So I'm looking at this right now. I can't even hold it up because I can't point it at the camera. And I don't understand why school children should be taught how to perform blowjobs for an autoandrophile.
I don't believe they're being taught that.
Why was this book banned? Why was this book in grade
I don't
school?
really know. Again,
Amazon
because this is
right,
another
so-
case-by-case example.
No. You
where
asked me
I am
about
not
what
in
Ron
favor
DeSantis
of censorship.
did. You asked me what Ron DeSantis did that I liked.
That he banned genderqueer?
That he's removing pornographic and kink books from middle schools is a very, very good one. And I would.
Well, for me, my politics are a little broader than that, Tim. I gotta say.
So, listen. If your argument to me is that I or anyone else should support your politics because you want to show blowjobs to children, you're going to lose.
Well, I don't think that is a policy done by teachers in this country. I think that this
book was in schools in Florida,
there
which
are
is
a ton of books that are in a ton of schools. I don't believe in censorship. That's not my bag, buddy.
So you think children should have Playboy?
I don't really think so. No,
What about
because
Hustler?
that's pornography.
So you think a
Tim, you're in
blowjob-
favor of censorship.
Yes,
You are.
absolutely.
Tim is gonna own these points. You're not. She's used to debating like, yeah. She thinks that Tim is just a bog standard conservative, and he's not really. I'd say he has like a populist / anti-establishment bent. He's not a bog standard conservative though. But she thinks she's gonna get these big owns. And I was like, oh, you're pro censorship. Like, yeah, duh. I want to censor things that I think harm children. But like most people are probably gonna say that. She's not gonna find any big owns here trying to attack on this point.
Oh, that's good to know.
If you watched the show, you'd know this.
Oh, you're okay. You're
We
pro
talk
censorship.
about how we're
I am not. I want children to be able to have all the information that they need in order to
Including pornography.
No, that's not pornography.
We backup record everything, and
We'll still be recording.
I think we're back.
We are back?
Whoa.
Oh, it's,
Okay.
It's pretty
now-
stormy out.
It broke your
It's
saucer
stormy?
too.
Yeah, I mean
a little
it's rainy. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're live again.
Okay.
There we go. We're back.
Yes.
So the power just
went
fluctuated.
out. Yeah. That
We
was
have-
God striking you down.
That was the
Tim.
YouTube
Striking me
Show
down.
that.
You're the one arguing for.
You're the one
you
arguing
go.
for censorship.
Yes.
I mean, I don't really mind that stuff. I mean, are you in favor of children seeing violence on television?
No.
That scares me a little bit more.
It depends. It's not so simple to say violence, right? But yes, censorship is a good thing, but when done bad is a bad thing.
Yeah.
For instance, Ian Crossland, who is a co-host on Timcast IRL, used to be a moderator for Minds.com, and he had to filter out graphic depictions of murder and rape and child abuse. Censorship is absolutely vital in that regard. So if we're talking about a book like, in particular, there was one called, there was a teacher who provided a book to her middle schoolers called This Book is Gay. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have heard. That's actually a very good book.
And it provides instruction on she provided instruction to children on how to use adult gay anonymous sex apps. Yeah, I don't think that's appropriate. Now look, by all means, you can be in favor of them. I'm not
Maybe
telling you
she
you're
had
not
a
allowed to.
child. Maybe she had a child in her classroom
Who wanted to go on Grindr and have sex with adults? Is that your argument?
No, I mean I'm not saying that. First of all, I don't know. Again, this is
Why would a
another.
10-year-old need Grindr?
This is the thing that you do though, Tim.
Oh, that I.
Okay, 57 minutes, guys. Remember where we're at on this, okay? We're at 57 minutes.
Do though, Tim.
Oh, that I
You're
do.
picking specific examples that
You
are
asked
No, no,
inflammatory.
you asked for a specific
You asked me for one.
Okay, then go ahead. I
did.
don't
We
know
have the book.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
said
in
don't show children blowjobs.
Look,
You said you appreciate
I'm
it.
not in favor of censorship. I'm not in
As
favor
an
of
objective
censorship.
observer that's sitting here, you asked for a specific example, he gave it to you, and then you try to say he's broadly in favor of censorship.
Yeah.
It's possibly to make a hypocrisy point later on when he complains about social media censorship or something like that.
No,
but
I
it's
just-
like he's talking about this specific issue, and I remember I was working on an education series about this kind of thing years before it was popular. Yes, I was ahead of my time. And yeah, these kind of things were popping up all over schools, and I am happy that DeSantis is like doing something
We
about
had
it.
Asra Nomani on the show. She brought in, I think, like 70 books of all of the weird racist indoctrination and sex stuff that they're bringing in schools.
Yeah.
And I said, look, man, it's really simple for me. If someone comes to me and says that they think this book, which Amazon says is 18 up only, should be given to children, I'll say, I will vote against you.
So
if
should the Bible be banned from schools because it depicts
It is
sexual
banned
acts?
from schools, public schools.
The Bible probably is not appropriate for children for a lot of reasons. And I am not a Christian, so I don't
He's not a Christian. I don't think he would give a fuck about.
particularly care about whether or not they're going to give a book to children that has something like Deuteronomy 23:20 in it. I don't think kids should be reading that kind of stuff.
Okay.
However, I'm in favor of the parents deciding when it is appropriate for their kids, which comes with very difficult moral questions in that my morality is different from the morality of each individual parent. So that's why I'm kind of like, the government probably shouldn't be the one doing it.
Have you had an expert on sexual education on your program to talk about this kind of stuff?
Yes.
What did they say?
And
are you in favor of abstinence only?
No. It's been a very, very long time.
You're not in favor of abstinence only education.
I think abstinence only is
So
silly.
you're kind of hinging on this book that has pornographic material in it that like okay.
There's a difference between sex and kink. right?
Okay, sure.
So the many individuals on the left have made arguments in favor of kink for kids, which is weird to me, and I think it's inappropriate. I think kids should learn about sex. I think the parents should decide when it's appropriate. This is why typically at schools they would give out notice to the parents like,
Dungeons are
we're
the most
intending on doing
efficient
sex
way.
ed. Here's the subjects we're going to cover.
Nothing's changed
The
in that
issue
way.
with Florida was that they had a policy where they would not instruct parents and actually were told not to talk to the parents if the kids were suffering identity issues. Now, the state should not intervene and take away the rights of the parents in that in that way.
But can you
wrong.
say that again? The state. What about gender identity issues?
So in Florida, what prompts a bill like this, and it also happened with stuff in like Nashville, was that the schools, and I think they do this in like Washington and Colorado, the schools were actually telling teachers not to talk to the parents if the children were having some kind of identity issue. And so this led to suicides.
No. What leads to
Well, but it
suicides
did.
is that children are being told that they cannot operate and be who they are as the gender that is who they are in their heart. That's what's leading to
But
suicides.
I'm talking about one specific. Well, I think it's like
Again,
two
you're talking
examples.
about one specific example. I'm talking about
you
broader.
can't ask me for like.
I talk about politics, Tim. I don't talk about
Well,
anecdotes.
he's talking about policy that they would not.
You asked me
disclose
what
gender
policy
I'm
was.
talking
to
about
the
school
parents.
district policy. I
Okay.
cover national
You asked me to.
politics. Yeah. All right.
You can't ask me a question, then when I explain where the policy came from, be like, no, that
No,
makes no
because
sense.
you go into
But you asked him about a
individual
state-level
anecdotes.
policy.
I'm
You
telling you
talk
why
about-
the policy was written.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
That's why the policy was written, because there were children who were having identity issues, and the schools were instructed, the teachers were told not to tell the parents. This led to, I think it was a suicide attempt. The parents got angry.
Who had a suicide attempt?
A little girl tried to kill herself.
Okay, again, this is one case. Go ahead.
And there was also another, right. I'm not talking about, look at this anecdote, let's set policy. I'm saying Florida set a law because, okay? I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm saying a thing led to a thing, right? Mm-hmm. My position is that parents should be fully informed about what's going on with their children, and teachers should not withhold that information from them. It is not up to the state to decide what is best for the kid. There are certain
But the
exceptions.
state is deciding what is best for the kid in these instances. They
When-
are essentially saying that children. Take Florida, for example. You're talking about Florida. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. They're saying that children cannot, under the supervision of their doctor and with their parental consent. None of this happens, by the way, without parental consent. It's illegal.
you're talking about-
They cannot work with their doctor on a health care plan for them to transition into
But
their
I'm not
gender.
talking about that. I mean, you're talking about medical intervention. I'm talking
Right, but
about
you
like,
have spoken about this on your
knowledge about their
program
kid.
before.
Yeah, I think like if a doctor prescribed a lobotomy to a kid, the government should stop
It's
that
not
too.
a lobotomy. That's
I
not
didn't say.
what
I'm
it
saying.
is.
I'm saying that there are certain things in the medical world that we prohibited.
Right, but this is not what
it's one
should.
of them.
But the American
You
Journal.
disagree? You think it shouldn't be?
No,
I'm not arguing you're wrong.
every single expert that is reputable on this front disagrees. The American Journal of Pediatrics did a study about transitioning children. They studied them over 5 years. 94% of the children continued to identify as the gender that they were choosing to identify
When
with at
placed
the
on- For
beginning.
5 whole years?
Yeah,
Wow.
yes.
when
And-
placed on Lupron.
no, then the 6% that were remaining, 3.5%, identified as cisgender. 2.5% went back, yes, but they were heavily weighted under the age of 10 years old,
But this is
where
not
they
material to what
never
I was
had
talking about.
any medical intervention. This is how actually trans care actually goes, Tim. 8 to 13 years old, you're put on puberty blockers. Those are entirely reversible. Then after that,
I'm sorry,
that is
that's-
100% true.
it's just not true.
That's 100%
They're
true.
not entirely reversible. To a certain degree, they can be.
Then why are they used in instances where
They're
someone
off-label
has
use.
puberty that
Precocious
Yeah, that's
puberty.
precocious.
Right,
puberty.
right, exactly.
no.
And there's a carve out for that in the Florida bill, by the way. So cis kids can have it, but trans kids can't.
Because that's
then
the primary
then
label.
16 years
That's the
old.
primary use of the drug.
Okay, but
But-
that's
but-
not what
but-
doctors say. No. Then 16 years old, that's when hormones happen. Very, very, very rarely are there any surgeries under the age of 18. I don't hear you talking about rhinoplasties under the age of 18 on your
I've talked.
program.
We have.
Oh.
Maybe you haven't heard it because you don't watch the show.
Okay.
I've also said child beauty pageants are wrong and they're disgusting. I've also said Hooter is inappropriate for kids, and I said we shouldn't be giving minors any kind of cosmetic surgery. I don't even like tattoos or piercings. So when it comes to
It's quite puritanical of you, Tim. I'm surprised. You have a lot of
yes,
swords
I don't
and
think
beards
children.
and stuff in here.
I don't think children
It's
should
a-
make
okay.
should be altering their bodies.
But you just said parental rights. So if under 18, parents have to give consent for piercings and tattoos and
Do you think a
for
mom should have the
rhinoplasties.
right to remove the salivary glands of her child?
No. Are
if
you
the
for
doctor
parental
prescribes
rights or not?
See, this is a.
Every right has limits.
Well, this is actually interesting because what you're asking, we've actually talked in a great depth about on Timcast IRL. That
Are you for parental rights or not? I just asked.
that question right there leads in two different directions, which is, again, we've addressed. If you watched the show, you'd have heard the statement we've made about
Well,
it.
I heard you 5 minutes ago say you were for parental rights, and now you're saying you're not.
Where do parents' rights begin and where do they end is strictly a moral question based on the moral frameworks of an individual. If there is someone who goes to a doctor in, say, Saudi Arabia, and the doctor prescribes female circumcision, they're going to argue it's the parents' rights. We would argue
Another
against
hypothetical.
that.
I'm talking about reality.
These things literally do happen in other countries.
But it wouldn't be.
But I'm talking about this country, and I'm talking about parental rights.
A point. Right? The point is, the idea that parents have a right is limited to what our moral limits are. Meaning, if you morally are okay with a child sex change, then you're going to argue in favor of parents' rights. If I say you shouldn't be able to mandate vaccinations, you'd probably argue against the parents' right? Should a school be allowed to mandate vaccines for children?
Yes.
But what about the parents' rights? Are you for parents' rights?
Well, I'm for public health.
But you're not for parents' rights. You see, that question leads nowhere.
Oh, how is she so fucking stupid? I'm sorry. Jesus, how did she walk like so obviously into that trap? She just completely in one sentence totally illustrated what the point that Tim was trying to make. And Tim's philosophy is like shaky at best, but like Tim is 100% correct here. Like the rights that you are so carefully guiding or you're carefully guarding, in reality, you don't actually care about this particular right. Like parental rights, we kind of care about them, but not really. Parental rights tend to usually be a proxy for other types of things that we actually care about. So for instance, if you're saying like, I have the right to have my child get gender affirming care, or I have the right to teach my child a religion, in that case, somebody might say parental rights, parental rights, parental rights. You don't really care about like strict parental rights though. You just care about parental rights insofar as you can exercise some other moral value, right? I think parental rights are generally a proxy for things because all of us agree that there should be a restriction on some types of parental rights. For instance, removing random body parts. Like, oh, I want to take my kid's kidney and like sell it, to some country. Like that, we probably shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? We all agree there's some reasonable restriction there. But parental rights in and of themselves don't get us very far. There's going to be some other like mitigating or limiting thing in terms of like what a parental right is allowed to be or not allowed to be,
No, I mean, look, Tim, I've never made parental rights a plank of my own politics.
It sounded earlier like you literally did that, but maybe I'm not paying attention well enough. It sounded almost explicitly like that's what she did, because she kept saying over and over again, are you against parental rights? Are you against parental rights? Are you against parental rights? And now that Tim has given a clear objection to that, now she's like, well, hold on.
I'm saying this within the context of what you just said 5 minutes ago.
And I'm explaining.
Yes,
parental rights extends to my morality.
So, right, your morality says that you think that trans children and parents, even if they agree with their child and the doctor is supervising this kind of transition, you're essentially saying that you don't believe that they should have the power and ability and that the state should intervene. That sounds like big government to me.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know if you know who I am.
Well, okay, then there you go. That the state should intervene because you don't believe that parents should, and their children, they're in agreement.
So at first, my position was, early on, if the doctors are prescribing it and it's the best thing they can do, I think we're looking at, in the past 4 years, about 50,000 or so cases of cross-sex hormones for kids, so be it. And then we started seeing, like, the Tavistock scandal. We saw Finland, Denmark, Sweden start pulling this. The research coming out showed that it was not particularly effective. And then we also had multiple studies showing that desistance rates for those who did not take who did not receive intervention was actually upwards of 95%.
That desistance thing is not a good argument for not having trans care. If the desistance rate is high for people not on hormones, in a roundabout way, that actually probably shows the strength of the diagnostic process. It means that those kids probably should have never been on hormones and they weren't, and a high number of them did desist. That's a good thing. A high desistance rate of people that aren't on hormones probably shows you've got a problem with your diagnostic process. That's why when you're talking about desistance rates or people that detransition, it's really important to look at people that have started the treatment process. My understanding is once kids have started, the desistance rate for that is like, I want to say around 2% or less based on the last thing that I saw. But yeah.
And then my position became, it probably is the appropriate thing for the legislature to say, we're not going to allow this anymore. Okay,
I just listed the American Journal of Pediatrics. That's incredibly reputable. Incredibly reputable. 94% of children continued care after age. Take a Netherlands study. This is Lancet. 98% continued hormone therapy and follow-up.
After what?
So you... No, but the other one's a 5-year study. This is just a secondary one.
After what point?
Well, no, so this is the issue, right? Those studies were based upon whether a child was placed on puberty blockers or not. When a child is placed on puberty blockers, they tend not to desist. When a child is left alone, they tend to desist. So
yeah, but oh my God, Tim is reading that so incorrectly. Do you know, that's like saying, like, I can give you one of the highest predictors for dying of cancer in the United States. Probably one of the best things that map onto it is whether or not you've gotten radiation treatment and chemotherapy. Those two things are going to be highly predictive of whether or not you're going to die of cancer. But not because chemotherapy and radiation treatment cause cancer, but because people that have cancer are getting prescribed those things. So when you're saying that, like, well, kids that aren't prescribed drugs seem to desist, okay, that's good. They should have never been prescribed drugs, right? That's a good thing. What you need to do is you need to look at desistance rates or people that drop out of treatment of people that are pursuing those treatments. Now, I'm not saying one way or another what should or shouldn't be happening or what the science says. Well, I gave my opinion earlier, what I believe the numbers were, that it's very low. But, like, that's what you need to be arguing, not people that didn't receive the treatment, do they desist or not? Because it's good that they didn't receive the treatment. That's the point. Eric says, Destiny, do you think there are limits to what schools should report to parents regarding what kids tell them? Not conditional limits. Normally we disclose X, but sometimes it results in abuse. In this case, we don't. But categories like X, under no circumstances is a school obligated to say anything. Should obligations to disclose be universal and conditional, or are there some things that should not have to be disclosed? I don't know. This is an issue that I see both sides on, like, really well, since I'm a parent. Like, I could totally understand schools saying that as a policy, they don't want to report, like, sexual things to parents insofar as, like, a kid might be gay or a lesbian or trans or whatever because of potentiality for abuse, maybe, depending on circumstances. Like, I see the argument there. But on my end, as a parent, like, if I found out any of that was happening and my school didn't report it to me, my kid is getting pulled from that school and he's never going back. Because I don't want random shit to be happening to my kid at a school that I have no control over that. As a parent, I want to be fully informed of all of that, 100%. For parents, keep in mind that, like, school is daycare. Why is my character, like, acting weird? School is daycare for your child, and you're entrusting teachers and the school system with a lot of care. What's happening here? Is there, like, a glitch in this map? Yeah, so I mean, like, I'd want to be informed of all the things that my kid is doing at school, you know? But yeah, but I can see both sides, but I don't know what the right answer is. Here's what I might say. This is what I might say. I might say that if schools have a policy to not disclose something, then that should just be very, very, very open. Like, as soon as you enroll a child in the school, they have, like, a very, like, and it's not like a thing that's buried in the fine print. They tell you, hey, just so you know, our policy on these issues is this. We don't normally do disclosures. Yeah, so maybe if it's, like, really front and center, like, I'd be okay with it, but.
So the issue is then, if according to, 10 prospective follow-up studies from child and adolescents found desistance ranging from 61 to 90%, then the safety of the children would lean towards non-intervention.
Go ahead. Again, we should probably agree to look at these kinds of studies before we're going to pull them up for a debate, because what I'm pulling up and what I'm referencing is inherently reputable, and you can find any information.
Emma just doesn't understand.
I am with
why
the
what Tim is
majority of
bringing
doctors on this.
Like, Emma's technically correct. She just doesn't understand how to maneuver in the argument for why Tim's point is it's correct but misleading.
Front.
That's a broad statement. I don't know about that.
No. That is actually a fact. That is 100% a fact.
Well, I've seen this movie before. So what's happening is you're referencing detransition under a system where they wouldn't be put on puberty blockers necessarily, and then they would go through the cross-sex hormone. So everybody who would have desisted at the point of puberty, which is what you're referencing, is already excluded from her sample. So, and I don't even think you would disagree with that. That once they're actually past the point of puberty, and they still think they're in the opposite body or whatever. And
do you think a therapist should snitch on their clients to their relatives? No, that's like HIPAA. That's like protected information. No, of course not. What do you mean?
Go through the process, there's a very low detransition rate, but you're specifically talking about desistance. Look, and I remember this because this happened when you argue with the SERPs.
This is what it boils down to. I'm not a moralist. I don't have, like, the arrogance to believe.
Hold on, I'm so sorry. What is a moralist? What does that mean? Person who teaches or promotes morality. How can you do politics and not be... What does she mean when she says moralist? What does that mean?
That my personal preferences for how my life would be lived should be imposed on other people. I'm trying to make a argument for a case I'm trying to make a case for a broad set of policies that are going to make sure people are as happy as they can possibly be and can live their life to the fullest. So if you want to impose your morality on people, it sounds like fundamentalism. For me,
I
I'm
mean,
in
come on.
favor
Have
of
a real
my-
argument.
But if most
No,
peop- but
I
hold
am
on.
having a real argument.
That's not enough.
You just
You're doing a ton of moral imposition. Moral imposition is almost unnecessary. Actually, it might by definition be a necessary precondition to any discussion of policy, right? For us to say, for when you implement a government policy, to precede that statement, you have to say the government ought to be doing something, which is almost necessarily a type of moral statement, or I think it is necessarily. Like if I say, for instance, we should have single-payer healthcare, you're making the moral statement that, somewhere baked into that is a moral statement, the government ought to be in the business of helping citizens be happy, healthy, and have, good healthcare, right? That's why that policy exists. The policy is going to be downstream from any sort of like moral claim. You can't just make government policy without morals. That's just such a weird, or maybe I'm not understanding this, but it's such a weird like statement to make.
said your
I
morality
said, here's
is
a study.
Oh,
that
man.
Here's a study that shows desistance rates up to 95%. Hold on. Desistance rates are shown up to 95% with non-intervention. So then we would lean towards non-intervention. And you said you're a fundamentalist. You didn't make an argument.
No,
you
earlier you talked about how your morality is what you want to dictate in terms of this policy.
Wait,
You see, this is what I was talking about with Sam.
Okay.
Right? The inability to grasp philosophical concepts. When I explained to you that you are opposed to parental rights because you're in favor of vaccine mandates, right? I don't think you can understand the duality of the statement you're making. Are you in favor of parental rights can go in one of two moral directions? You do have a moral
I
stance.
wasn't
you
talking
also
about
are a fundamentalist.
I wasn't talking about parental rights. I was using that as a way to talk about
Right.
your
My point
statement on
is,
parental rights.
If
And I
you
fully
have a
grasp
moral
concepts
position
of
on public
morality.
health
Tim,
and you want
I
to
have-
impose that, then you too would be a fundamentalist and you've made a nonsensical statement.
I
If you want to make an argument about why me using this data is incorrect, I'm all ears. If you
Tim is more correct than Emma.
want to tell me I'm a
haven't
fundamentalist,
seen the data, so I can't.
well, then
I
don't make
can't-
an argument about it if you don't know the data.
No, I
All
do
right?
know the data. I use the American
just
Journal of
said you didn't.
Pediatrics. I don't know the data that you just
You
pulled
did
up.
not look up desistance rates. You did not look up anything other than what fits your narrative.
Tim, what you just said is that you want your morality to dictate policy.
No, I didn't.
I want people to have freedom
I
to
certainly
do what
did not.
they want.
That's just not true.
You-
I said
So
that
wait-
everyone's view on a question like parental rights is dictated by their morality. You do have one as well.
Tim should just own that, or I don't know if he doesn't understand it. Like, yeah, our morality is always going to precede government policy. It has to, by definition.
People have a moral framework. You've told me that you're in favor of public health. That is a moral stance.
Yes,
So
thank
are
you,
you a
yes.
fundamentalist? Do you want
no,
to
I
impose
talk
your
about
moral?
politics. I don't talk about things that are so abstract. I talk
You-
about
Where did she go to college at? I'm so sorry. I thought she went to an Ivy League. I talk about politics. I don't talk about things that are so abstract. What do you mean? You can govern without deferring to morality? No, you can't. You might govern ignorantly and think that you're not deferring to morality, but of course, morality is going to precede any form of government. Because for government, you're literally compelling people to do things. I'm coming to you and I'm saying, give me your fucking money. I'm stealing your money. That's what taxes are. They're stealing money, right? But not really. Well, why is it not stealing money? How can I go into your house and take money from you without it being immoral, right? Well, because there's some other moral statement that's augmenting that theft to make it morally acceptable, right? Like, to say that the government ought to provide some services, to say that the government ought to be in the business of doing something, like there's some level of morality here that is obviously preceding, like that it's necessarily has to be the case. You can't do things like this without having some sort of like moral imposition on people. You're literally forcing them to do shit.
Favor of public health. That is a moral stance. So are you a fundamentalist? Do you want to
I
impose
talk
your
about
moral?
politics. I don't talk about things that are so abstract. I talk
Are you in
about
favor of
what's
vaccine mandates or not?
Of course.
That's a moral position, not a
It's
scientific one.
No, it is a public health position.
Well, it's sure. Your morality dictates that the government can impose a medication on people against their will.
Because I'm trying to create a
That's a
society.
moral question.
No, because I'm trying to
That's
create.
moral.
Sure, I think I am more moral.
Wait,
But
can
you
you-
just said you said you were not a moralist.
No, I'm not. I am dealing in politics, and politics can create outcomes that are moral or immoral, and I'm dealing in the ones that I think will create the most,
So you're a
the
moralist.
best outcome. No,
understand. What do you-
moralism in the way that I was referencing it is one that falls back on notions of fundamentalism and impose.
Does she, when she says moralist and she's opposed to it, is she just opposed to it because she associates with like hardcore religious people? Is that what she's saying? Like, does moralist, because she keeps saying this like fundamentalist word too. Does moralist to her just mean she doesn't want to be a moralist because it sounds like Religious? Bro, why do I have like fucking 5 elites like stacked on top of each other? That, it sounds like she's pushing back against anything having to do with moralist or moralism because she's like associated with like religious conservatism or something.
Imposing morality that is individual to you on
I'm not
the rest
talking
of
about
society.
imposing morality.
I am talking about
I'm talking
creating
about
a society,
data that shows
creating
children-
a society that gives people the freedom that they.
Moralism.
No, that's politics.
You want to
bro.
create a society that does a works towards a goal of your personal perspective.
What you are talking about is imposing your narrow set of ideas about how society
God.
should be. Or
Based on the
how
scientific
things-
research I pulled up.
No. It's,
Well, I literally pulled a study
No,
up.
you want to restrict people's ability to do what they want to do with their bodies. That's what you want to do.
Do you think
I don't
that people
believe
should
that.
cut their hands off?
I don't deal in abstract, ridiculous hypotheticals because I deal in reality. I
Do you
cover
think,
politics.
So you're in favor of female circumcision?
That doesn't happen in the United States.
How much do you want to pay? How much no, you're wrong. It does happen.
There are very
but, like-
small amounts. I am not in
So
favor.
you're in favor of it?
I wouldn't.
If you want to restrict what people do with their own children, you're against parental rights?
Correct.
That's not the
Stupid
same
games.
thing.
What?
Is a doctor?
You want to talk about
looking
Dearborn,
over-
Michigan? I've
No,
actually
no.
gone there and done the research. I've actually done the boots on the ground journalism in this story. Okay? Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. Because female circumcision is a bad thing. We do not want these things to be happening. And even the parents were going to doctors to get it prescribed. There are limits. There's the famous story of the Kennedy. They got the Kennedy got it lobotomized because the doctors prescribed it. Just because there's current scientific research that leans one direction doesn't mean we move absolutely in one direction. What we have here is a very prominent set of studies, which we've referenced on the show numerous times, showing desistance rates for minors who do not receive intervention in terms of affirmation or sex change.
Here's like the question. So Sam Seder kept referencing this. He said the majority report, he said multiple times they've got like researchers and like all this stuff. Like why couldn't anybody have prepped her for this show? Like why couldn't people have done the research and like prepped her on like, because I'm pretty sure like Tim Pool brings up like the same few studies over and over again. Although to be fair, when you own a Tim Pool, you don't really know what you're going to be debating. So it's easy for me to say that in retrospect, but maybe she just didn't know because it is impossible to prep for every single possible thing that could come up. I wonder if she had a conversation because that was my complaint about Tim Pool show. He doesn't tell you what you're going to talk about before you. God, no! I was in a dungeon. Is it going to reset all my progress? In before I'm dead somehow.
Is upwards of 95%, in which case science dictates we do not intervene. If you want to take the 5% chance that we then intervene in these children's lives, and that can result in even one kid being harmed, that sounds like an immoral action.
Now, these are extremely specific hypotheticals that you are maximizing in this
this is a
current
study I
instance,
pulled up.
and I am interested in creating a society that is not that is more yes moral, but it's based on outcomes, not just
That's what I just pulled up. Like, I mean, I can read to you again.
right, but. Pull up the American Pediatrics
Oh my
study.
we're not
God.
asking
I think that
about
whole
cancer.
dungeon just
Why you
reset.
pulled that up. If it is true that prescribing puberty blockers prevents people from hitting that point of puberty where they would decide, and largely they would decide to desist, right, when they hit the point of puberty, would you be in favor of removing that from the gender protocol? Because this only is talking about desistance at the point of puberty. So, like, what he's concerned about is that if you stop people from going through puberty, you stop the changes in their bodies and all that, and then they can't, like, rationally make that choice because they haven't hit that point in their development.
I don't have the kind of, I guess, arrogance, I would say, to
I mean, I
know
asked you,
that I know
I asked you a
more
hypothetical,
about,
like, hypothetically.
Right, but again, this is exactly what reactionary conservatives do.
You know, it's a red flag
Is you
from-
deal-
Come on,
is-
Okay, hold on.
Arguments.
If you deal with hypotheticals, because when you actually deal with the practical reality and the outcomes that you're dealing with and that you're prescribing onto society, it creates an inherently unjust society.
So let me
You know,
just,
as the right-wing conservative Destiny said recently when he was debating the left-wing pro-lifers, it is a definite red flag when somebody is unwilling completely to engage with the hypothetical.
Oh, hey, that's me.
If you want to say why the hypothetical doesn't apply, that is totally fine.
No,
But
'cause I
for
wanna
you to
talk
just
about
like say, "Oh, it's a
reality."
hypothetical, I can't
Okay,
talk about it,"
I
as
don't
if you
think
don't
so.
know what a thought
Because-
experiment is, it's kind of odd.
Look, I've asked you, we have here, I literally just pulled up detransition Wikipedia. We pulled up this study that shows that without intervention, desistance rates are from 61 to 98%.
And here I have
And,
general acceptance of standards of care. The overwhelming weight of medical authority supports treatment of transgender
has nothing to do with
patients
what I'm
with
talking about.
GnRH agonists and cross-sex hormones in appropriate circumstances. Organizations who have formally recognized this include American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Academy of Family Physicians, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, American College of Physicians, American Medical Association, American Pediatric Association, dozens and
Remember
dozens
when doctors
of the
said
most...
smoking was good for you? You're not citing science. You're citing government approval.
No, I'm not. I am citing...
And that's fine.
What does the government have to do with it? These are medical organizations.
Okay, sure. Fair point. You're citing medical organizations, despite the fact that there have been numerous instances throughout history, in fact, basically all of them, where we've been like, hey, we were wrong about that. Like, maybe we shouldn't drink mercury if you get syphilis. But what I'm...
Yeah, but medical industries have also given us, like, antibiotics. Are you not going to take those if you get sick?
referring to specifically is if there is no intervention of a trans child, desistance rates are from 61 to 98%, showing the majority of kids are better off not receiving
No, look, I
puberty
mean, you're on
blockers.
detransition Wikipedia. I just listed a list of
two
dozen
studies.
of,
Again,
of
he mentioned
half a dozen.
desistance, not detransition. This is like very important that we nail down what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
right. What I'm saying is, if you have a trans child, or a child who is suffering from gender identity disorder or dysphoria, and you do nothing, there is a 61 to 98% chance they age out of it and grow up and are happy and fine.
That's made up.
It's literally right there. What are you talking about?
On Wikipedia.
At the point of
That's
No,
puberty
I
is
pulled
what
up
he's
the
talking
NIH and
about.
you said you can pull up anything. Yeah, so here you go,
Tim,
NIH.gov.
Tim,
Here you go.
Tim.
Are you happy?
Tim,
NIH.gov.
deal with what I just said about
medical
the level of
organizations-
medical organizations.
That's
You're saying that they're
fine.
all wrong and that you have some sort of like special knowledge that you can supersede their expertise.
No,
in
he's
this
not.
area.
You're cherry picking American
And you're making
organizations.
an appeal to authority.
I just first of all, I
Oh
just
my
cited
God.
one from the Netherlands, but American Academy of Pediatrics, American
Appeal to
Academy
authority.
of Child
Appeal
and
to authority. Appeal to authority. Keep doing
No,
it.
I mean,
But not even that.
I've got-
Okay. Real quick. There's two ways to do a fallacious appeal to authority. One is appeal to a false authority. So for instance, if I say this medicine is good for you because this doctor said it was good, but that person is like a doctor of English, that would be a fallacious appeal to authority. Or this is a good investment and I know that because my uncle said so. That's a fallacious appeal to authority. Another fallacious appeal to authority, which is actually kind of right here for Tim to say. Another fallacious appeal to authority is saying this organization says this, and then somebody says, well, I disagree with that for this reason, and then you're going, well, you're wrong because the organization said this. You could argue that that's a fallacious appeal to authority as well. You can't just appeal to the organization if Tim wants to argue about the studies. You've got to go a little bit more in depth than that. But
But I'm not a medical authority, and neither are you. So
then
why
all
wouldn't
I
you
can
appeal
do
to
is
the
point to a
authority?
study and say, wow, if this study is true, I'm opposed to this, right?
But there's also all these European organizations that are getting rid of this specific practice that he's focusing on, which is the puberty blockers, and like for some reason they're not on your list.
No,
which is
we are
interesting.
properly
It's like you
assessing
cherry-picked.
when intervention is appropriate here. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
But why would they suspend in these better healthcare systems in Europe? Why would they suspend this specific practice that we're
I
arguing
mean, you
about?
listed Sweden and Finland. They've just
Well, he listed a
elected
whole bunch of
far-right
them.
governments, but
stop. Please stop. Far right in these places. First of all, I'm pretty sure these changes went through before the prior elections. Secondly, far right does not mean whatever the fuck you think it means in relation to the United States, okay?
I mean,
But anyway,
these
like
things continue.
again, this is what I'm interested in talking about in terms of politics. I want to create a more equitable society for people. We should have socialized healthcare, Medicare for all. You should talk about that more on your program. You say you're in favor of it. I
talk about
haven't
it quite
really
a
seen.
bit.
I haven't
Look,
seen much.
When you guys cherry pick stuff to talk about
we
music
should talk
or
about
whatever, and,
ending
like-
child poverty. I mean, it's funny. You should talk about ending child
but you could
poverty.
have talked about my position on universal health care any one of these times. You never do. Why? It's not going to get traffic for you.
Well, I mean, you don't clip anything about universal health care. You should focus more
What are you
on it,
talking-
and then
what?
we would focus on it.
Because, like,
What we try to do
when are we gonna
is
be
to,
like, for
in
no
real
reason, let's just
time-
make a universal health care?
What we try to do in real time is correct right-wing lies, whether
talk about
it's you
abortion a
or
lot.
Dave Rubin or Steven Crowder. We do talk about abortion a lot.
Yeah.
We do.
What's my abortion position?
I'm not sure.
Why? You've not watched any of the 8,000 segments we've
I mean,
done on it?
I do know that you called that 10-year-old case a hoax, a political hoax, if you want to
political
do it.
maneuvers around it to change the law was a hoax.
Yeah.
Sure. So, well, how do you not know my position on abortion? I mean, you watch the show. You watch at any point, you can see the arguments we have.
I don't have a ton of time to watch all
You
your
specifically covered his episode with the serfs where they talked about it in depth, so it's weird that you don't.
Well,
Oh no, she's gonna say I didn't watch that. Just I've got researchers or producers that give me that.
Reiterate your abortion position for me, and I'll respond
pro-choice.
to it. Okay. In what way?
I think Roe v. Wade was the right decision.
Okay.
I think that life should be mandated, should be protected under the Constitution at the federal level, and that it probably does make sense for the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, but that means Congress needs to codify it.
Okay, but that's not going to happen, and that's because we don't have
Well, that's a different question.
Because we need filibuster reform. So
I think
I'm not really
that,
interested in process. I'm interested in outcomes as we get back to, again,
I'm not interested in process, but you talk about politics. If I put twisting blades on two things, does like the better one override the worse one? Or like, is there even, it doesn't like stack, right? No, there's no way.
differences that we clearly have here. I don't really care who imposes the right to abortion in this country. I just care that we have a right to abortion in this country, and we don't.
Well, right.
anymore.
Yeah, I think at first when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I thought that it was probably good it would go to legislation because the Supreme Court arbitrarily setting law is probably dangerous. But however, since then, I've looked at it and said it's a 14th Amendment question, the right to life. And, you know, looking back on that now and understanding Roe v. Wade actually was a pretty good decision. I think now at this point, you'd need some kind of codification. I don't know how the Supreme Court's going to go back on it, but it's a political conversation, not a personal perspective on abortion. So my view is pre-viability, it's individual discretion. Post-viability, it's probably going to require some kind of, depending on the circumstances.
Where do you draw the line of viability?
Can the baby survive on its own?
Okay. Well, 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester, which is the first 12 weeks.
Yeah.
99% happen in the first 20 weeks. The rest that happen, the 1%.
99% of abortions happen in the first 20 weeks? Is that true? I just want to check that. Did she not say 90? Wait, she said 99. Did I miss?
12 weeks.
Yeah.
99% happen in the first 20 weeks.
I thought it was like 2% happened in third trimester. I guess 20 weeks is into the second trimester. It could be real.
The rest that happen, the 1% that you're talking about, which is overrepresented constantly for fear-mongering purposes, is the 1% that happen when the life of the mother is in danger or there's a issue with the fetus.
Well, there's no question.
So there's no need to parse and draw arbitrary lines, because what that does is it essentially, especially with rape and incest exemptions, which you speak about, it makes it seem like...
I'm not in favor of incest exemptions.
Okay, the one that we spoke about earlier, okay? I'm not even speaking about your specific opinion about this. I'm talking generally about the notions of abortion. You can't have rape and incest exemptions because it takes so long to prove those cases that it would completely nullify the need for an abortion, because as the pregnancy is going along, you would be unable to perform the abortion in the time that it takes to prove that kind of stuff. So when that stuff is put into legislation, what it does is it waters down and makes the public seem like, oh, we're not.
Abortions by gestation age. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it. By 20 weeks, I would guess that it's about 1 to 1.5% of abortions are past 20 weeks. Oh, okay. Damn.
Not so barbaric. That's why we should not be intervening in what doctors and patients are doing.
Wait, did my game crash? Okay. Okay. Use the report ID. This probably just sends like my system resources. I don't have like a debug log. Okay. Just remember that we're at 1 hour, 21 minutes, okay?
90% of abortions happen in the first trimester, which is the first 12 weeks. 99% happen in the first 20 weeks. The rest that happen, the 1% that you're talking about, which is overrepresented constantly for fear-mongering purposes, is the 1% that happen when the life of the mother is in danger or there's a issue with the fetus.
Well, there's no question.
So there's no need to parse and draw arbitrary lines, because what that does is it essentially, especially with rape and incest exemptions, which you speak about, it makes it seem like...
I'm not in favor of incest exemptions.
Okay, the one that we spoke about earlier, okay? I'm not even speaking about your specific opinion about this. I'm talking generally about the notions of abortion. You can't have rape and incest exemptions because it takes so long to prove those cases that it would completely nullify the need for an abortion, because as the pregnancy is going along, you would be unable to perform the abortion in the time that it takes to prove that kind of stuff. So when that stuff is put into legislation, what it does is it waters down and makes the public seem like, oh, we're not so barbaric. That's why we should not be intervening in what doctors and patients are doing. I want people to be empowered over their own health care. Same thing with trans kids.
So you disagree with Roe v.
Same
Wade
thing
in
with
that
abortion. Sorry?
Do you disagree with Roe v. Wade in that regard?
Well, no. I want there to be an abortion.
Would you prefer Roe v. Wade stood?
Of course.
So then you would be against abortion after a certain amount of time.
I mean, Roe v. Wade essentially created the viability standard, right?
So then you have a 14th Amendment question, whereas you would need some kind of government intervention post viability.
Yeah, I believe that doctors should be able to make these determinations, and it should not be. We should have a right to an abortion broadly, and doctors can make a decision.
To be clear,
real quick, I think you're in favor of the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
No, I'm not, because I would never want to overturn something to go backwards and then bring it up to the legislature where we have crazies and Republican nut jobs in the Senate, and there's a filibuster that doesn't provide us with the ability to codify it.
Because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, you now have states like Colorado removing restrictions.
No. This is inaccurate. So Roe versus Wade protected at a constitutional level up to the second trimester for elective abortions, and then afterwards it was up to the states. So so
it's even.
Colorado could have extended this prior to. In fact, Andrew Cuomo did this before. So just to clarify that.
Okay, never mind. I stand corrected. I thought that it was because I remember reading what was the guy's name? He wrote about 14th Amendment kicks in upon viability. And then you have a constitutional right to life and all of these things, and there's questions around that.
Now, Colorado may have passed that law in response to Roe versus Wade, but they weren't prohibited from doing so before. Because Roe versus Wade says, at this point, the states have no issue. It's a constitutional issue. And then in third trimester, which is why Roe versus Wade constitutionally is a ridiculous decision, they're like, it's a states' rights issue. Because, the Constitution obviously delegates the trimesters in the 57th Amendment somewhere.
And again, Tim, the reality is I don't you've been perfectly nice to me here. I don't really care about you personally. I care when you say things that are harmful and wrong.
What?
Like the hoax statement about
that wasn't wrong. That was an opinion.
It was wrong. It was completely factually inaccurate.
It's not factually inaccurate.
You called it a hoax because you know that your audience is going to feed into it, and then you parse it later so you have plausible deniability about it.
But specifically what I said was, and we talk about it in depth. I think the issue is just you don't watch the show. To be fair, I don't watch Majority Report. But if I'm not gonna come out here and be like, you said this one time, this one thing. I've not watched the show, so I don't know exactly what you're talking about. But I said, the idea that you would take a tragic circumstance like this and then create a political story, put it out to the super PACs to try and change laws, that's a hoax.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. How about the fact that you called the
grooming event
shooter in the neo-Nazi Texas shooter who watched your program, you called that a false flag?
Because you don't even know anything about that story.
I do.
It was four clips of the episode, and you can see in the images he wasn't even subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, but he watched your show.
No, he didn't. He watched one guy.
Yeah, have you ever went to those time codes? He was highlighting specific, and I won't name the guest from the guest.
But he did watch your show.
This is
so you're saying he watched an episode?
Smear.
Sure, but do you understand
come
why?
on.
And he posted about
who was that one guy who watched Majority Report and then commented on what Sam did?
Why do you think that? No, this was a neo-Nazi. Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm just wondering why you think that.
I'm gonna do something I don't normally do, but that was an egregious over the line statement where I don't know if you are intentionally trying to just generate clips that are nonsensical or you're just really that stupid.
Oh man.
Ooh.
The idea that because a Nazi watched your show appeals to Nazis is like, look, if you want to have a real conversation, we have a real conversation. If you want to come up here and do exactly what the majority,
flag, though?
You want to do it.
Whoa, hold on. I need to soy up for this. 1 second. It's time to go full soy mode.
What the Majority Report does, and exactly why Sam isn't welcome on my and many other shows. Feel free to do it, and I'm willing to have you on here. Did you know that? Like, I don't know about you specifically, But this is exactly why people don't like your show. Okay.
I think people like our show.
Yeah, maybe ask why some of these higher profile personalities and networks won't have Sam on anymore. And he can
They're
cry.
afraid of him.
Oh, they're afraid of him. How about it's because you just claimed that my show appeals to Nazis? Which it
He
clearly
watched your
doesn't.
show.
Because this show is predominantly like moderate libertarian leaning types.
No, you
but you
say
don't even
that,
watch
and
it.
that you say that because you're trying to draw a line and make the really far right people that watch your show feel like their positions are a little bit more close to the mainstream than they are.
As somebody that hates Tim Pool's show, because I do, I don't think he probably appeals much to neo-Nazis. I just don't think he has those like political, I don't know.
Actually are.
Okay, let's say for
So
a moment.
you called it a false flag, and then when you were proven wrong the next day, you
Called what a
said you
false
thought
flag?
it was funny.
Called what a false flag?
You called the claims that the neo-Nazi shooter watched your show a false flag.
I don't know if I said that. That sounds awfully specific.
I don't have the exact quote in front of me, Tim. But
So you don't know what I said? Where did
Yes,
you hear
I do.
that?
I would listen to you.
Did you say something like, it sounds like, I said, it sounds like a psyop to have this profile appear one day after the shooting where it's got like a bunch of screenshots on it or something?
Sure.
It really does sound to me like someone told you to say things and you don't know what you're referencing.
I'm not shocked that that is the only way that you're going to try to react to this.
To react to what? Okay, no, this is fairly obvious. So I'm willing to bet Sam was like, hey, ask him about this and say these exact
No, I
things.
came up with,
Come up with original thoughts. Come on.
It is my original thought.
So
No, it
it's-
isn't.
It's
some guy posts a screenshot of one episode of a show he's not subscribed to, and you think that's an attack vector for something political, but it's a personal snipe that has no bearing on any of the arguments we've made the entire show.
I disagree.
Yeah, so
You disagree with what? With what? Elaborate.
What Tim should just ask here is Tim should just say, like, what do you think are some positions I have that are appealing to neo-Nazis? Like, that should be his question, right?
I'm Sky.
Sky.
Yeah,
Nah,
nice
let's
to
get
meet
right
you.
into it. You ever been picked up before?
Oh, wow. So you're getting right into it. I didn't even, you heard my name. What's your name?
Josh.
Josh.
yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
The reason you're getting right into it. Damn.
I like this. I know what I'm looking for.
Honestly, no. I don't think, I can say honestly, I never have.
So what you like getting into?
A bit more calm things. Like, I like art, a good picnic. I like food. I love to cook. Damn. Wow. Shit. Damn.
What?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Okay, sorry.
I disagree that it has no bearing on what you've said throughout your entire show.
Like what? What did I say?
There you go.
This is
Come
what,
on, come
this
on,
was
come on.
the claim
Let's
that you
hear
made.
it. Let's hear it.
I believe that your program appeals to a right-wing audience, and there's a reason that
Well, right wing and Nazi are way different. Well, maybe not in her eyes, I guess, but I feel like this is a little bit of a different claim.
the neo-Nazi shooter watched your program
And how do you know he watched the program?
because he posted about it.
What did he post?
Tim,
What did he post?
he posted parts of an interview that you did.
No, he didn't. You're wrong.
he had 4 screenshots on his phone from
You
the
don't
same
even know what
episode.
you're talking about, and all you can do is laugh and
No,
say,
it's 'cause you get
some
specific
guy,
to obscure
some
the fact-
guy
you called it
posted
a
one thing one time, and that's the only argument you have.
Did you go to the time codes that were in that episode? Because I did. I ran this down, and one of them was a clip of Elijah Schaefer, and like weirdly for this like neo-Nazi Hispanic shooter, it's Elijah saying that we shouldn't be
He had a
emphasizing
swastika
race
tattoo.
specifically. No, he's a neo-Nazi Hispanic shooter.
Right, but Tim called it a false flag and then corrected himself the next day and then said he thought it was funny after a mass shooting.
I think that
People
someone
were calling
told you
him
to say this, and you don't actually know what you're talking about.
I think that it's not shocking that you think that based on my gender.
Okay, you're not saying anything anymore.
But like I screen grab because I do YouTube clips, so I will screen grab a time code so I know where to go later. So like when I saw that, I knew, or I had a feeling, because obviously he's dead. So, or was he captured or was he killed?
I think he was killed.
Yeah, so he's dead, so he can't tell us. But like I think people screenshot, because this is why I do it, and you can find them in my phone, moments in things so that they can go back and reference that clip. And I ran down both of those time codes. Neither
look,
one.
I get it, but look, man, this is the majority report. This
Yeah, but
why,
it
this
is
why,
it is a nasty smear. Like you're doing it on purpose
and
without
it's
running
not
down
a political
the
statement.
content.
It's not a
It's
political
a
argument.
fact.
You're like he
Argues
watched
nothing.
an episode of her show. I'm sorry, of his show. Like that's
There was that one guy who posted Sam Cedar a whole bunch. Remember the guy who killed all those people at the bar in Ohio?
I don't remember that case
Why,
specifically.
why did that guy watch Sam Cedar so much?
Why did Gavin?
Why do you guys appeal to mass shooters? Why do mass shooters
There's a
talk
qualitative
about Sam
difference.
Cedar being so inspirational to them?
Why did Gavin?
Why
Long,
is Emma Vigeland inspiring mass shooters?
Why did Gavin Long?
Why are you okay with porn being shown to children? Look, if you want to play a game of nonsense statements for political brownie points, feel free to do so. But I'll say it again.
Tim, I didn't mean to upset you.
This is exactly why Sam is not welcome on my show. But it's not something that I just one day was like, you know what? No, it's because I had serious conversations with networks and other high-profile individuals, and I love.
Can you name the high-profile individuals?
No, he won't.
That's their business. But I absolutely love how the response is, they're scared of Sam. It's like, no, they despise him. He's a bad faith actor who does exactly what you just did. We're having a conversation about scientific research, data, my position on what I like about DeSantis, and then you go, your show's for neo-Nazis. It's like, okay, dude, are you stupid?
I'm just stating facts.
Have you ever?
Okay, this is like lowbrow. This is why you guys have 170 Dave Rubin videos. Do you think the average person cares about Dave Rubin?
No, I'm
No,
just
but
trying
you
to
guys
combat
get
it.
clicks by doing it.
It's
Hey, how
fun.
about you guys run a video about how Tim Pool got into an argument with a pro-lifer about how he's in favor of pro-choice policy? You didn't run that, did you? Because you guys are grifters. This is what you do.
Jesus.
I can invite you on for a real conversation, and what do? Your show's for neo-Nazis. This is why you guys don't get invited places, because you're not having real conversations.
I don't really care about getting invited places.
Yeah, right. So go live in your grifter echo chamber where you guys can play songs with bad audio and then say, whoopsie.
I'm sorry that audio thing really upset you.
Wait, have you ever
Well,
covered
what
the
upsets
Gavin?
me is
Can
when I
can
talk
say-
about Ron DeSantis making fake things to trick people, and that's what you guys do. It's kind of like, how about that?
We do AI images?
When you run audio that sounds bad to make a nonsensical video where you're like, Tim Pool
He's so focused on the song thing. It hurts him so much.
sounds like Nickelback. It's like what you're doing is just trying to generate rage drama. It is internet blood sports level garbage. It doesn't answer any questions about the questions of pro-life and pro-choice, progressive tax policy. It doesn't answer questions about how we're going to protect or we're going to help kids. All it does is drum up support from your base so they can hoot and holler and give you clicks. Then you complain, we can't get any advertisers. Maybe it's because you make lowbrow drama garbage.
No, I mean, the first hour of our program is the one that's free.
For
and
neo-Nazis,
that's-
you mean? The one where that mass shooter watched Majority Report? Is that what you're talking about?
The first hour of our program will usually
What was that guy's
have
name?
Social Security and Medicare
can't remember that
like
guy's
kind of discussions, or we'll essentially talk to an expert on, say, policy in Latin America, that kind of thing. The stuff that's behind the paywall and then gets clipped is stuff where we respond to right-wingers. We want to get into the...
He got really mad when I said that he got kicked off of Bob's Burgers.
Oh, no, that's funny.
But-
You know he was joking, right? He was being sarcastic.
I didn't watch the clip. I just know that.
Yeah, he was
got mad.
hilarious. He first of all, the creator is one of his best friends. Sam's like,
I don't know. Sam came to me and said he was upset that they kicked him up. They were removing his role from the show.
I think he was joking.
But used to be at TYT, and Gavin Long, who was the Baton Rouge shooter, watched, reposted, and did reactions to Young Turks videos. A lot of them were straight misinformation. There was one in particular where they were going after a cop who slammed a woman, which, by the way, the cop acted inappropriately, but they wildly speculated that it was a black woman. It turned out to be a white woman. And there was a call in the video of like, what do you do if you see a pregnant black woman being assaulted by a cop? Gavin Long said he's going to step up. You can watch these videos; they're available online. And he shot four cops.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't my comment.
I didn't say.
about-
No, hold on. I didn't say it was your commentary, but you're saying screenshots on this guy's phone. Big problem. I got to bring it up right here. But have you ever covered at all what inspired Gavin Long?
Because
He killed 4 police officers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. That wasn't my coverage, so I don't know. I was based in
What
New
about
York.
The guy in Dallas, remember him?
That was a different shooter.
Sam,
No, I know.
I'm sorry. I
Right.
really didn't mean to trigger you. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just curious where your standards are. Like, have you gone
Look at
after
this.
the
She's
host on the Young Turks for
clip
that one?
harvesting, clip farming. Is that what you're doing?
I don't know what you mean.
Okay, your demeanor changes before the show to all of a sudden now you're going, what do you mean? I'm so sorry I triggered you. Oh, jeez.
Well, I mean,
get it. You guys
I'm
are going to
just-
make clips.
I'm
You
trying
guys
to
are
do-
lowbrow grifter drama garbage.
I'm trying to
You
just
want to talk
speak
about the
in a
merits
calming
of policy?
tone, so maybe that it calms you down a little bit.
You want to talk about policy or do you want to just insult people?
I would love to talk about policy.
Continue, Sean.
Yeah. So if screenshots, which are of clips that weren't even him speaking, is Tim Pool inspiring the shooter, then how come you've like never done this commentary at a place you used to work at of direct inspiration? Like he saw a clip, cuts to himself saying, "I'm gonna step up because I'm the real one."
I've
Like,
never heard of this, so.
Oh, that's
not?
interesting.
We're gonna read a paper after this. It's real boring, but it has to do. I almost believe her when she says she hasn't heard of this before. But we're gonna read a paper about Sony email a while ago. I think it's really interesting.
Thing that you never heard of.
Well,
that.
so it happened. Why do you think it is that your former program appealed to mass shooters so much?
I cover right-wingers, and I know that right-wing terrorism in this country dwarfs any kind of left-wing terrorism by like a 9-to-1 figure.
What does that do
I
with
might
what I
be
just asked?
underestimating. Because I cover the real threat in this country, which is right-wing terrorism.
Sure. So I'll ask again, I guess. Like, why do you think it is this mass shooter was inspired by your former program?
I would have to look into it to make a smarter
Do you feel
comment
bad
on
that he
it.
was inspired directly and admitted he was?
Sure. I mean, it's not.
Do you take responsibility?
It wasn't even my program. I worked there, but yeah.
So you were providing material support. Wow. You see,
I don't know
you
if
see-
she was
you-
there at the time.
No,
To be
look.
fair to you,
I don't think I was.
But I will say, it is interesting because the Young Turks did cover this shooting. And even though, again, reacted specifically to Young Turks videos covering the cops very poorly, propaganda inspired him to commit this violence, in my opinion.
If you want to talk about the
hold
Unturks,
on.
you should talk to them.
I would
yeah.
love to at some point in my life. But so he does this, but the Young Turks coverage of it called him just a sovereign citizen. So this
Yeah.
would be categorized as that right-wing terrorism,
This
even
is-
though
this-
he
this
was
is the thing, right?
inspired by a left-wing news organization,
Let's-
specifically left-wing
I'll do it. I'll
figures.
do a semi segue, and I'll talk about what irks me is like the Burisma scandal, for instance. Any kind of reasonable assessment over the story pre Hunter Biden anything is pretty shocking, but it's not something you see in any of these quote unquote left wing media sources for like no reason. I think the best example is it is so omitted from the narrative that when we had Hunter Avalon on the show.
How many degrees of separation is there from someone watching your show and committing violence? I think that like the line that I would draw, is if I'm saying things that seem like they could reasonably inspire somebody to violence, and then if somebody commits violence that seems like they could be reasonably connected to things I'm saying, then that would make me worried. So like, let's say I went off on like how much I hate women, fuck women, women ruin the country, women suck, we need to get rid of women. We need to do it, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody goes out who's a fan of mine and starts killing women. That would worry me. I'm trying to see if there's like a memory issue, if it's like eating more and more. Dedicated GPU memory. This is 24 gigs. This is my VRAM, right? This isn't like some other bullshit, is it?
He didn't even believe that Joe Biden admitted to engaging in the quid pro quo, and so I played the video for him. So what's troublesome is
What are you talking about?
He's talking about the fire the prosecutor clip from Joe Biden, specifically.
right.
If you
but I'm
remember
not
that.
surprised you're not familiar with it, right? It doesn't exist in the left's
mean-
echo chamber.
Well, it's funny. You call it the leftist echo chamber. I mean, I am a consumer of leftist news sources, but also I read right-wing ones just to check in on it. Centrist news organizations. I think this is a very, very specific echo chamber that I can't speak to.
The
Burisma thing, I look, I'm not going to defend Joe Biden. I mean, I'm a leftist. I'm to the left of Joe Biden. But this story, I mean, it's pretty much a nothing burger. The Durham investigation essentially had,
we're
or
not
not the
talking about
Durham, sorry, I misspoke. The investigation being done in the House right now is like looking into the whistleblower who's suspiciously gone missing, and they have an FBI tip for 17 different calls between Hunter Biden and this oligarch.
That's weird.
It's all completely gobbledygook made up. But at the same time,
Why are you defending Joe Biden like that? Why not just say, yeah, sure,
well,
screw that guy.
I'd love to criticize him on things that I think are actually real, like the fact that he's continued Trump's border policy and ramped it up, honestly, with Title 42, where he did sunset that because it was a part of the emergency and during COVID.
Trump,
but he's largely continued militarism around the border.
If
other things
Trump is
like
the
that.
nominee, do you think he'll win?
No, I don't, but I think he will be the nominee.
So wouldn't you rather have, say, Bernie Sanders as the candidate for the Democrats?
Of course.
So isn't it in your interest then to say, by all means, investigate Joe Biden? If he's corrupt, get rid of him.
Well, I don't think, sure, you can do an investigation. Everything that's come out so far seems like it's bullshit. but I would rather criticize him on things I find more substantive.
Like, so I can tell you definitively and factually, it's not BS. I mean, certainly there are political elements of it, but I mean, Joe Biden, this is what I was talking about with Hunter Evelyn. Like, Joe Biden's literally on camera saying that he threatened to withhold congressionally approved loan guarantees unless they fired Victor Shokin. Victor Shokin signed a sworn affidavit saying this was intentionally to protect Burisma from
No, this was
investigation.
stated U.S. policy to fire Shokin. This was not a quid pro quo outside of
Joe
the United
Biden
States.
said if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the loan guarantees. That is illegal.
Okay.
The vice president has not the authority to withhold loan guarantees from a foreign nation that have been approved by Congress.
It was not because they were investigating Burisma. It was because of European policy.
Well, intent is immaterial.
But you're claiming it's a quid pro quo.
It is a quid pro quo for Joe Biden to literally say on camera, which he did, fire the prosecutor or you're not getting the loans.
No, it's not.
It's actually
This is weird. No, defending. I mean, it is.
He might. So the president might have the discretion to not do that, and Obama might have said,
Well, they impeached Trump for the same thing.
You represent me in that regard. So
No. Trump was not impeached because he was representing the interests of the United States and the interest of the European Union when demanding that a certain prosecutor get fired. That was not why Trump was impeached. Trump was impeached because he was trying to do a quid pro quo to get personally revealing information, dirt, on a political adversary.
It's illegal for him to do that for the investigation. But like, you guys are off into like a different point. The point you were making originally was that Hunter had never seen this clip, but you've seen the clip that they're referencing, right? Because he was making an echo chamber
I've
point.
read about it, but I read.
Do you know
that's very interesting because that clip was plastered all over.
No,
Are you familiar with Gazprom?
I mostly my workflow is I read like 50 pages of news before the show every day.
No shot. Does she read 50 pages of news before the show and didn't hear about the quad cop killing dude or anything else? Absolutely no shot. And she is nowhere near informed enough on any issue I've heard her talk about to believe that she's reading 50 pages of news a day. Absolutely not. Maybe 50 tweets.
Honest question, like, are you familiar with Gazprom?
No.
Are you familiar with the Qatar-Turkey pipeline?
The
Qatar-Turkey pipeline.
Oh yeah.
You are?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Okay. Are you familiar with like U.S. Intelligence policy 2009 Syria and how this relates to Gazprom and Burisma and all this stuff?
I had somebody shoot me a whole email about how stupid this theory is, but I don't even remember because I don't know much about like the pipeline shit that's running over there. But it seems to be the case. I'm going to make a very broad statement that might not always be correct, but anytime people start bringing up like pipelines as like an explanation for international fucking foreign policy, it always seems like it's bullshit. But I don't know. There might be times that it's not, and I just don't know about it. But it doesn't seem like my GPU is eating a bunch of VRAM and not giving it back.
Vaguely.
I don't understand how, if you have an understanding of that, you would just be like, all of that's true, but the Joe Biden stuff's not true, because it doesn't make any sense as to why you would defend Joe Biden in that way.
I just think the investigation's largely BS. I'm not defending Joe Biden.
No, but I mean, like,
look into the investigation. If they
if
want
we-
to do
if
some
we
sort of
know-
special counsel investigation outside of the political process where it's not a Republican witch hunt, I'm all for that.
But here's what I'm trying to understand. You think that the quid pro quo is not illegal. You think
It's not.
that-
It was stated European policy by the government.
You-
and
so-
and you're connecting it and saying it's a quid pro quo based on a variety of different assumptions that have not been able to be proven yet in the midst of the investigation
Well,
in the House.
this I can't understand, right? When Donald Trump called Ukraine, it was called a quid pro quo, whether it was U.S. policy or not. It was. The president sets the policy. So if the president calls...
The president set the policy that he wanted to get personally incriminating information on a political opponent? That's official U.S. policy?
Ukraine and says, I got this video of Joe Biden, I'd like someone to look into it, he's impeached under a quid pro quo, right? Whether it is or isn't.
Because he was withholding aid to Ukraine.
Hey, just like Joe Biden tried to do, right?
This was stated U.S. policy at the time.
And the president sets U.S. policy,
but
right?
if it's quid pro quo, what was he getting in return?
Joe Biden?
Yes.
He said fire the prosecutor. The prosecutor had 12
Presumably, it would be the prosecutor that was investigating Burisma, but I do want
What was Biden getting in return?
but-
What was he getting in return?
Joe Biden?
Yes.
He said fire the prosecutor. The prosecutor had 12
Presumably, it would be the prosecutor that was investigating Burisma, but I do want
What was Biden getting in return?
Right, okay, so I'll tell you. First, the Viktor Shokin had about a dozen plus open investigations into Mykola Zlochevsky, the founder of Burisma, and I believe into Burisma as an ancillary factor.
But I just want to say real quick, impeachment doesn't
And Shokin
necessarily...
was not investigating Burisma.
He was.
But
He was not.
Yep. He okay, dude.
There were like open investigations on Burisma, but they were dead for years, is when I did research. This is getting like into the weeds on the Burisma shit, though. If she's not super well read on it, Tim Pool is definitely not going to play honest here. But any open investigation into Burisma was dead for a long time. That was one of the big complaints about Shokin, was that he didn't seem to be moving to do any kind of prosecution, and people accused him of being super corrupt. That's why everybody in the EU wanted Shokin out.
Look, if you don't know about this, just don't say no. I can tell you definitively, he was. It was a huge issue. There were a dozen plus investigations open into Mykola Zlochevsky.
You're
to the point where
misrepresenting it.
Zlochevsky fled the country. Zlochevsky fled Ukraine amid these investigations. Upon Shokin's firing, returned to Ukraine. After Donald Trump then says, I want this looked into, Zlochevsky flees again.
Okay, but
It's
what was the
weird to me
quid
that
pro
you're
quo?
defending this.
What was Biden getting in return?
They presumably they would stop investigating Burisma, which is where his son worked
that's not
at.
it. The quid pro quo is fire the prosecutor or I will withhold aid. Okay?
No. No, wait, that's not what a quid pro quo is, isn't it? Isn't a quid pro quo like, I'll do something for you if you do something for me? Isn't that a quid pro quo? He's just talking about what the threat is, but the threat is to encourage a quid pro quo. So for instance, the quid pro quo here would be Biden will stop the investigation so that you stop prosecuting Burisma because my son works on the board there and he's making a lot of money. That's the claim. I just don't think Tim Pool knows what quid pro quo means, I guess. I'm not sure if he just thinks that means like threatening somebody, but
you can say it was.
That's not proven.
But she's asking. No, he did say that. But she's saying it's not proven that he did that for personal gain. She's saying,
Yes. It doesn't
matter.
Where's
That's
the
not- that's not
benefit
the
for
question.
Biden?
Yes, but that's not illegal.
Can I clarify a legal point
Trump's
real quick?
impeachment was not.
No. That, oh God. Does Tim Pool do I not know what quid pro quo means? Does he think quid pro quo means threatening to withhold something if you don't do something else? A favor or advantage granted or expected in return for something else. Hello?
Hey, it's just hi. No, it's not the quid pro quo. So in an official capacity, the president can always...
Wait, no. We're not talking about like the facts of what happened. It's just that Tim Pool doesn't understand what a quid pro quo is.
Well, he's fucking it up. So what he's trying to say is that the president or any sort of government official, leveraging foreign aid for any reason is a quid pro quo, but it's not in terms of why Trump was impeached. I guess technically it is. But
no. What Emma was asking Tim is, what is the quid pro quo? Like, what is Biden getting for having Shokin prosecuted? That's
compliance with U.S. policy. Which
no,
is
that's not a quid pro quo, though. That's just what, like, you wouldn't call it, for instance, let's say that the IRS levies a fine against me, right, to make me pay to comply with whatever. That's not a quid pro quo. A quid pro quo is, I'll do something for you so that you do something for me, with the implication here being something improper is happening.
Correct. The implication being that it's some sort of corrupt or personal request, and that's what distinguishes what Trump did.
Well, sure, but when you say corrupt or personal request, it wouldn't be considered a quid pro quo if Biden did this request at the behest of the American government for official U.S. foreign policy.
I think it depends on how dense you want to get with the definition, because it literally just means this for that.
If you're gonna use, but that's not what we're talking about here. That's not.
I know that's not what we're talking about.
No. Wait. That's not even the conspiracy. The conspiracy theory, the allegation is that Biden is doing this, and the quid pro quo is so that Burisma is no longer investigated, where his son Hunter Biden sits on the board. That's the quid pro quo that conservatives allege is happening. That the whole reason why Biden was trying to get Shokin fired was to get favorability for his son, who sits on the board of a company that Shokin was ostensibly
Yeah, but if I remember correctly, Pool doesn't, like Sean, your actual justice warrior, he points that out at some point during this conversation, but Tim Pool does not. Tim Pool, as far as I know, never bites the bullet. He's just saying that Biden leveraging foreign aid for any reason is effectively a quid pro quo. He's being dense and very literalist with the Latin.
Okay, I guess, but I don't even think that's a literalist. I don't think that's nobody. I've never in my life heard quid pro quo said in that way ever, or referenced in that way ever.
Yeah, well, that's the only person in the conversation who's willing to bite the bullet on that is Sean, as far as I remember when I watched it. And I don't think Tim Pool ever does. And again, I just want to clarify.
No, hold on.
President,
I had the last time I was on his show, we argued about this, doesn't he? He thinks that Biden was being protective of his son. That was the whole point of like the big man and everything, right?
I'm sure he said it in the past. I don't think he says it during this conversation. I don't think he ever comes out and says that Biden acted improperly to shield Hunter Biden. I think the only person who says that is Sean. So I think I don't know. I think Tim is being absolutely literalist on this. But again, I really want to clarify because it's something that I wish Emma points out to Tim Pool. It's perfectly reasonable for an executive official to leverage congressional. Jimmy Carter did it when he refused like foreign aid to Chile during the Carter administration, but you have to do it for state purposes. So that's the difference.
Yeah, I understand what you're
Trump and
saying.
Biden.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call it a quid pro quo.
I think yes, I agree that
that's
it would
why I'm
be,
saying like the big difference here. Well, because if Biden was doing a quid pro quo on behalf of the United States government, that's fine. But Trump wasn't doing a quid pro quo to represent U.S. foreign policy. He was doing it to represent a personal political ambition against a political opponent, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All
right.
Be careful, babe.
Toodles.
Not illegal either because what was his intent?
That's the exact point I want to clarify. Impeachment is not actually a real legitimate criminal process. It is a political process.
I understand that.
So like him being impeached for this like doesn't actually say anything to the legality.
Trump was not following United States policy. Biden
He
was.
sets the policy. He's the president.
This shit talking point needs to disappear immediately. Because like if that's the case, then I mean like Biden was the vice president of Obama. It could have just as like Obama didn't come out against Biden, right? Couldn't Biden have just set this policy then? Or maybe that would be Tim. Or maybe that'd be Tim's whole argument. Trump didn't do anything wrong because Biden didn't do anything wrong. I don't know. This idea of like the president can do whatever he wants. Yeah, I don't know.
Congress does.
No, they
we
don't.
have separations of powers.
The president
in this country.
sets policy.
Not
for the executive branch. Congress isn't the one making calls to foreign diplomats.
Not for aid.
No,
Congress,
they allocate the aid, but he's able to pull it under certain circumstances.
It's not just that. Foreign policy is set by the president. Wars are declared by Congress.
A huge portion of it.
Right. Okay, nothing's absolute.
Yeah.
But the idea that we would elect a president to negotiate on our interests when it comes to the issues of military, and then we would be like, but in this one instance, he doesn't have the authority. What do you mean? He's the one who sets the policy.
No, he has the authority.
It was Barack. The argument is that Joe Biden wasn't engaging in a quid pro quo because it was a policy of our administration. Yeah, Obama had a policy.
A quid pro quo is when you get something personally in return.
Yes.
So something for something is what it means.
Right, but the nature of the investigation that they're looking into.
Yes, Emma is correct here.
Is they're trying to say that there was a bribe via Hunter Biden.
Yes.
And there has been
Joe
no...
and Hunter. They say
right, but there has been no actual evidence on that front.
Well, I'm not super concerned about what they may be investigating currently. Right now, I'm talking about it is the whole point of this was I can't believe we're even arguing it right now.
But
I don't understand why you, who's someone who has every reason to oppose Joe Biden, are like, he said it on camera, but you know what? It's fine. I don't get it. Like, just be.
The Tim Pool's understanding of this is unbelievable. I don't understand what he's saying. Is Tim Pool saying it was bad that Biden did something that was official U.S. and EU foreign policy? Is that what? That's just the vice president acting in service of being the vice president. I don't understand I have no idea what the argument is right now. I am so confused.
Be like, yeah, sure, fine, I guess.
But she's making a very specific point that for it to be a quid pro quo, you have to explain how Biden benefited from this. So, like, it's not necessarily that she's disagreeing with what you're saying, although she's saying it's part of policy, but she's saying you have to actually, to complete this, like, basically you're 2/3 of the way there, that final third is how he benefited.
Biden was not in opposition to congressional policy,
but that's what
and
she's
Trump was.
talking about.
I'm talking about
Trump
Joe
that's
Biden threatening to withhold loan guarantees goes against... It's not legal.
But you're talking.
I don't think that's true. At some point, I should dig into this. Somebody linked this. Ukrainian reforms 2 years after the Maidan Revolution and the Russian invasion. Hearing Committee of Foreign Relations. Oh, can we Control F Shokin here? An important step was taken when General Prosecutor Shogun resigned earlier this year, but Parliament must now accept his resignation, and this must be followed by a commitment to take concrete steps towards judicial reform, civil service reform, law enforcement, and a transparent and open privatization process of Ukrainians' 1,800 state-owned enterprises. What else do we have from Shokin here? Early this year, 3 reform ministers resigned quietly. Then Economic Minister Abramovicius Christ resigned, complaining that he could not do his job because of corruption, and that corruption went all the way to the top. Reformers and civil society spoke up for Mr. and so did the US, the EU, and the IMF. In response, President Poroshenko called for the removal of Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin, and the Rada, which is the name for their parliament, passed reform legislation that had been blocked for months. They complained too that Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin was a compromised figure who had served as Procurator General in the Yanukovych administration. By late fall of 2015, the EU and the United States joined the chorus of those seeking Mr. Shokin's removal as the start of an overall reform of the Procurator General's office. U.S. Vice President Joe Biden spoke publicly about this before and during his December visit to Kiev, but Mr. Shokin remained in place. It wasn't like Biden was doing this on his own. Like, this was stated policy of the United States and the EU. Literally nobody wanted. I don't even think Ukraine wanted him to stay. Mr. Poroshenko called for Mr. Shokin's removal and for an investigation of the charges against Mr. Kononenko. But yeah, the idea that, it's just such a, I don't know what argument Tim Pool is trying to make right now. I'm so confused.
Past each other because she's saying like there's a reason for that and it's not corrupt related.
But that has nothing to do with what I'm saying is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. I'm just clarifying where you guys are miscommunicating.
Here, this is where I'll say I have differences with Joe Biden. First of all, I can't even understand why he hasn't or didn't, when he had a House and a Senate that was Democratic, push for any kind of single payer or socialized healthcare. I wish that
What?
Even understand why he hasn't or didn't, when he had
there's a reason for that and it's not corrupt related.
But that has nothing to do with what I'm saying is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. I'm just clarifying where you guys are miscommunicating.
Here, this is where I'll say I have differences with Joe Biden. First of all, I can't even understand why he hasn't or didn't, when he had a House and a Senate that was Democratic, push for any kind of single payer or socialized healthcare. I wish that was happening.
With our 49 plus 1 or 48 plus 2 Democratic senators, he should have been pushing for single payer healthcare. Wait, what?
He's certainly to the right of me on the border. The fact that he broke the rail strike, that's something that I'm deeply in opposition to, and I'm happy to discuss those kinds of things with you. But I
don't really want to get into the Burisma thing. It came up as an example of I don't understand why there's a tribal need to defend Joe Biden.
It was this
is such a bizarro. This is such a weird conversation because now Tim Pool is doing to Emma what Emma was doing to Tim Pool. Dude, you are not going to find staunch Biden supporters on the Majority Report. Emma is she probably shits on Biden more than she does Trump. If I had to guess, if I had to put money on it, I would say that the Majority Report probably has spent more time shitting on Biden than they have Trump. Just by virtue of the fact that Biden is in office. The idea that he's trying to get her on being a Biden supporter is really funny because, that is absolutely not going to be her position.
It's not tribal. It was U.S. policy to get rid of corruption in Ukraine. Shokin was not investigating Burisma. Biden was in concert. He was continuing U.S. policy. Trump was in opposition to it. That is the difference in the hypocrisy that you're trying to highlight here.
Yes.
Mm. You guys are going to go in circles on this. But why
I have to pull it up, but because we covered this a long time ago. I didn't want to do the whole Burisma thing, but my point was simply that having covered this to such extent, it is confusing to me the need to defend the Bidens on this one. I just
criticized Biden in a bunch of different
But I don't
ways.
understand why you're saying there was no investigation. You're just making that up.
They're in the middle of an investigation.
No.
Right now.
Michael Zlochevsky had 12 to 14 open investigations. Shokin had a dozen plus investigations into Zlochevsky in Burisma.
Okay.
But I don't know why you're no, that's not true. Or what? I don't know. It's been a couple years since we covered this in depth and had all the articles pulled up, to be fair. But yeah, they did. That's not even a question of the facts.
Okay.
The question is whether or not, they wanted someone else to do it.
I feel I kind of delineated why it's different, pretty succinctly. Trump was in violation of U.S. policy set by Congress. Biden was not. That is the difference that we're laying out here. And you have been unable to establish how Biden benefits in a quid pro quo from this in any way.
Well, currently the argument is that his son was on the board of Burisma.
There it is. Jesus, how did it take us so long to get here? That was the whole point of the Burisma quid pro quo stuff, was because Hunter Biden sits on the board of one of the energy companies in Ukraine that Shokin was supposedly investigating. That's the whole point of why people bring this up as a quid pro quo.
So that one's kind of obvious, as was a CIA director.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
So as a counterterrorism director of the CIA on the board of this company, and the so-called left is like, but it's fine. Like, what is going on? No. I don't understand how...
Like, they're not going to defend any of this. Like, I guarantee you the majority of persons probably said over and over again, I could be wrong. I feel like they said this, but maybe I'm doing it now. I feel like I've heard them say... I know I've heard it on the Young Turks a lot, that like, oh, the Democrats and the Republicans are the same on this. All of their corporatist donors, all of the corporate-backed donors, blah, 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 blah. Like, it tends to be the talking point of these types of groups. I don't think you're going to find staunch Biden supporters on the majority report, but...
Well,
the
here,
left
Tim,
became pro-war, pro-mandate, pro-big pharma. like government should be able to give multi-billion-dollar
Tim, I'm
no
against
bid
government
contracts
corruption. The idea that these
vaccine mandates, like, I didn't
what about vaccine mandates?
I said, I don't understand how the left became pro-big pharma, pro-no bid,
pharma. I'm pro-public health.
So you're in favor of no bid, no liability contracts for massive multinational pharmaceuticals?
No, I was literally just said earlier in the program that
she literally said earlier that she should nationalize it. She literally said that, Tim.
Wanted the state to own it, since we gave our money to that and created life-saving vaccines with tax.
You guys actually agreed on that. Tim even said in counter to that, he's like, yes, publicly funded should be publicly owned. Those vaccines were not, by the way, publicly funded, the research, but...
Their money.
Right, so who gets the money?
The government?
The big pharma did. It's messed up.
Right.
We
So
should have socialized healthcare in this country and be manufacturing it ourselves.
Even if the patents were released to the public, they still gave the billion-dollar production contracts to big pharma.
But that is what we live in, unfortunately, right now. And we were in the middle of a global pandemic, and we needed vaccines immediately.
That's not left.
No, it is. It certainly is. I believe that in the immediate, that is
hyper-centralized.
Excuse me?
Hyper-centralized funding of massive multinational pharmaceuticals is not leftist.
Well, what would be the alternative, Tim, in the midst of a global pandemic?
Decentralized bid contracts with liability.
I literally just...
Is there ever liability for FDA-approved drugs? Does anybody know the answer to that? Is there liability for FDA-approved drugs? Let's check. These criteria are industry standards, but the fact that a drug was properly licensed by the FDA has no effect on the manufacturer's liability to an injured plaintiff if the drug proves to be otherwise defective. Oh, okay, so generally there is. No liability, vaccines, mRNA. I wonder why they changed the liability for these vaccines, because I believe that the recent set of vaccines did not have, or did have, a liability waiver. Why did FDA no, or let's say, why no liability mRNA vaccines under the PrEP Act? To reduce the testing time and general lawsuit protections. Oh, Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act. The Regulation provides immunity from liability except for willful misconduct for claims of loss caused rising or relating to resulting from administration or use of countermeasures disease in it, by the Secretariat, Constitution, and PrEP Act declarations for the person providing immunity from liability and is different from and not depending on other emergency declarations. Did the PrEP Act also impact the non-mRNA vaccines, so like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and everything as well? I imagine it would. It doesn't specify mRNA in here or anything. I imagine it probably would. Okay.
Said earlier in the program that I was in favor and much closer. First, also, I'm surprised you're saying this, because didn't you say that you were more close to Trump on vaccine policy? This is Trump's vaccine policy.
No, you were talking about that.
Okay, I am closer to him than that.
Yeah.
On that. I believe that when we
I said
did
something like, "Oh, yeah."
give investment into these companies, yes, they were going to make some sort of windfall, but then the vaccines themselves should be owned by the public, since it was money, our money that was given into it. That's the practical realities of what we have to deal with today in a for-profit healthcare system. I'm hoping that we transition away from that and that we have socialized healthcare, so none of the things that you're talking about have to happen anymore.
I don't think you need to give no bid, no liability contracts to massive pharmaceuticals to do what needed to be done. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just that the government is...
Oh, heads up. I'm sorry. I have to do a weekly reminder of this, okay? Listen up. Puss in Boots 2 is a great movie, okay? All of you should watch it. Super cute, super good. Good for children and adults. Highly recommended, all right?
Crooked.
So you're closer to DeSantis on vaccine policy.
Probably neither. I don't know how it applies to what we're talking about. I'm saying...
So what's your alternative to producing the vaccine in the rapid way that the Operation Warp Speed did?
Well, there are a lot of questions about whether or not it worked in any capacity, right?
No, there's not.
What do you mean?
The vaccines were highly effective.
What does that mean?
Originally at preventing death. Then, of course, there were different variants and disease continued to spread.
Preventing infections. Everybody always forgets the initial vaccines, especially before Delta, were incredibly effective at preventing infection. I was thinking contamination, infection. The Delta was decent as well. Past Delta, they start to drop off pretty significantly in terms of reducing the likelihood of infection. But the initial vaccines were incredibly effective. And then Delta came, and then those were fairly effective, and then, yeah.
I'm saying, like,
but vaccines
what was
were
the
immensely
initial...
effective in preventing death, the mRNA vaccines.
Right,
not
so
the Johnson
what I mean more
Johnson
so
one.
is like the Operation Warp Speed...
Even the Johnson Johnson one was decent.
Warp Speed was predicated upon preventing the spread, which it didn't do.
This argument is so brain dead. It's such a fucking retarded... Conservatives have initially, so here were the initial claims that were made about the vaccine. It's not going to do anything, doesn't help at all, maybe people are more infectious, turns you into a magnet, evil thing that's going to cause you to die from blah, blah, blah. Now every single conservative argument is proven to be 100% bullshit. As every single argument is proven to be bullshit. The last one is, they said it would 100% stop all transmission, and it didn't stop 100% all transmission, so every claim is like, bullshit. It reduced the likelihood of you getting infected. It reduced the likelihood of you going to a hospital. I don't know, actually. Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong. Does any vaccine reduce transmission? Like, if you get like a vaccine for the measles and you get the measles, does that mean that you're not going to transmit the measles? Is that even how vaccines work? Like, I don't know if there's even, like, if you get the flu vaccine and then you get the flu, you can probably still transmit the flu. I don't understand where this, like, eliminate spread or whatever. Like, the whole point of getting vaccinated is so that you don't get sick. And if you don't get sick and you're not manufacturing the virus in your body, which is what happens when you get sick, then you probably don't infect people.
Right?
Sorry?
Operation Warp Speed was predicated upon, like...
Yes, it did. It helped prevent the spread.
It didn't.
Yes, it did.
It did help prevent the spread, but Tim is going to rely on this weird phrasing of, like, it didn't stop the spread 100%. Therefore, it didn't do anything for the spread at all. That's like the weird word game that's played here.
Well, I mean, part of the issue was that in red states, there was no ability to actually...
May have prevented death, but I think, like, wasn't it like, oh yeah,
there was
it
no
doesn't actually stop
mass
spread?
mandates were immediately done away with in red states. They basically had no social distancing. That was much more of had much more of an effect on death in this country than like the inefficacy of vaccines. This has been borne out by data after data after data set. And then we have new variations of the vaccines, which have also helped.
Yeah, nothing was going to reduce the spread that much. It was like it was already one of the most contagious viruses.
That's not. I don't know why Sean is saying this, because he simps on these conservative talking points. You absolutely could stop the spread. They did it very aggressively in countries like South Korea, Australia, New Zealand. It is possible to stop it. We just didn't take aggressive enough measures in the United States. Now, whether we should have taken measures that aggressive, that's up for debate. Like, I can see good arguments on both sides, but don't say it was impossible to ever stop it. That's not true.
Yes.
And then it mutated to become more contagious.
Well, it helped with both transmissions and severity. That's a fact. The mRNA vaccines did.
Well, but I don't want to deviate too much. We were talking about
and it explodes spread, particularly with the wild
big pharmaceuticals. So my issue would be, like, instead of having like 3 big companies, I think it was like 4 big companies, just do it. would be to have it decentralized amongst many different producers who are not centralized. And that can be done. We just have to do it.
Talking like a prize, like, hey, if you develop this vaccine, whoever does it first, then you get the windfall.
Or even like a mandated coordination of production, but not have one.
Wasn't that essentially what Warp Speed was, though? Was a prize for people who could because other people tried to manufacture vaccines earlier and were unsuccessful in doing so, right?
Company just be like, we're going to give $10 billion to company X. That's insane.
But it was if you could actually get the vaccine manufactured. My understanding, hold on, I feels like, am I wrong? I feel like they're just describing Warp Speed. Like, Warp Speed was literally, if you figure out how to get this vaccine, we're going to guarantee you a huge contract to buy like hundreds of millions or billions of dosages. That was the whole point of Warp Speed.
Didn't one of these companies refuse the money up front for fear of future ownership of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, was that Moderna or something like that?
I don't remember which one.
I don't know. Anyway, my point was, there's that meme that Elon Musk made where like the left moves further and further left. I think that the left has actually gone right in a weird way.
How is preventing death in a global pandemic?
Well, like, are you in favor of the war in Ukraine?
What
I'm sorry,
does that mean?
I'll rephrase. Do you believe the U.S. should be involved in providing material support to the Ukrainians?
I have been in favor of it, yes. I do think that there are legitimate concerns about the continuation of doing so without brokering a peace and it becoming some sort of proxy for U.S. like war criminals within the United States. But in terms of like the Russian invasion, I am completely opposed and in support of the Ukrainian people.
Yeah, it's more a question of like, should
good
we
position.
have given, what are we at, like 100, 200 billion?
I don't know, because there's guarantees which have not been delivered, and it's in terms of weapons, so I don't know what's actually been delivered.
This is what I don't understand. Like, people I used to know from back during Occupy are like flying Ukrainian flags and being like, we got to support this. Hasan Piker criticized me for saying we shouldn't be involved. And
Yeah.
I'm
He
like,
also said the invasion wasn't going to happen for sure, like 100%,
Sure.
then it happened the next day.
But my position has always been 99% non-intervention. Like, I've not changed at all in that regard.
Okay.
And the left has become pro-intervention, moving
But we're
them
not.
right.
But Ukraine is on the defense. They were invaded. This is not the same
Want to talk
thing.
about Kuwait and Iraq and...
You want to talk about that? I'm in
Well, no,
favor.
I mean, look,
we were the
do you think
equivalent of
she's-
Let's talk
Russia
about-
in the case of Iraq. We invaded under completely false pretenses. We invaded under
what
illegal
I'm saying is,
pretenses,
like, this just
and we
proves my
killed
point.
and decimated that country. Hundreds of thousands dead because of the
If
U.S.
the left
empire.
position was only opposed to war because of the circumstances of the war, then I would say the left is more pro-war and to the right of me on war.
I'm completely anti-war, but the war happened because Russia invaded, and now Ukraine is trying to defend itself.
Right.
They're on another thing like parental rights from before, where nobody is truly completely for or against war. Like, war is it's gonna depend on like other things that we're talking about. There's gonna be some wars that we support and some wars that we oppose, I would imagine, right?
So you're anti-war, you oppose war,
Yes.
but you're to the right of me when it comes to Ukraine.
I don't think so.
Do you believe that the U.S. should be supplying and aiding the Ukrainians?
I do believe so because
Right,
they're
who gets that
defending
money?
themselves.
Who gets that money?
The military.
But
they're defending
Raytheon,
themselves.
Northrop Grumman, Lockheed
Yeah,
Martin.
totally.
Yeah, I'm opposed to all of that.
I mean, look, if
You're to the right of me on
if
that
you
issue.
believe that Russia should be able to invade Ukraine and take territory without recourse, then I mean that's pro-imperialism. That's not, and that's still pro-war.
No,
Yes, it
a lot of
is.
people around the world do a lot of bad things. I don't think the U.S. should be an empire going and funding wars all over the world.
We're not funding wars. We're funding the defense. I mean,
Like-
and there's something that you can be said where should we draw a certain line? I have already conceded that strings should be attached and we should be involved in peace negotiations. But to flatten the power dynamics here, I mean, I would imagine this is like the same argument that you hear when it comes to Israel and Palestine, right? Where Palestinians are defending themselves, and then it's, oh my gosh, they are just it's completely symmetrical. Israel and Palestine. These are two actors just battling it out.
So you're in favor of intervention there?
I would love to fund the Palestinians so that they were able to have a better
You are
life
to
for
the right
themselves.
of me on foreign policy.
Well, we already fund Israel, dude.
Yeah,
This shit is so cringe. They're trying to like, you're to the right of me, you're to the left of me, you're to the right of me. That's such a cringe way of like measuring political positions.
Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I don't have an answer to.
Then you're in favor of funding military.
No.
We fund the Iron
Me
Dome.
literally saying
We fund
I
their
don't
military industrial
know
complex.
anything enough about it
Then if
and
it's
I
your
lean
principle
against
and you're
intervention,
anti-war, then you should be saying then we should cut Israel funding for
or
Israeli
I can say
defense
simply,
right now.
I lean. That's why I said 99%. I'll say I absolutely lean against providing military aid to Israel. I just don't know. I will say a new war in Ukraine, in a territory that we are not, the United States is not, doesn't mean that I'm as far left as possible on the question of imperialism. It means that you are to the right of me on that issue.
Yeah.
Like your position would provide funding for massive multinational military-industrial complex corporations.
I mean, I think that's the
Jesus,
fact that
so
we
many
do
buzzwords.
have
think
those
they should be
contracts is messed
dismantled,
up. I think the
splintered
United
to 1,000 pieces and scattered
sure.
to the
I think
wind.
the United States should be more primarily. You want to nationalize the defense industry? You want to go for that? I'm down.
I don't know about nationalizing that. That empowers it, makes it permanent.
Well, there's always going to be a weapons industry, and there's always
be
going to be.
decentralized.
It should be severely cut
Wow,
into. The
Chancellor,
United
thanks
States,
for
by
the
the way, made
membership,
a
buddy.
promise in 1993 to Ukraine that we would defend them if they denuclearized.
That's true.
So that is part of what we're doing in this instance.
That's true too, and I think that's an interesting question about upholding our obligations that I don't disagree with. It would be very difficult for us. Granted, the issue is I think I'm like a little kid. I'm like 7 years old when something like that happens, and now in my name, we engage in this conflict and war. I think it's fair to say that while I can understand that treaty exists, as a now adult who is paying tax into this, I have the right to object to past agreements that weren't made by me.
He has a point, though. You argue for defending Ukraine, but I don't think you would support the U.S. funding Palestine. Wouldn't letting Israel take over set a bad precedent? Well, I think that who's right or wrong in the Israeli-Palestinian thing is way less clear-cut. But like if Israel started to invade Palestine and literally genocide people, I mean, I probably would support some sort of like military intervention where we support Palestine there, right? The issue with supporting Palestine and Israel doesn't have to do with the principle of the matter. It has to do with the fact of the matter in terms of like who's actually in the right or wrong. And that issue is significantly more complicated than Russia-Ukraine, which I think is far more straightforward in terms of who is the good guy versus the bad guy.
I just, my point on this one was specifically, I see all these Ukrainian flags and profiles. I make a comment in agreement with Hasan where I was like, he was right about MrBeast. And then I was talking about military intervention and how it's wrong. We're spending $100 billion on this war in Ukraine. We shouldn't be doing it. And then he laughed at me over it. And I'm just like, genuine question. When did it become, or maybe I was always wrong, when I was at like Occupy or doing these like anti-Iraq war protests back in the 2000s, I thought that it was the left position to oppose military expansion, military-industrial complex. But today, it's inverted. Strangely, it's the Trump supporters saying no war.
No, because they're in favor of
pro-war.
Russian imperialism. That is, you're again flattening power dynamics of who was the invader and who has been invaded.
That's not what I'm talking about.
The reality here is trying to figure out who's pro-imperialist, anti-blah, blah, 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 blah. Again, through this lens, I think it's going to be very difficult to figure out who's in favor or against particular things. I think the actual lens here is the establishment, or rather the populist lens. I think that populists tend to be in favor of isolation to further bolster domestic policy. So a populist is generally going to say things like, they'll say statements like this: I don't think we should be sending money to X country when we've got Y people that are sick here. Or they might say things like, I don't think we should be taking immigrants into this country when we've got people here that need help. A populist is generally going to favor domestic policy, or even like protectionist policy. And a populist might also say something like, I don't think we should be importing so much steel from this country when we should be making steel in our own country. I don't think we should be buying cars from Mexico when we could be building them in the United States. These are populist statements. When you look at it through a populist lens, then everything becomes like pretty straightforward. So for instance, like even Bernie Sanders supporters are going to align heavily with Trump supporters on some things. They'll say things probably along the lines of like, why are we sending so much money to Ukraine? Why are we so invested in issues over there? Why are we playing global police when we've got, Bernie Sanders supporters might say, when we've got homeless people here, when we've got low wage workers here that aren't being, paid fair wages, or when we're not investing enough in like child health care or whatever, right? Trump supporters might say we're not investing enough in industry or manufacturing. Why are we pouring all this money over there when we could be investing in ourselves, or reducing the debt, right? But the populist lens, I think, fully explains the points of view here. Trying to figure out who's more right or left or imperialist or unimperialist is, I don't think you're going to get very good predictiveness there.
I'm in favor of the United States abiding by the treaty that we promised Ukraine in 1993.
I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about the moral
94, but nice job to even bring that up. Good work.
Defend them if they do denuclearize. And by the way, why I'm more pro-war than you, or anti-war, Jesus, anti-war than you, is that I'm in favor of broad denuclearization. And I think that we should continue to make our promises to countries that choose not to
does that
engage
make you
in
more-
making nuclear power.
How does that make you more than
or
me?
in nuclear weaponry?
I don't disagree on that at all.
Okay, then there you go.
You're
But
revolving.
I'm in favor of committing and making our and because they denuclearized and said that we're not going to create nuclear weaponry, I am in favor of keeping our promise on that front, so that we are able to incentivize and keep our promises that we are going to back you up if you choose not to make nuclear weaponry.
Maybe it's not a left or right thing. Maybe it's more of just like a liberal.
Tim is really good. Somebody pointed this out in chat earlier that he's doing this, and he is doing this. He's doing that thing where he skirts away from a point that he's completely wrong on, and you don't feel like he's actually lost one because he just goes right to the next thing. She is right, though. She's referring to the Budapest memorandums that were made between the nuclear powers and Ukraine and Kazakhstan and Belarus. Was that the three? Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus, I think, which is correct. But now he like completely skirted away from that.
Libertarian thing.
I mean,
Libertarian versus authoritarian.
I think it's that first of all, anti-war is a dumb like position. I'm sorry.
True.
Everybody's like anti-wars they don't like, but
Exactly,
obviously
yes.
like I can composit
It's
a scenario
Budapest.
where you would support like an intervention. Like if you gave me time to like
That's
think
why I
about
say
it.
99%,
Right.
because nothing's absolute. Like if you were to tell me that Vladimir Putin, he's live streaming himself about to launch a nuclear weapon at Washington D.C., I'd be like, okay, we got to do something about that.
But there's something to what she's saying, where the Ukraine, after the fall of the Soviet Union, had the third largest nuclear weapon stockpile.
That's right.
And in exchange for giving it up, there were security guarantees. Now, if you're worried about nuclear proliferation in other countries that might lead to a nuclear war, protecting or making sure that they can maintain their territorial integrity, just as an example to other countries that might want to denuclearize in the future, is a worthwhile stake.
Yes,
And I think I
true.
understand that position. Like, it makes perfect sense in my opinion.
Yep.
I understand it. I don't care though, right? So it's kind of like if some dude cut a deal with, like, someone in my family cut a deal with someone else, and then 30 years later they walk up and say, your dad told me that if I ever had this problem, you were going to take care of me. I'd be like, I'm not my dad. I'm sorry. Like, governments change, policies change, and the idea that because 30 years ago someone cut you a promise means that I now have to spend $200 billion defending you. The people of this generation who are inheriting this country did not agree to that. No, it's fine.
So
That agreement is built into you being a citizen of this country. That's like saying, I'm not going to pay federal taxes anymore because I'm a citizen of the state of Texas. I didn't agree to be part of a union. I didn't vote on my state joining the United States of America. Like, I want to be my own state. I didn't agree to that. None of the people in Texas, not a single living person today. Wait, when did Hawaii become a state? Was that in like the... Wait, hold on. Oh, okay, it was the 50s. I was going to say that sounds stupid because what about Pearl Harbor? But it could have been a territory when Pearl Harbor happened or whatever. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so like, yeah, that's okay, so maybe some people were alive when it was voted for, but...
What does that say to people who might be manufacturing their own nuclear weaponry? That it doesn't, that the promises made by the world superpower don't really matter. And
I don't like the idea
you
of
shouldn't
America being
necessarily
this like,
trust it.
world superpower.
I
Like,
agree.
my view is probably different from you in that regard. I'm more so like, I think it'd be great if we brought jobs back here.
Yep.
If we protected the middle class.
Yep.
Maybe had stronger workers' rights.
Yep. So here's all the
100%.
populist
I'm
talking points that I was talking
unions,
about.
I'm in
Yeah,
favor of that.
Tariffs on imports.
Yep.
for two
Protectionism,
reasons.
imports. Yep.
The idea that we'd manufacture a car in China
Ma-
and then ship it on a boat over here just to waste energy because...
How do I do it? How do I? It's because I pre-watch everything. No, but seriously though, right? Okay, I hope I can make good arguments for why my political analysis is better, right? Because if you analyze it through a populist lens, you can see everything that he's going to say and you understand their points of view a lot more than just being like, some people are more to the right and some people are more to the left and some people are whatever, right? Like, you get better predictions on what people actually believe. And when I say this, when I'm predicting this, I don't mean I'm predicting it like Tim Pool is stupid or I'm predicting it as a big own. I'm just saying in terms of like understanding other people's political points of view, right? Yeah.
Someone's willing to do it cheaper is nonsensical to me. Just buy American. So we need to build up the incentives for all the manufacturing to happen here in the United States, to create good jobs, to protect the workers. Worry less about whether or not we're going to go blow up some foreign country with a bunch of kids in it or something like that.
But I think like there's like like you're not seeing this past like what's currently happening now, because I get it, right? And I was a big Ron Paul guy, and he didn't like the idea that one generation could promise the sons of a future generation.
Right. That's exactly
and
right.
I understand that position, but if we don't want Saudi Arabia to nuclearize, we don't want Iran to nuclearize, and we're like,
Our
hey,
promises
like,
have to mean
like,
something.
we got you. Like, don't nuclearize. We're gonna try to, like, be the 800-pound gorilla in the room so that you don't have problems.
Our nuclear
and then
umbrella.
they look and say, well, you made that promise to Ukraine, and then 30 years later, they're invaded by Russia and completely
Why are we making
obliterated.
those promises?
Well, because
So we don't
that's
get
the
the
nature of a
nuclear
treaty.
weapons.
No, the idea that
How could
we have-
how could any
we have-
treaty exist, Tim, if
Yes.
it's people had your position and just said,
True.
yeah, fuck it.
Yep.
people?
So that's
treaties-
anti-diplomacy, and that's
treaty-
pro-war.
Any treaty?
Yep.
Oh, come on.
Being
Me literally being like, we
anti-diplomacy-
shouldn't go to war. Like, that's pro-war.
Well, being
the idea that
anti-diplomacy is
we can make a
pro-war.
treaty around, here's why we won't attack you. Totally fine. Here's a treaty around, I'm going to allow your citizens to cross my border with no visa, and we'll reciprocate, like, back and forth. And then having one being like, in 30 years, if anyone comes to fight you, we will fight on your behalf, despite the fact that you're not an allied nation or a bunch of other issues. I don't think, at any point, ever, the U.S. should have been making these promises. And then to come out and be like, but now Saudi Arabia is, I'm sure. Every country is going to be upset if we don't fight on the behalf of some other country.
No, it's not. It's
There
not about.
are limitations. Look, nothing's absolute. I get it. We're in this position now. There's an interesting question of South Korea. People ask me, what if China invaded? And I'm like, well, we got a lot of troops there right now. So I understand the circumstances of today. But the issue is, for one, we could have put a no-fly zone over Ukraine before the invasion started. That would have stopped Russia in its...
Absolutely not. A no-fly zone over a country that's not in NATO is arguably an act of war. Crimea was already owned by Russia. Even prior to 2014, Sevastopol was already a leased Russian base. No-fly zone you're literally an act of war territory there. Destiny, what about Syria? Wasn't a no-fly zone threatened, but they didn't actually enforce it? I thought in Syria we didn't actually have, because Russian jets and shit were still flying over Turkey to get to Syria and shit. No-fly zones are really, 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 really big deals. A no-fly zone is essentially saying that if you fly planes over here, we're going to be shooting those planes down. We're going to be blowing those planes up. Iraq and the Gulf War, we went to war with Iraq. We went to war. That's what a no-fly zone means, right? If you're talking about a no-fly zone, you're saying that if I see your planes in the sky, I'm gonna blow them up. That would be it's funny because maybe because Turkey shot one of Russia's jets in 2015. Yeah, because Turkey accused their jet of flying in Turkish airspace. Now, whether or not they actually were or weren't, I don't know if that was ever resolved. But yeah,
tracks.
Well, a no-fly zone is a de facto declaration of war once the plane gets shot down. Once
True.
The United States.
Yep.
That means Russia would have to have shot down, would have had to attack us.
No, that's Tim. That's not how that works. You can't just put a no-fly zone over the state. Like, hey, by the way, if you attack them, that's yeah. At that point, you're basically they're in NATO. You're Article 5ing people, right?
I mean, either way, that the no-fly zone and us getting more directly involved in that way would be catastrophic potentially. War between two nuclear powers.
Yes.
Agreed. Fair point. I think my position is more so just this is a Russian border dispute over the Donbass region. The U.S.
It's an invasion, Tim.
Border dispute?
Sure. I'm talking about the specifics of why they're doing it. Right?
Wait,
They've
what?
invaded Ukraine because they want the land bridge into Crimea. Why do they want the land bridge into Crimea? Because Western forces were courting Ukraine. Ukraine was being courted to the Russian Trade Federation and to the European Union. Ukrainians wanted to join the European Union. It would be a massive boost to their economy, and they get access to the Schengen zone. It's wonderful. Russia didn't like that. So Russia tried to intervene. Yanukovych was ousted, fled the country. Russia then immediately got their troops outside of Sevastopol and said, we're claiming this, our warm water port in the Black Sea. And then we started to see the bubbling up of the Eastern conflict. Some people call it a civil war. And then finally, when Russia was losing and said, if we cannot lose access to the Black Sea, they said, we're taking the Donbass. And this is where we are.
It's a territorial imperialism.
So why are we involved? Because of a treaty from 30 years ago.
Yeah, because we made a promise
that I think we should not have made.
So you think that they should not have gotten rid of their nuclear stockpile? You think they should, because that was what the treaty was
about.
Oh, we could have offered them something else.
What?
But that's what.
What would you have offered them, Tim? Wait, what?
But they were
a lot of things.
That's the reason why they would keep them, is to protect themselves from Russian aggression.
Now, there is an extended argument that them keeping those nukes didn't actually keep Ukraine safe at all, because I'm not actually sure if Ukraine even had the chassis or the vehicles or the missiles possible to even utilize those nuclear warheads, because I think they were part of the old Soviet Union stock. I don't know if Ukraine had access to those weapons in terms of usability. I don't know how relevant that is, but
because Russia historically expands westward until they hit a stronger power. And this is because the geographical limitations to how Russia can develop have been the same for hundreds of years. So Russia always goes.
Ukraine made those missiles. Remember, a missile. Oh, I'm talking about this like a lot of shit. I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. Missiles are just delivery vehicles. You can shoot a missile that does nothing. Now, typically, you put a warhead on a missile. You can put a normal explosive ordnance or whatever on a missile, and when it launches into something, it blows it up, and that's what a missile does. Or you can put a nuclear warhead on a missile. But my understanding is that a nuclear warhead is a sophisticated device. If you take a missile and put a nuclear warhead on it and fly it into something and it crashes into it, I don't think it does anything. You can't just launch a nuke at somebody and have it collide and then it blows up like I think normal explosives will. For a nuclear warhead, you have to start a process within the warhead that actually causes the fusion-fission combination to actually split the atoms to cause a nuclear explosion. It's not just it hits something and it blows up. So if you don't have the codes or whatever to properly, I guess, arm a nuclear warhead, I don't think you can just put one on a missile and shoot it somewhere and then have it cause a nuclear explosion. I believe that's the case. But also, I don't know the sophistication of the cryptography or whatever that's securing these warheads. Maybe it's possible that in time Ukraine could reverse engineer, or Ukraine could hack Russia, or get intelligence peoples or something to figure out what those words were. You probably don't want that stockpile sitting there, you know? Like what Eric said. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you there. Yeah.
Goes that direction. That's why Poland immediately, in the first opportunity, joins NATO.
Or what OG Zombie Blunt said. You could probably use the fissile material to make a new bomb. That could be true. Maybe you can dismantle the warheads, use the fissile material to manufacture new nuclear warheads as well. Sure.
Because Poland was called the Bloodlands in World War II because they had the unfortunate situation where two strong powers were attacking.
Wasn't there also a treaty that NATO wouldn't expand?
No, this is false.
There was never an agreement.
Sean watches so much of my content, I can tell. All of my arguments. Bring him on to Tim Pool. Good job. I'm proud of you, buddy. I'm just kidding. He might have done all this research independently or whatever. But I know he watched my stuff.
Wasn't there also a treaty that NATO wouldn't expand?
No, this is false.
There was never an agreement.
This is a misinterpretation that is often inflated, and Gorbachev has clarified this specifically.
True.
It's after the Berlin Wall fell, which the Soviet Union was still around. They said that they would not move their military forces within Berlin 1 inch eastward, right? This did not apply to Poland or any of these other countries because they were a part of the Soviet Union.
True.
And again, Gorbachev himself, who would have been the person in charge, has made this clear. So this is weird propaganda that gets put out by...
What do you think happens if we let Russia take Ukraine?
I mean, I think they're going to try to expand their sphere of influence as far westward as they can possibly do, because that's what they do historically.
But this is completely denying the sovereignty of Ukrainians. I mean, what does Ukraine want? They want the ability to defend themselves.
True.
And the United States is providing them with that. And we can talk
if
we want to follow our treaties and give them the ability to defend themselves against imperialism.
Man, I've always...
Imperialism is war.
I think also the point I was making earlier is not that Saudi Arabia cares about Ukraine, but when you're negotiating with somebody, right? Past behavior is the best predictor of future outcome.
Future behavior, yes.
So when we're trying to negotiate denuclearization with any other country, and our example of what happened to somebody who agreed to give up their nuclear stockpile is Ukraine, which is currently now part of Russia, they're not going to want to negotiate with us.
True.
So it leads to potential problems down the line. Not to mention, historically, when conflict breaks out on the European continent, a lot of Americans eventually go over there and die in order to set things right. And I don't want a third world war.
I think this is what makes the Third World War.
I mean, you could agree to disagree on that.
Russia could have taken the Donbass region, and we would have been like, wow, that was bad, that was horrible. And it would have been like Crimea. Crimea got taken, and it was a big news event. And then
But weren't they
shelling
shelling the capital? Was it not beyond the Donbass region where they were attacking?
When they did the
Donbass
actual
region.
invasion?
No, they were
invading the country.
They were shelling all over the
Tim!
all over the country.
I mean, look, let's be real. Russia claims the whole territory of the Ukraine and like their greater Russia as part of them. So like they may
there
be
we
saying
go.
there's
we
ethnic
found,
Russians
we found
right
some
now.
connections here. There we
Right.
go. That's beautiful.
Like there might be ethnic Russians in the Donbass.
Should we go to war with China?
Absolutely not.
Depends on for what.
Are they
We're not
invading
in
Taiwan?
war with Russia right now. So that's the difference. That's the real line that needs to be drawn, is making sure that this does not become a proxy battle. And there are forces that want to push for that. I mean, I think that, frankly, the Biden administration has been a bit more disciplined, and I'm happy than
True.
I initially anticipated on this front. I remember when the initial invasion happened, Hillary Clinton went on cable news and said, well, this could be a real opportunity to weaken Putin. And we called that out in the Majority Report as an incredibly dangerous notion. So
She wanted war from the get-go back in 2016.
sure. I mean,
I think
that's the kind of force within the Democratic Party I'm trying to beat back.
I think that America being a global hegemon is a good thing because those power vacuums will be filled when we leave. I want to not go to war, but I want countries to feel like we would go to war because I like deterrence as a policy. So, like,
I hear it. It's tough because it's not working. And that's why I'm at the...
It's
my
not
view
working?
is
I'm sorry, what
strengthen this
NATO
country.
countries have been invaded
Shore
ever?
up our
Wait, what do you
defenses,
mean?
Focus
It's
on
not working.
empowering our people with...
I feel like NATO has probably been... this is too strong. I don't have the history knowledge. But I would like to say, it seems like NATO has probably been one of the strongest military deterrents probably in world history. Like in all the history of the world, NATO has probably been the most effective deterrent for don't fuck with me.
to live, work, eat, sleep, Medicare.
What does that look like?
I'm not Medicare, medical care in some capacity.
Medicare for all, potentially?
I don't. That's a specific thing. I call it
public option. How about that?
I
Drive
call
down
it
healthcare
universal
prices.
basic health care.
What does that mean?
We provide basic health care to all people.
How so?
Well, I mean, if you want to get into the intricacies of it, I could ask you the same question. I'm saying that
Yeah, through taxation.
The average-
For me,
I
creating a
yes,
socialized healthcare system.
but I don't know if I would call it a socialized healthcare system. Probably because I think you're going further than I'm going with it. I'm
Okay.
saying like
How else do you raise money then to have like a
I'm not saying
government option?
not taxes. I'm saying
Okay.
like if my limit is usually like if someone's got some like rare degenerative genetic disorder that requires $20 billion to treat, like we have a limit. We can't do that. You know what I mean? That's why I say basic. There was a story about a
What
kid
is he
in I
talking
think it was
about?
Louisiana who had a genetic disorder. The treatment cost $1 million. And the family demanded the state cover it. The state said we can't afford to cover it. And they
But
were
why
like,
do you think that healthcare is so heavily inflated in terms of cost in this
Well,
country?
for one, the insurance companies are all corrupt and broken.
Absolutely. In Germany and the UK, they spend half of what we do, and they have socialized healthcare, and they have better outcomes in terms of life expectancy. And
I think outcomes are
mortality.
comparable,
Didn't
not that
Trump
much better.
do the
A
thing
little
with,
better,
like,
I think. But
cheaper insulin from Canada or something?
I think Biden might have done something to like
The insulin was a part of the negotiations in the Inflation Reduction Act.
But I just want to point out, like, those are horrible metrics, life expectancy and infant mortality, for two reasons. Number one, if you take out car accidents in the United States of America, our life expectancy shoots dramatically up. In Europe, a lot less people drive. And considering we're talking about medical care, I think we should...
I don't believe that our life expectancy increases dramatically. Isn't it like 40,000 people a year die in car accidents? Is it really that dramatic? I'd be curious to see the numbers on that. Car accident deaths per year, USA, 42,900. Would that really have an ultra traumatic increase on our overall life expectancy? I'm curious.
Focus on things that describe the impact of medical care. As for infant mortality, this is one of the worst metrics, because if you are born at any point for a split second and you die, you go into our infant mortality statistics. In France, for example, you have to have...
Yeah, what he's about to talk about here is true. I'm going to cut him off so I seem smarter. Different people measure things and are more aggressive for infant mortality in other ways. Like, for instance, this is one of the things that people bring up a lot of times. Cuba has eliminated infant mortality. And it's like, holy shit, it's actually such an unbelievably groundbreaking medical breakthrough that Cuba has figured out a way to completely eliminate infant mortality. And the reason why Cuba's done it is because Cuba aborts like every single baby that might have complications before it's born. In Cuba, from 2015 to 2019, there were a total of 301,000 pregnancies. Of these, 147,000 ended in abortion. Cuba's abortion rate is, I believe it is the highest in the world. In 1977, the Cuban population reached 420 legal abortions per 1,000 pregnancies. They have an unbelievably high. Today, we read about the international press that Cuba is the Latin American country with the highest abortion rate of 62% of all pregnancies. But yeah, this says 72.8 abortions per 100 births. But anyway, yeah. So when child mortality is an infant one. In the United States, I think we try pretty aggressively to save most pregnancies. But that gives you the downside that if you try to save more kids, born babies, you're going to have higher infant mortality because more of them are going to die. So you have to be careful in terms of like how. Also, I think in some countries, if you have a baby and it's like a stillbirth, or if the baby dies of like complications immediately after, I don't know if that's factored into infant mortality in the same way that it would be in the United States. I think that's what he's about to bring up with France.
Have the pregnancy gestate for over 20 weeks, and you have to be alive for a full 24 hours. So this is just not an apples to apples comparison.
I think that doctors would disagree with your assessment that the infant mortality rates are overinflated, but I'll then just turn
They're just
to
measuring different
overflated.
things.
They're measured
they can
differently.
disagree with that, but they would be incorrect, wrong,
but
not
how
even
about
close.
the cost element that I just mentioned?
Yeah, cost is definitely a huge
Higher in
problem.
the United
That's
States.
because
This
we
has
have
to do with third-party
privatized
payers.
healthcare. That's because we have privatized healthcare.
I would disagree.
It dominates.
I don't completely disagree. I got a kidney stone, and my bill was like 40
Hey,
grand.
so I've had a kidney stone before.
They charged me like 40 grand. And
40
then
grand?
Because I was between jobs, I left Vice, and I was starting at Fusion.
For
and
what?
I had this
Jesus.
1 week gap where I told the guys, I was like, give me a week to get, like, to move my stuff, and then I'll start. And that week, all of a sudden, I'm like, like, what's happening? It was crazy. People think that kidney stones are like you're going to the bathroom, and all of a sudden you're like, no, it's like in your body, up in your back, like in your gut. They thought it was appendicitis at first.
Yeah.
I went to the hospital for, I think, like 2 days.
Fuck, I hate listening to this.
And they
Kidney stones
charged
are
me something
horrible.
like
I've
40
never had one before, thank God.
No insurance.
It was because I had just left. So they sent me a bill, and I'm like, holy crap. So I call, and I was like, I just left my job, and I have a 1 week lapse in my insurance. And they went, oh, no problem. And they emailed me the new bill, and it was $4 grand. And then I was like, now hold on there a minute. What happened?
There's definitely
Fortunately, shout
Cobra?
out to all the complaints I've had about Fusion. They said, don't worry, man, we're going to pay for it for you. That shouldn't have happened to you. And I said, thank you. But like the idea that I went to the hospital for 2 days and they did nothing for me. No, to be fair, I shouldn't say that. I got put in like a CAT scan or whatever. They were trying to figure out what it was. They thought I had appendicitis, and they were like, you may need to have to get surgery right away. And they were like, good news, it's a kidney stone. And I was like, that sounds like terrible. And it was like, well, we're not getting surgery. It just means go home.
Well, now you know, Tim, what it's like to have a baby. So
Oh, yeah, apparently.
that's apparently it's the equivalent pain.
Was it a viable stone, though?
Was it what?
Was it a viable stone? Did you like keep it and raise it to be your own?
No. But the point is, all they did was give me painkillers and a diagnosis and then told me to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, it was like 40 grand. And I'm like, now wait a minute. Like, I can understand.
But if that happened to you, by the way, in France or Germany, or Italy, you
It
would
was
go
like
in.
$20 or something.
It could be free.
Yeah. But so my question is, how did they drop it by 90%? And they didn't give me an answer. They're just like, oh, it's a discount. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, why are the costs this way?
I don't think hospitals have any idea. Every time I talk to people at the hospital, like, oh, like I can give you like sample medication, or if you can't afford it, we can like cut the costs a little bit, or like I don't know how hospitals charge anything. I'm not even sure. That shit great.
I know the left often says the insurance companies are corrupt and they're driving it, but I can tell you this: they were trying to bill the insurance company 40 grand, and then when they found out I didn't have insurance, they said 4 grand.
Oh no, corporate hospital chains are really bad too. They're all
Usually, I believe hospitals tend to have two different books for how they charge if you have insurance, if you don't. I believe that's the case. That if you're a cash paying customer, that you can that there's a different charging guide for those people.
part of a sick system that needs to be dismantled and
I
nationalized.
get the
completely
pun
agree.
there. Sick system.
the
That
whole
was not
system's
even
broken.
intentional.
Yeah, whole system's broken. I don't think I have the absolute answers. I don't know for sure. I just think, like, I see these stories. There was a kid who was like 15, got the flu and died. And I'm like, how does that happen? The mom was like, I couldn't afford Tamiflu. And I'm like, it's like $30. There was a horrible story of that guy who was diabetic, and then he couldn't afford the $50 for his insulin, and he dies. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Okay, wrong. Hold on. Now that story is really important because people, not only do people misquote it, they actually miss a really important aspect of insulin. A lot of people like to say in the United States, why don't, like, insulin is like almost free. Why do we charge so much? Like, insulin was discovered like 50 million fucking years ago. Why the fuck are we charging so much for it? The old insulin is cheap and easy to produce. The old insulin is super cheap, but the new insulin is way better. The new insulin is way sicker. That guy that died, I believe he was like gonna get married and he worked at Walmart or something. Or no. He was gonna get, I think he was a fiance or something. I feel like I remember the story several years ago. The guy that died was buying the cheaper, older insulin. But cheap old insulin sucks. It sucks shit compared to the new stuff. You can still buy the cheap old shit, and I'm pretty sure you can get it for really cheap in the United States, but nobody uses that shit anymore. What does the new stuff do? Really quickly. So every time you eat food, all of your food is ultimately broken down into a glucose, a monosaccharide. It's a very simple sugar called glucose. Glucose is a sugar that when it floats around in your blood, if you've got really high levels of glucose, what happens is it's like toxic to your body. It will cause the tips of your fingers, your eyes, it's called diabetic neuropathy. Body parts will start to rot and fall off. It's just the worst thing in the world is to have high levels of sugar in your body. So, but how can we eat sugar? And we eat sugar, the reason why we don't die because our blood sugar elevates is because when you eat sugar, your body produces a whole bunch of a hormone. Is insulin a hormone? A chemical called insulin. And what insulin does is it shoves all of that glucose into your cells. It packs all of the glucose into your cells so that it regulates your blood sugar for you automatically as you go throughout the day. Now, the problem with people that are diabetic is diabetic people have something called insulin resistance. That means that as you eat more and more sugar throughout your lifetime, your cells see insulin, they don't really give as much a fuck because they've seen it so many times before, and you start to need to produce more and more insulin to regulate your blood sugar. Eventually, you have to start injecting insulin into your body, right? But if you think about it, how do we think about insulin? Insulin is produced dynamically throughout the day in response to spikes in blood sugar. The way that it used to work, my understanding is for old insulin, what used to happen is you inject a whole bunch of fucking insulin right after you've eaten food, and then hopefully you kind of time it and do everything well, and that's it. And it's a cucked system because it's you eat a bunch of food, you poke your fucking finger every single day, you poke your finger with these little things, you measure your blood sugar, you inject insulin if you need it, blah, 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 blah. It's a shit ass system. But today we have synthetic analogs to insulin that is highly sophisticated, where you can inject insulin and all day it is a slow acting, slow release, responsive to blood sugar spikes. And the slow acting dynamic insulin that we have today, you can inject and it will regulate your blood sugar to a much greater degree than the insulin in the past that would cause massive spikes based on your current insulin levels, basically. A whole bunch of fucking retards want to call me out on type 2 versus type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder where your pancreas is killing your own fucking beta cells that are blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. But it's the same shit, actually. Because in type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease, you still need to get exogenous insulin, and you're still going to run into the same problems using shit insulin versus really good insulin. But newer insulin is much better than prior insulin, which is why it's stupid when people say, oh, why can't insulin be $20 like it used to be? You can get that insulin in the past, but it sucks. And the guy that died because he said he couldn't afford the new insulin was buying the cheap insulin. I think he was buying it from fucking Walmart, I think. But he died because it sucks, yeah.
Well, hold on. I'll give him the money. I can give him the money. I will gladly. So the challenge, I suppose, is if we do increase taxes to pay for this, do we really trust the system to not be corrupt and just steal it?
Well, I do, because I think that there are models in Canada, in the UK, in Germany,
yeah, but the United States has prison systems the way it is with our tax money too, you know what I mean? If we can clean the corruption up, I'm on board for a lot.
Destiny, you're kind of incorrect. You have methods of injecting insulin, but the stuff should be the same. I know you're incorrect there, so I feel like everything else you're going to type past that is wrong. Also, you have strict diets, so you know how much sugar you ingest. That's incorrect too. You have a glycemic index that can tell you roughly what the corresponding blood sugar level would be based on what you eat, and you should be monitoring your diet as a diabetic, type 1 or type 2, because you want to reduce the amount of blood sugar you have. But with newer insulins, you can pretty much eat. I would know they probably still have dietary recommendations, but you can still eat high sugary things, high in the glycemic index, and monitor your blood sugar and inject insulin and all that shit as well, right?
I think that's the question.
All right, well then there's something we can work on there, Tim.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the conversations
No, you were wrong. Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong with that. Go look it up.
I have about taxes, people will be like, I oppose taxes because look what the government does with it. And I'm like, so you oppose corruption? You know what I mean? Like if you were told that you were getting a really sweet deal at discount price, you wouldn't be complaining about it. When you're told that they take your money and go blow up kids with it and then, you know, beat prisoners or whatever nonsense, I can understand why you're upset. The concept of taxes doesn't bother me. The concept of the government not being held accountable and corruption emerging from it bothers me. And like our tax dollars, not even our tax dollars, but printing money and giving it to massive pharmaceutical companies or war, then I'm just like, now I can understand why, you know, someone can come out and say taxation is theft. I disagree. But I understand their point. And I'm kind of just like, you know, it's really hard to argue against someone who says that when we know that a lot of evil people are stealing our money for evil things. Like, how do you clean that up?
Hey, Destiny, nursing student here. Type 2 can be mostly controlled by dietary. Type 1, you need the medications. Whoever's talking shit about insulin is an idiot and doesn't know the advanced long-acting and short-acting medications. Sure, I don't believe, once you're actually full-on diabetic, I don't think that you can control for your insulin versus your diabetes with only dietary restrictions. Unless you do an extreme, like super ketogenic or whatever, maybe. But I'm pretty sure even if you're on a very low sugar diet, I think you still have to take drugs. It might not be insulin, it might be other things when you're a type 2 diabetic, I think. But I mean, if you're the nursing student, you might know more than me. All of my older family, all of them have like fucking diabetes or pre-diabetes. So I've done like a little bit of reading on diabetes because I was curious, but I could be wrong on that. But I'm pretty sure if you've got type 2, if you've got type 2 diabetes, I think you're almost always on some form of medication, unless maybe you do like a hardcore restrictive diet. Or like if you're pre-diabetic and you do a hardcore restrictive diet, maybe, I don't know if I don't remember if, I think I read that it was true that there was a small study where certain dietary changes can reduce insulin resistance, I believe, but I think it's got to be like a full-on like ketogenic diet. You've got to almost completely eliminate sugar from your diet to start to reset that insulin resistance. But yeah, I think, but there was only one small study I read, but I think you clean that up and most people are going to be fine with it. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
If you were spending $50 a month on Netflix and you knew that only you know like $40 was going to some random guy to go beat dogs, you'd be like, I'm not gonna give Netflix any money anymore.
Well, how do those dogs look?
That's right. It's like, are they foreign dogs? You're like, yeah. So I take issues with that, and I'm kind of like, you know, if you knew that you were contributing to a system that was using your money as efficiently as possible. Yeah, someone in YouTube chat is saying insulin is a last resort for type 2 diabetes. That's probably true. I don't think you like get on insulin immediately. It's like once your blood sugar, there's like certain markers for once your blood sugar gets to a certain point. Like for pre-diabetics or for diabetics, I don't think you're on insulin immediately. There's other medications that you take to control your, to try to lower shit. But I think the natural progression of type 2 diabetics, I think a natural progression, if you continue to eat, you continue to go obese, is inevitably you will be taking some form of exogenous insulin, I believe. You'd be like, I'm okay. You know, I'm getting some good from it for some reason. Like people saying they start with metformin. You know, a lot of people on the right, they don't want to defund the cops. Right, but the cops have a lot of broken issues within their systems that need to be fixed as well. And I think just saying like the extremes of defund the police or just not don't really get to the problem of there's something wrong in the justice system as a whole.
Yeah, I would say I think societies are more comfortable with taxes when they have higher social trust, but I will say there is something to the fact beyond corruption that nobody's ever going to be as careful spending your money as you. So like there is something that's just going to be inherently wasted when you transfer it to bureaucrats when it's not their money. I don't believe that to be true. So here's the funny thing. We'll start to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Comment.
I drank too much coffee. I got to run to the restroom.
All right.
This is true.
We'll wrap up. I'm not your buddy guy saying, why are we listening to three lefties debate politics? Where is the right-wing representation?
Hey man, I don't know what show you're watching here.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's the like, I guess the final thought I'll say on this is that I think for shows like yours, you exist on a political space where you assume everybody to your right is right wing. Yep. Even moderates and centrists and liberals.
I think I know some moderates, and their politics are definitely to the left of yours. And I have a lot of Republican friends too, and I debate these issues with them on a regular basis. So your politics is a lot closer to theirs, to be honest, based on what I've heard.
I mean, it's weird to say honestly, that conservatives would be...
Tim, just prove me wrong. Like, talk about socialized healthcare all the time on your show, and I'll be looking for it now.
It's crazy, too, like the abortion thing. No, sure we talk about a lot, like ad nauseum. But it's weird because
in this culture war, the tribal left, whatever you want to call it, I'm not saying all leftists, but the tribal commentary.
Wow, Fitzgerald, thank you for the tier 5 separate. Been enjoying content more and more each year. Keep kicking ass. That's because you're getting older and wiser, my dude.
Very left is like, I'll give you an example. The Young Turks did a video where they called me ugly because I talked about attraction privilege. I don't know how you call it, beauty privilege
Pretty
or whatever.
privilege.
And I was talking about how conservatives are more likely to be attractive because it's easier to go through life as an attractive person. Thus, you're given benefits that you associate to your abilities instead of society, resulting in a conservative worldview. And those who are less attractive have it harder, resulting in a collectivist worldview. And instead of just like telling me I was wrong, they just called me ugly.
Well, I mean,
like,
do you have
I don't know.
statistics to back up your
Yes.
their?
So,
but who?
it's true.
Who decides who's ugly and who's unattractive?
I like how
they
she
did
asked for
studies where they
statistics
would
and now
show
rejects
images of
the
people
methodology
to men
without
and
even
women and
knowing.
ask them to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, then create a curve of attraction. And those people that they showed pictures of, they had interviewed them on their political leanings and found a correlation between attraction and political leaning. I'm sorry, beauty, perceived beauty, and political leanings. But this is like not even controversial among the left. This is privilege, right?
Hey, if we're on the right side of things and we're uglier, I'm totally fine with that.
But so what happens is you go through life and you're ugly. People are meaner to you. They're less interested in you. You have a harder time of things. You're going to lean towards collectivist approaches to things, like we need to work together to fix these problems. But if you're attractive and people are nice to you all the time, it's like that 30 Rock episode, The Bubble, where
I love
3
30 Rock.
bosses?
what was that guy's? That John Hamm. It's like
Hamm.
everyone's super nice to him.
Yeah.
He thought he was really good at everything, but he was just attractive. But like my point is not to talk about that. My point is to just insult me instead of address the issue.
I disagree with the ad hominem, but it's not me. So.
Unless it's about
Well,
his
anyway, I
music.
think we should wrap it up. We're a little bit long. Do you guys want to say anything before we finish? and
Well,
leave?
it got a little heated, but I appreciate you having me on, Tim,
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. And I know you don't want to have Sam on, but I hope you reconsider. I think it could be a good discussion.
Yeah, there's. I will say it with absolute conviction.
He will never come on my show.
There's a lot of people who have blacklisted that guy from various shows, and he knows it.
Yeah,
And he's talked about it.
He wears it like a badge of honor.
But he needs to stop saying it's because they're scared of him. It's because he's a dick.
He might be both. It might be both.
No one's scared of him.
All right.
Like it's not my business to bring up other podcasts and networks in general. But like I've even had people ask me, and I'm like, well, I don't know. Look, man, we're willing to have people on the show, and then they'll highlight something he did, and they're like, that crossed the line, and I'm like, all right,
Right. Well, if it's about free flowing
Didn't he
debate,
say he
and
was
he's
going to
just
kill
a dick,
somebody?
Jesus.
So
Was it Patrick Bet David?
I have no idea.
I could be wrong about this, but I probably
I'm
should.
pretty sure you're wrong about this.
Let me see if I can look it up.
I feel like I would have heard
Someone's
this.
gonna kill somebody.
In a karate battle or like? With
It was
a weapon?
something like if he had the right and he would hang the rich, he would hang Patrick Bet David or something like that.
Yeah, that was a joke.
All right, well, I don't know too much about it. I can
He's-
tell you it's like
He's sarcastic.
jokes like that freak people out, I guess. So you can call it a joke.
I think he was
but-
responding to something. I can't. Again, these are people who are not myself, and I do 15 hours of new content on my program every day, or every week. So it's hard for me to keep track.
That went from being a fuck ton of work to way less work in like one correction.
Right on. Sean?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube at Actual Justice Warrior, on Twitter at I am Sean90. And as for Sam Seder, I'm also a New Yorker. I will not only go on his show in studio and debate him, I
he'd
will
love
also
it.
take him out to dinner, hang out with him, become his best friend, maybe even wear matching shirts and all of that. So I am available. I'm not afraid of Sam Seder, so, deliver the message.
Love it.
Right on. Well, I really do appreciate you coming. I think
Sure.
It was great.
Yep.
And Sean, thanks for joining in. And we're trying to figure out how to do this properly. I think because of who I am, it's impossible for just to like me to sit back and have people have a conversation. So I do want to apologize. You're definitely 2 against 1, like both of us. Although on the Ukraine thing, you guys definitely had me. I don't know. I'm looking at these both of you. I'm like, what's going on here? So just for future for everybody, we'll try and make sure that it's not so like I felt like we were very 2 against 1. It wasn't very fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
At times.
I can handle it.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And for everybody who watched, thanks for watching, and become a member at timcast.com. We have a lot of more shows like this ramping up next week, the week after that. We're having a really, really big one in a couple weeks. We're getting some celebrities who are interested, and I'm really impressed.
Yeah. Am I sitting where Kanye sat?
No, that's that one.
Oh, so I'm just
Who's
sitting
they?
where
Up
Fuentes
Seamus.
sat.
No, he sat there.
Oh, yikes.
Who else was on that night?
Was it
Ian?
Luke on?
No.
Milo and Fuentes, right?
Was it Luke? Oh, yeah, it was Luke signature. Anyway, we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. I hope it was to you exactly what you thought it was going to be, and now both the left and the right can make clips about who owned whom and when. Thanks for hanging out,
Perfect.
and we'll see you all next time.
One of the important principles that I've discovered that's really funny as you reflect on that show that we just watched is a lot of people say things like first impressions are really important. Your first impression is important, blah, 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 blah. I actually completely disagree with that. I don't think first impressions are that important. I think your last impression is really important. From the dating context, the way that I would say this is like, if you take a girl out on a date and it starts off like kind of rocky or kind of weird, but it ends on a really strong note, that's going to be what they remember. If you take a girl on a date and it starts off amazingly and it kind of like feathers out and it's kind of boring, that's going to be what they remember. I feel like the impression that I have, like on an emotional level coming away from this, is Emma did really well, but it's only because in like the last like fourth of this, when they stumbled onto these Ukraine topics, she absolutely, like, Tim Pool had no idea what he was talking about. And Sean joined in too, and it was like horrible. For the majority of this, I think that Emma did markedly worse than Tim Pool, but just because of the ending, it feels like she ended on such a strong note. Jesus.